This is not Earth, but my world. I have been chosen to be a god of this world, but I might be erased because there are 27 other gods like me. Thus, I need to gain the recognition of the creatures of this world and generate faith. Only if the number of believers increases can I win in this divine selection competition. Otherwise, the only outcome waiting for me is death. Ranking first, a man named Nebula is a top player of a game called The Lost World. In the game, he developed technology and defeated the second-ranked player, Hegemonia, becoming the first to complete all achievements. Just as he was lamenting the boredom of the game, a mysterious email suddenly appeared on his screen. Amazing achievement. So far, you are the only one who has cleared all achievement. Thank you for enjoying Lost World so far. Lost World, which was in early beta access, is now scheduled to be officially released. Player Nebula can enjoy the game before the official service. Would you like to start? Looking at the invitation in front of him, Nebula didn't hesitate and decisively clicked the yes button. But when he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a ruin-like square, which made him very confused. Was he dreaming? At the same time, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Then, a mysterious woman appeared in front of him. She knew all about Nebula. Looking at the puzzled Nebula, the mysterious person signaled him not to be nervous, as he wasn't the only one who had come here. As she slowly raised her hands, a blue planet floated in midair. Could it be Earth? Nebula wondered, but he quickly dismissed the thought, because he had seen the scenery of that continent many times. The game Lost World, and everyone present might become a true god. Lost World is not just a world that exists in the game. This land was abandoned by the gods because of something that happened in the past. On that planet, there once was a splendid civilization where different races lived in harmony. However, for unknown reasons, the gods left it. Now to them, it's time to welcome the new gods. The purpose of creating the game Lost World was to find suitable new candidates for that planet. And its nature is just like the rules in the game. If you work hard to generate faith among the natives, you can become the only god on this planet. And you can do anything you want. All the desires you've ever dreamed of. It is feasible as a god of that world. Hearing this, Nebula felt incredulous. What if I choose to give up? The mysterious person also explained, if you give up now, you will return to your everyday life and lose the memory of this place. Once you join the game, you cannot quit, and there are only two outcomes: disappear or become a god of that world. After explaining the rules, the mysterious person announced that anyone wishing to give up must do so now. Then, the mysterious person took out strange cards. This is just like the Lost World. Choose a small area to start your game. Nebula realized it really was just like the game. However, he couldn't help but wonder if others were already giving up. He began counting the number of people present. 1, 2, 3. Soon, the count had dwindled to 27. Nebula guessed that they were inviting candidates according to the game's maximum number of players. As the top-ranked player, Nebula was the first to choose a card. Upon receiving the card, he was also teleported to the starting area of the game. However, he was very frustrated, not expecting that being the first to draw a card, his luck would be so bad. It turned out that he drew the area with the lowest win rate, a small insect region, and he could only control creatures of the insect type. It's unfortunate, but also fortunate, because this location is in a remote area on the eastern part of the continent, which means there are few wars here, allowing him enough time to develop. In this sense, relying on insects would be a good starting line, such as against those frogmen. But what troubled him was the number of tribes. As a starting tribe, it is not easy to develop faith, especially facing a number of 500 frogmen, and his initial faith value was only 10 points, which had no effect on these well-fed frogmen at all. Therefore, he had to find a new target. Soon, he discovered some lizardmen. They also feed on insects and can survive here even without water. After careful observation by Nebula, a young, severely injured lizardman caught his attention. These lizardmen were a primitive tribe, and this young lizardman was likely ousted in a power struggle. The more he felt abandoned by this world, the more he yearned to change his destiny. Well then, let's start with him. In this desolate area, trees are already a scarce resource, let alone food. But just then, the lizardmen suddenly became very excited because they found an injured antelope. The young and strong lizardmen rushed over first, while the old, weak, and sick could only wait for them to finish eating, getting a small portion of the remaining bones. However, some lizardmen believed that food should not be shared with those tribe members who were about to die. It turned out that they had previously encountered a saber-toothed tiger. Rakrak was severely injured while protecting the tribe, so some tribe members believed that he should not be abandoned. The scene shifts, and night falls. At this moment, all the lizardmen were resting, but just then, Rakrak was awakened by a sound. When he saw the source of the noise, it was a butterfly, which he found very strange. He felt as if something was calling him, so he immediately followed. When Rakrak reached the summit, he found beetles piled up like a mountain. He looked incredulously at everything before him, thinking, could this be a miracle? After receiving this gift of food, Nebula successfully won the faith of the lizardmen. Because these beetles became their hope for salvation, he took this opportunity to prepare for the next step of his plan. Meanwhile, the lizardmen tribe had concluded this was divine guidance and began calling him the nameless beetle god. After acquiring so much resource for the tribe, Rakrak's status among his people was elevated. At this time, he saw the butterfly's guidance again. However, when the other tribespeople learned that the butterfly was guiding them toward the cold lands, they hesitated and tried to persuade Rakrak to try another direction. But Rakrak insisted on following the butterfly's guidance. He believed that aimlessly searching in the wilderness was futile, and it was better to trust in divine guidance. Meanwhile, Nebula observed silently from behind. He knew that the Lizardmen still lacked enough faith, so he could not directly interfere with their decisions. If they believe in me, they will experience a future beyond their imagination, Nebula thought. Rakrak followed the butterfly's guidance and soon discovered a desert oasis. He was convinced that the nameless beetle god had led them to a sacred place. At the same time, Nebula's divinity level was elevated. The small area's bug level was raised to level 2, and he received the blessing of bugs, which significantly enhanced Rakrak's abilities. Rakrak, do you want to know what I want? Then deliver my will to your people. This blessing will help you. The scene shifts, and night falls. By then, the upgraded Nebula had gained the ability to enter their dreams. He needed Rakrak's help to craft an image of a god. Then, an image of a buffalo's skull appeared in his dream. This was the appearance of the nameless beetle god. The next morning, Rakrak announced to his people what he had dreamed last night. They needed to hunt a wild buffalo and use its bones to create the image of the nameless beetle god. However, the tribespeople seemed to disagree with his approach, as the buffalo herd was too dangerous for them. Rakrak understood everyone's concerns but still firmly believed in his idea and decided to go alone to complete the task. The tribespeople were all incredulous, but Rakrak reassured them not to worry, for he had received the god's blessing. Not only had his injuries healed, but his strength had also increased. After speaking, he threw a javelin, which effortlessly pierced a large tree dozens of meters away, shocking everyone. Just then, a herd of buffalo passed by below the mountain. Realizing this was divine guidance, Rakrak charged at the herd alone. With just one spear, he easily hunted a buffalo. Seeing this, the tribespeople came forward to help process the buffalo. By evening, Rakrak had made an image of the nameless beetle god out of buffalo bones and led his people in a sacrificial ceremony to thank the nameless beetle god for his gifts. The nameless beetle god, please accept our offering, no matter how inadequate it may be. Please accept our offering. Although it was a hasty and clumsy ceremony, their sincerity was heartfelt. Nebula's faith value was greatly increased as a result, making him feel that it was all worthwhile. Previously, Nebula had used wild grass to lure the buffalo herd down the mountain to provide resources for them, but what he didn't expect was that they would eat the calves as well. At this stage, it was difficult to expect them to grasp knowledge and skills related to herding. The population support of this oasis was not high, and it could only be maintained for a few years at most. Currently, they had no concept of agriculture or ranching, and the coming times might be very tough. It was simply too difficult for them to grasp certain knowledge on their own. However, due to the rules restrictions, Nebula could not directly tell them the solutions, so he quickly thought of a method, but it would take a long time to implement. The scene shifts to a few days later. One night, Rakrak had a strange dream where he saw the altar shaking, as if hinting that something significant was about to happen. He then climbed up the altar. Under Nebula's guidance, Rakrak's tribe was strengthened. Their skin color evolved from light blue to dark, and Rakrak firmly believed that this was the divine protection and guidance. Just as he felt the altar shake again, he saw the approaching powerful enemy. A tribe was coming in their direction. Judging by their skin color, they were Rakrak's former tribespeople. More importantly, their leader looked very powerful because he was riding a terrifying drake. Looking at their numbers, it seemed that the entire tribe had come, which also meant that their original homeland had been exhausted of resources. Rakrak guessed that they were perhaps just passing through, but since their location required climbing to the mountain's summit to see the full picture, and the patrol team was overly enthusiastic, they prematurely exposed their position. The patrol team also warned them not to pass through this area. The leader did not expect to encounter this kind of unexpected surprise, suggesting that these people were not familiar with the surrounding environment. Rakrak reassured his people not to be nervous, thinking that this might be the arrangement of God. Are you saying this is a test from the god? Rakrak gave a positive answer. He believed this was not only a test but also a mission. Our mission is to accept and save them. After all, they are just like us. Just then, the butterfly appeared again. Is this also the will of God? Although it was hard to guess further, he firmly stated, I will do my best to convey your will. Watching Rakrak's actions, Nebula realized that he had understood his intentions. Rakrak's tribe and the blue-skin tribe must unite to strive for population growth and technological progress. What surprised Nebula was that Rakrak had made this decision on his own, without guidance from dreams. Was it because his willpower was strong enough? It turned out that Rakrak's willpower had reached an astonishing 14 points. Nebula was very reassured. If Rakrak could grow into a leader with a high degree of self-will, he could develop civilization autonomously rather than relying entirely on player control. This way, Nebula could effectively express his intentions. Faced with the patrol's warning, the leader did not take it seriously, instead trying to extract information about the territory from them. Rakrak stepped forward slowly, telling him, here there are water resources and food, and a deity. This is the territory of a nameless beetle god. However, the leader clearly did not understand what he was saying, gestured for them to leave quickly, and warned, "We have many soldiers. If you are a leader, you should know what to do." Rakrak shook his head helplessly, saying, "I don't want to start a war with you. Those who have lost their homes can embrace the deity, and you will receive the deity's favor." Hearing this, the leader laughed loudly. "You are the one who doesn't know how to scheme." Rakrak was not moved by his mockery, instead firmly saying, "Perhaps you are right, but you do not know the deity." As soon as the words were spoken, the drake launched an attack on Rakrak. Facing this behemoth, Rakrak knew he needed the deity's blessing. At this moment, he was praying, hoping the deity would grant him courage and strength. However, he underestimated the strength of the drake. With just one strike, it broke his spear. The leader then sneered and said, "You can go die now." Nebula silently observed from the side. Just then, a message prompt appeared. Civilization clash. Two different tribes came into contact. Both tribes' experience points increased significantly. This message prompt came just in the nick of time. Area: Lizardmen level 1. You've been paying a lot of attention to one tribe. These tribes are now part of your territory. New skills are available. Would you like to use it? Nebula decisively pressed the yes button. Instantly, a beam of light descended from the sky, landing on Rakrak. At the same time, the drake's claws heavily struck towards him. The leader thought Rakrak had been smashed into a pancake, but to his surprise, he hit nothing. Blessed Rakrak felt an unprecedented strength. The leader sneered, saying, "I don't know how you dodged that, but you won't escape a second time." At this moment, Rakrak felt no fear. He knew that even without divine power, he had the confidence to deal with the leader. However, the biggest threat at the moment was the drake. The drake's strength value was 87 points, while Rakrak's strength was only 30 points, with an additional 30 added. But with the blessing of the enhanced physical strength skill, his strength had significantly increased. The divine power boost increased the maximum power of ordinary strength by 200 times. Simply put, Rakrak's strength had now reached 630 points, far surpassing that of the drake. This vast disparity in strength left everyone shocked and awed. Rakrak defeated the drake with just one strike, and everyone realized that no one could do this except those blessed by the deity. However, the leader still seemed unconvinced. He picked up a short sword from the ground and attacked Rakrak. Faced with the leader's stubbornness, Rakrak did not hesitate to give him a heavy slap, sending him to his knees, unresponsive. "Who's next?" Seeing this, the others laid down their weapons and surrendered. Just then, the blessing's duration also came to an end. Rakrak looked at his body, feeling incredulous. It was as if a deity had possessed me just now. Nebula, watching Rakrak's performance, was also very satisfied. The scene shifts, and night falls. Rakrak sat by the campfire, pondering what path to take next. Since the number of new joiners was 6 times that of their original tribe, he realized that the small oasis could not sustain so many people. Therefore, they must venture out to breed a stronger civilization. After experiencing a nomadic life, Rakrak understood that without a steady supply of resources, this oasis could not last long. To ensure the continued development of civilization, they must find new paths for development. The integration with another tribe also made Rakrak realize that this brought him many different talents. The next day, Rakrak found a blacksmith who knew how to make iron tools and asked him about the conditions and materials needed to make weapons. The blacksmith told him, "If it weren't for the leader's stubbornness, I could have made better tools long ago." He explained that making iron tools required a lot of wood to burn special fuels. Rakrak looked at the short sword in his hand, thoughtful. Good tools can not only improve hunting efficiency but also enhance the tribe's overall combat capability. He said to the blacksmith, "I will consider it and give you an answer tomorrow." After the blacksmith left, a one-armed lizard man walked in. It turned out he had heard that Rakrak was looking for a guide and decided to offer his help voluntarily. Rakrak then asked the question, "You must have been wandering, right?" The one-armed man smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, this is an old body that wanders around, just looking for a place that will accept it." He said that through this process, he had learned how to discern directions. Hearing this, Rakrak became very curious. "What makes you so confident?" The one-armed man looked up at the sky, then pointed upwards. "My answer is up there." Time passed, and before they knew it, it was late at night. Rakrak also looked up, guessing the answer was the stars. The one-armed man confirmed his guess. Although he was not sure if the stars really moved, he could tell directions by the stars. If you know the path of the stars, you won't easily lose your way. Looking at the vast starry sky, Rakrak felt immensely awestruck. The one-armed man decided to teach him how to identify positions by the stars. In the one-armed man's understanding, the stars do move and change with the seasons. The one-armed man told Rakrak, "Then I will check again at the same time tomorrow." After the one-armed man left, a guard responsible for watching the drake found Rakrak. After feeding it today, it has become much more docile. It turned out that before this, the drake was very aggressive towards anyone, and the guard could do nothing about it. But after Rakrak appeared, the situation with the drake changed dramatically. When the drake saw Rakrak, it actually trembled with a fear that came from deep within, making every one of its movements cautious. The drake ate the food provided by Rakrak. At the same time, Rakrak signaled to it to be quieter in the future. Afterward, Manon indeed became much more docile. Rakrak thought to himself that God kept Manon alive for a reason. They just hadn't discovered it yet. But the guard came to Rakrak actually for other matters. He said that while feeding Manon at noon, he had an inspiration, since we contain powerful creatures like the drake, surely similar creatures can also be tamed. Rakrak encouraged him to express his opinion. The guard then pointed to the herd of wild buffalo below the hill. On the other side, Nebula received a prompt. Rakrak's tribe has noticed skill herding. It is recorded that human history at one point split into two branches. Some humans took charge of agriculture, while others handled livestock. Although this is not truly a primitive society, the game's development direction is consistent with reality. The origins of all major civilizations are in river basins, greatly facilitating agriculture. However, the Lizardman tribe chosen by Nebula is different. They possess strong bodies and a high environmental adaptability, needing more of a pastoral lifestyle rather than mere agriculture. With just a little guidance, their civilization's development speed could be greatly increased. The development of manufacturing gave their progress wings. With Rakrak's support, the blacksmith obtained materials for forging stronger iron tools. Thanks to the blacksmith's efforts, they were finally able to produce basic iron tools. Although these iron tools might still be softer compared to carefully crafted bronze tools, they represent a huge advancement compared to the stone tools previously used by Rakrak's tribe. The emergence of iron tools will provide significant assistance to their development. What Nebula did not expect was that he would gain an unexpected boon: astronomy. Although the current knowledge is still too primitive to be called astronomy, astrology might be a more suitable term for it. However, in the distant future, this discipline will pave the way to change the world. Rakrak looked up at the starry night sky, and he finally understood why the one-armed man said that the stars are the guides of the sky. Although the stars seem unpredictable, they can clearly point the way for the future. After obtaining sharp iron tools, Rakrak decided to gather everyone to express his thoughts. God have brought us to this land for a long time now, even allowing us to meet our former tribespeople. It was God who let us survive, while those driven into the wilderness will die there. But what God wants is salvation, not exclusion. We survive in order to shelter more people, because this is the directive of God. So I have decided, when dawn comes, we will leave this place and seek more resources. Then, Rakrak signaled to the one-armed man to pass on the knowledge of watching the stars to others, and told them about the place they were about to go to. The one-armed man pointed in the direction of the rising sun and said, "After dawn, when the morning sun rises, we will head to the right of the sun and walk for 10 days. Then turn right along the rotten lake and walk for 15 days, and continue through the desolate mountain roads and valley paths for 3 days. Eventually, we will reach our destination, an endless forest with more food and resources. Simply put, it's a good place to live." After the one-armed lizard pointed out the direction, Rakrak went up the altar. Then, he asked Yer why they hadn't eaten the wild buffalo. Faced with Rakrak's inquiry, Yer seemed very puzzled, thinking he had done something wrong. He explained nervously, "I wasn't very hungry at the time. Everyone was busy catching the wild bison, and I didn't eat any." At this moment, Yer seemed somewhat bewildered, because I wasn't thinking much at the time, just that my stomach wasn't hungry. If I had eaten then, I wouldn't know if I could eat it when I was really hungry. That's what I thought. Hearing this, Rakrak affirmed his actions. "Although you really want to eat beef now, you must prepare for the future," he said, and asked Yer if he could persevere. Yer firmly answered, "As long as I don't starve, I am willing to do so." Very well. Then, he decided to entrust everyone with a greater mission. A sharp spear appeared before everyone, and they were all incredibly shocked, because before, even the leaders hardly had such fine weapons. This is a reward for those who can overcome their own appetites. Everyone was very satisfied with his reward, which also made those who had not received a reward think of striving for it. They wanted to do better. At the same time, Rakrak picked up a piece of buffalo bone and wore it on his face. He did this to make his people understand that they bear the responsibility of protecting the tribe, because in this wilderness, dangers are everywhere. Soon, a group of warriors armed with buffalo bones appeared before everyone. Each of them kept the nameless beetle god in their hearts. "The nameless beetle god will be with you." However, at this moment, Rakrak understood that this was not a directive from the god, but his own decision. He knew that if they stayed here, it would only be a few years before they repeated past mistakes. "Going out is the only way. Please forgive me, dear nameless beetle god." Nebula knew everything about the Lizardman tribe. He knew that Rakrak would do this, otherwise, he could not have become a priest. Attribute update: reliability from 4 to 7, warrior level from 2 to 3, leadership from 7 to 14, priest level from 1 to 2. With Nebula's help, Rakrak's abilities were significantly enhanced, nearly doubling in all attributes. "So far, you have done well and not disappointed my expectations. From now on, you will be a qualified leader." The scene shifts. A few days later, the Lizardman tribe struggled through the wilderness for 3 days, the intense heat making even the drake struggle to keep up. When the drake lay down tired, everyone came forward to check, and the one-armed man speculated that it was probably too tired. Seeing this, Rakrak signaled everyone to rest in place for a while. At this moment, he was also filled with worry, because the remaining food was running very low. "We can only hope for God to perform another miracle." Just then, a tribe member who had gone scouting hurried back, signaling that they had encountered other tribespeople ahead. It was a group of goblins. The goblins left their previous location very happy, because there was a terrifying monster living there. However, when they saw a group of powerful lizardmen appear before them, armed with well-made weapons. The goblins were instantly stunned. They immediately dropped their stone tools, chose to surrender, and handed over their remaining food. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We just wanted to leave this canyon as quickly as possible to find some food in the wilderness. Rakrak became curious and asked what forced them to leave their home. The goblin leader pointed to the mountains behind them and said, "We used to live there until a monster suddenly appeared." Rakrak's brow furrowed because the monster seemed to appear in the direction they were about to head. Nebula, seeing all this, also realized that this was indeed a formidable enemy, the giant crustaceans. The giant crustaceans' stats are far superior to those of the Lizardman tribe, and it also possesses two huge venomous fangs. The Lost World describes them as, "These creatures were created by the gods before they vanished. After the gods left, these monsters were left on the planet." Moments later, the goblin leader led Rakrak towards the location of the monster. When Rakrak saw the giant creature with his own eyes, he was shocked. The size of the monster was incredibly large, and just one of its breaths caused the mountain to shake violently. The goblin leader signaled to Rakrak not to be nervous, saying, "This is the sound the monster makes when it sleeps." How many days would it take to detour? At least about 8 days. Hearing this, Rakrak furrowed his brow, lost in thought. Nebula saw his hesitation, which was understandable. Given the tribe members' fear, taking a detour seemed like a safer choice. "What do you plan to do, Rakrak?" Nebula wondered inwardly. Just then, Jael noticed something. She stared at the giant rocks above, and after pondering for a moment, she came up with a plan to kill the monster. Jael signaled to Rakrak, saying, "We must fight. Now we have enough advantage." It turns out, she was inspired by the process of the blacksmith making tools. By optimizing the structure, the blacksmith managed to achieve greater effects while reducing the effort required. "So you mean, if we use this principle, we can easily generate a huge amount of energy? We don't need such complicated tools. Just a few sticks will be enough." The scene shifts. Jael had thought of a method using the principle of the lever, moving a fulcrum to push a massive boulder over the monster, using the rolling stones to crush it. It was a simple yet clever plan, but to kill a crustacean of this level, all the rocks needed to hit simultaneously to increase the likelihood of success. Nebula was also uncertain whether this would be enough to kill the monster. As they moved the lever, the boulders began to roll quickly. By the time the monster noticed something was wrong, the boulders had already reached it, smashing heavily onto its crown. However, 3 boulders were still not enough to kill the monster. They only shattered its shell, further enraging it. Seeing this, Rakrak signaled everyone to speed up and push all the remaining rocks down. But Nebula knew that it might be too late, as ordinary people could not move the boulders quickly enough. In a critical moment, Nebula blessed Rakrak again. In an instant of gaining strength, Rakrak single-handedly pushed a boulder into the air and used his physical strength to throw another rock down. Rakrak understood that the monster might dodge the damage from the boulders, so he decided to actively interfere. He leapt toward the cliff, gathering force, and with his spear aimed precisely at the monster's weak point, he threw it directly. The spear's interference prevented the monster from dodging in time, and the boulder from above hit it squarely. The first boulder incapacitated it for combat, and the second boulder delivered a fatal blow. Nebula was very pleased with Rakrak's performance. The hunt was a huge success. At the same time, a game interface popped up. "Hunting monsters. Your tribe has slain abominations. Ancient crustaceans." The giant crustaceans is an ancient crustacean. With the monster killed, Nebula also received a hunting reward. Nebula obtained the essence of abomination. Each god has resources that adapt to their domain. Although these resources can be created by consuming faith, creating non-existent things often requires special ingredients. Nebula thought, "If I have this core, I can create a creature that acts as a generator of faith resources, spreading the words of the gods through their existence." Additionally, if these creatures are elevated to higher levels, they might gain abilities like those of apostles or avatars. But Nebula was uncertain if this creation method was the same as in previous games. He was also pondering how to handle this inner core. On the other side, Jael was examining the body of the monster in front of her. She pulled off one of the monster's legs and decided to try if its meat was edible. If the monster's meat was edible, it could provide a huge supply for the tribe. After a simple taste test, Jael found that the monster's meat was edible, but it needed some processing because it didn't taste good. Just then, she noticed herbs growing on the rocks. She thought that if she used the herbs to season the meat, it would definitely taste better. After a simple treatment with the herbs, the meat indeed tasted much better, becoming more delicious. During the meal, Jael suddenly asked Rakrak about the matter of an heir. "As the tribe's leader, you should consider finding a mate." Hearing this, Rakrak was stunned because he had never thought about this issue. Seeing him silent, Jael continued to question him. "You are growing old. Isn't this necessary for the stability of the tribe? If you've never really thought about it, then what about me?" Hearing this, Rakrak fell into thought. Just as Rakrak was about to reply, a shining golden light caught his attention. He walked over and found that it was a metal plate inscribed with runes, which seemed to have fallen off the monster's back. At that moment, Yer curiously reached out to touch it and even took a bite directly. The one-armed man immediately stopped him. "You can't eat that." The one-armed man explained that this thing is called gold, which he had seen during his travels. It is said that even after a long time, its color does not change or decay. Would you like to catch an antelope around here instead? Hearing this, Yer immediately shifted his attention, more interested in the delicious antelope meat. Meanwhile, Rak was staring at the gold plate in his hands, lost in thought. Everything in the world will die, decay, or disappear. Nothing is eternal. This metal plate does not rot, which means that the person who made it tried to preserve something on it. The scene shifts to the night. Rak was sitting on a stone, holding the gold plate, still staring at the runes on it. He was sure that these symbols hid important secrets. Just then, a noise nearby caught his attention. He saw a few insects circling above the antelope meat, as if conveying some sort of message. Rak carefully observed the insects' movements and found that their trajectories were very similar to the symbols on the gold plate. Following the insects' hints, he re-engraved those symbols on the soil and soon discovered its secrets. The scene shifts to the morning. Rak shared his discoveries with Jael first thing. He carved two symbols on the soil, one representing male and the other female. Between them, he added a symbol in the shape of a small stream, meaning to become mates. This is my answer. Rak, do you know what this means? Yes, I know. As a result, the Lizardman tribe invented writing and created their own script. These are achievements that typically take generations to accomplish, yet they were achieved in the early stages of the tribe. For Nebula, this was undoubtedly a huge advantage. At this time, the Lizardman tribe was celebrating a festival. On the surface, it seemed like just an ordinary hunting event, but in reality, it was the Lizardmen's way of celebrating a wedding. Capturing the largest prey as a gift for a spouse symbolized their strength and loyalty. Nebula looked forward to the future that Rak and Jael as mates would lead the Lizardman tribe towards. The scene shifts to a few days later. After ensuring a supply of food, Rak decided to lead his people out of the forest. He told the goblin leader that the threat had been cleared and they could continue living there. The goblin leader expressed sincere gratitude for Rak's help. Without your help, we might have had to continue wandering in the wilderness. Then, he introduced his child and mentioned that his child was very familiar with the terrain and willing to help Rak navigate. There are many wild animals and traps in the forest. He can help you avoid dangers. The scene shifts. The Lizardman tribe found some strange footprints on the ground along the way. Rak, seeing such marks for the first time, immediately asked the experienced one-armed man, "Do you know what these are?" The one-armed lizard recognized them immediately as frogmen's footprints. He explained that frogmen are an extremely cunning species, with both good and bad among them. Since they came scouting, it means they must have experienced combat. From these footprints, there are at least 5 or more. They must be from a tribe even larger than the Lizardmen. Afterwards, Rak decided to return to the camp first. The first thing he did upon returning to camp was to double the size of the camp area and deploy many more scouts and border guards. While ensuring tasks were assigned, he also emphasized the fair distribution of work to maintain internal stability in the tribe. Rak knew that another tribe was definitely watching them, so he prepared in advance. A few days after they moved their base, they no longer encountered frogmen. During this time, they made extensive preparations to ensure the safety of the tribe. Nebula felt proud of this. He believed that few players could be more successful than him. The Lizardman tribe not only developed livestock farming, their housing and lifestyle were also rapidly evolving to adapt to the changing environment. Most fascinating was that they soon established the concept of writing. These characters were shared among tribe members and, combined with traditional hunting marks and symbols, they drew a primitive map. Rak also recorded the harvest of each person that day, which not only improved individual efficiency but also significantly increased food production. This change can be described as a qualitative leap. On the other hand, the locust population was also steadily growing, and now Nebula's insect territory had reached level 4. Nebula found it unbelievable, a development method he could not have imagined in his dreams. Insects on other continents are reproducing quickly. Should I try to benefit from this situation? Nebula wondered. Rak's abilities and the tribe's status were now above average, but this was just the beginning, because what happened next was going to be more dangerous than any crisis they had faced before. Just then, Yer came running to Rak in a panic. Frogmen have come to visit. Moments later, a group of frogmen appeared before Rak. Adhering to the principle of peaceful coexistence, Rak decided to personally go and welcome them. When he saw the frogmen, he couldn't help but frown, because he noticed that there was a lizard man among the frogmen. This made Rak immediately realize that the situation was not simple. Could they be coming to make peace? Upon arrival, the frogmen introduced themselves first. "I am Shinnon, son of the great tribal leader Alroy. We have no intention of opposing your tribe." Rak greeted them. "I'm tribal leader Rak. Our Lizardman tribe also has no intention of dealing with you. Why have you come to meet us?" Then, the frogmen explained their purpose. The Lizardman tribe had encroached on their territory. To this, Rak did not agree. He calmly said, "This place was originally a wilderness, with no marks or traces of frogman activity. If we truly encroached on your territory, I apologize for that. However, that is not the case, as we migrated from a distant place and could only temporarily settle here." Rak then shifted the conversation, complimenting, "It seems you are the ideal candidate to meet the requirements of the next leader, don't you think?" Shinnon was somewhat embarrassed by this sudden praise. Rak quickly grasped the situation through the conversation. As he had guessed, the frogmen's visit was not merely a simple visit. They were sent by their tribal leader to closely monitor the Lizardman tribe. What made Rak more suspicious was the presence of a Lizardman among the frogmen, which was very questionable. Rak thought, I need to carefully gather their information. Then, he proposed inviting the frogmen to the village for a detailed discussion and stated, let's celebrate our agreement. Shin'en was about to agree when a frogman behind him interrupted, forcing him to reluctantly refuse. Is that so? I cannot simply send off those who have done us Lizardmen a favor. Just a simple meal, that's all. Hearing it was just a meal, the frogman finally nodded and accepted the invitation. The scene shifts. Rak prepare a roasted whole sheep, warmly hosting them. He kept the frogmen around to clarify the relationship between the Lizardman and the frogmen and their true purpose for the visit. But Rak knew not to let the frogmen see his curiosity. To build rapport, Rak intentionally made conversation with Shin'en, asking, what are those feathers on you? These are feathers of the cockatrice, a very dangerous creature. They are huge, venomous, and very fast. Curious, Rak asked, can they be killed with a spear? Hearing this, Shin'en scoffed and then ordered the Lizardman Owen to bring his bow and arrow. After receiving the bow and arrows, Shin'en instructed Owen to hang a target at a distance, preparing to demonstrate his archery skills. Rak saw through this, but also realized that this might be an opportunity. After the frogmen displayed their precise archery, Rak said, I'd like to give it a try. He deliberately shot the arrow off target, and as expected, Owen was called over to pick up the scattered arrows. Rak used the excuse of practicing archery to walk over and pick up the arrows, using this as an opportunity to have a one-on-one interaction with Owen. After contacting Owen, Rak found that Owen constantly emphasized their mutually supportive relationship with the frogmen, but it was precisely this deliberate statement that further confirmed Rak's suspicion. There was definitely something fishy going on. Even though Rak indicated to Owen, Lizardmen are stronger than frogmen, Owen repeatedly emphasized, without the protection of the frogmen, we cannot survive. Then, Rak said, forget the conversation we just had. If anyone asks, say we were discussing archery. The scene shifts. The frogmen thoroughly enjoyed the herb-treated lamb, praising it highly. Rak then mentioned, beef tastes even better. Shin'en agreed, it's been a while since we caught any wild buffalo. Rak smiled and said, we caught some alive. Hearing this, Shin'en paused. Seizing the moment, Rak proposed, we could trade them for bows and arrows. Shin'en quickly agreed, but just then, a warning noise came from behind. Immediately, Shin'en changed his tone. Our tribe members bear no hostility towards the Lizardmen. Look how well Owen gets along with us. Then, he called Owen to talk about his treatment in the Frogman tribe. Hearing this, Rak became more vigilant. Shin'en spoke about these matters in a relaxed tone, as if they had been prepared in advance. If Rak had not previously interrogated Owen carefully, he might now believe what he said. Time quickly passed, and after a brief conversation, the frogmen bid farewell to the Lizardman tribe. Before leaving, Shin'en patted Owen on the shoulder, but Owen appeared unusually frightened. All of this was observed by Rak, who realized this was not like an equal interpersonal relationship. The scene shifts back to the Frogman tribe. As expected, the frogmen began questioning Owen, demanding to know the contents of his conversation with Rak. It was just inquiries about bows and arrows, but a scar-faced frog clearly did not believe him and kicked Owen. Owen, enduring the pain, explained, if I hadn't said that, he wouldn't have believed us. That is true. That's why I acted like I couldn't tell him, and that he should pay fee if he wanted to learn. What did he say? He said it was a shame he couldn't give me anything right away and gave up asking. Shin'en agreed with this and praised Owen for his good performance. Then, the frogmen made Owen look at the people in prison on the island, guarded closely. If you want them to live, then follow my commands. The new sacrifice has already appeared. Hearing this, Owen helplessly said, I will do as you say. Originally, when Owen's tribe arrived here, the frogmen issued a friendly invitation. Unexpectedly, it was a trap. Their tribe was thus subdued, their population reduced to less than 200, while the frogmen's tribe had as many as 1,500 people. This was mainly because the frogmen have a powerful deity, a huge two-headed serpent, that controls the frogmen. Owen mentioned the leader of the Blackscale tribe, who appeared to be a strong warrior, with about 600 people in his tribe. But Owen did not have confidence in their strength, as they did not even know how to use bows and arrows. Owen struggled internally. As long as they are sacrificed, we'll be able to live for a longer time. Please wait, my son. Daddy will make those Lizardmen come here. The scene shifts. A few days later, the frogmen did not expect that the Lizardman tribe could successfully capture wild buffalo and keep them enclosed. Rak suggested, trade them for bows and arrows, and you can take the buffalo back. Just then, Owen spoke, while we trade items, we can get to know each other better. After all, we don't know enough about the Blackscale tribe yet. He then invited Rak to visit the Frogman village, promising, if you come, we will provide more resources. The scene shifts. Rak was testing the bows and arrows he had made, but found that their range was only half that of the frogmen's. He understood that although their design was close, they naturally could not achieve the original's performance due to not knowing the specific manufacturing materials. As the visits from the frogmen became more frequent, Rak gradually realized realized that behind the frogmen's propagated peace, there actually lay some undisclosed motives. Under the guise of faith, they might be plotting something. The problem is, Rakrak still does not know their specific plans, so the Lizardman tribe must remain highly vigilant. Meanwhile, the Lizardman tribe made significant progress in herbal research, as there was a doctor in the tribe knowledgeable about herbs. Rakrak and Jael also began discussing Owen's situation, with Jael suggesting, perhaps we can give Owen a chance. I believe he is being coerced by the frogmen. On the other side, because Owen had not succeeded in inviting Rakrak to the frogman village, he was suffering punishment from the frogmen. Shannon signaled to Scarface to stop, saying, he can't die yet. Scarface, upon hearing this, shoved Owen away but simultaneously warned him to speed up the progress. The frogmen demanded that Owen complete the task quickly, as they planned to hold the ritual in advance. The plan of the frogman village was to lure the Lizardman leader and warriors to the village before the ritual and capture them all. They decided to act early because the frogman chief was gravely ill and could no longer afford to delay. This was a secret among the frogmen, but Shannon felt it wouldn't hurt to tell Owen. He mentioned a strange disease that caused intense itching all over the body. At first, a white membrane covers the skin, and as the disease worsens, the membrane spreads until the frogman can no longer breathe and suffocates to death. Owen was hearing for the first time that itching could be a deadly disease. He felt incredulous and was curious as to why Shannon would tell him this. He speculated that perhaps the frogmen were testing him. Then Owen said, we shouldn't let the Black Scale tribe know about this, but Shannon motioned for him to let it be, because you can't hide fire with paper. Immediately, Owen thought of a plan. He could tell the Lizardmen that this disease could also infect them. He proposed using some medicine to induce itching on their skin in order to confuse the Lizardmen. Upon hearing this, Shannon approved the plan and promised, if you succeed in luring the Lizardman leader out, we will unconditionally release your child. Meanwhile, Owen made a request. Could I bring some bows and arrows with me? It would make the offer seem more sincere. Though Shannon were somewhat reluctant, they eventually agreed. The scene shifts. The frogmen visited again, bringing many supplies, while the Lizardman tribe traded herbs in exchange. However, the frogmen said, this is still far from enough, and once again mentioned the faith of peace. Rakrak had long suspected their true intentions, and he made a request. I would like to have a separate conversation with Owen alone. Upon hearing this, Shannon agreed to his request. A moment later, Rakrak took Owen to a secluded place. Just as Rakrak had anticipated, Owen was still promoting the frogmen as very friendly toward them. Owen hoped that Rakrak would set aside his doubts and build trust with him. At that moment, a blue butterfly flew in and landed on Owen's head. Rakrak watched the scene and then said, there have been many suspicions and doubts between us, but it's time for all of that to end. Let me tell you everything about us, everything for the tribe. Rakrak squatted on the ground and drew some symbols with a stick. Owen, looking at these symbols, couldn't help but ask, what are these? These symbols are what we call letters. Each has its own meaning. For example, this symbol means refuse or no, while another symbolizes lie or fake. Owen curiously asked, can they be combined together? Of course, if you put these two symbols together, it means do not lie. In other words, it can also mean truthful. This explanation left Owen very confused. He asked, why don't you tell the frogmen this, but tell me instead? Rakrak, seeing the confusion in Owen's heart, explained, because of faith. Between the Lizardman tribe and the Frogman tribe, I'm more interested in the trust between you and me. Owen seemed reluctant and said softly, there's no need to differentiate between frogmen and lizardmen. But Rakrak interrupted him directly. From the beginning, I haven't trusted anything about the frogmen. I know this matter is very complicated. We understand those who are marginalized and expelled very well, because we have experienced the same as you. Hearing this, Owen appeared very hesitant and awkward, not expecting Rakrak to deduce everything. Seeing Owen's reaction, Rakrak understood that he had been shaken, as signs of faith began to appear. The scene shifts. At that moment, Shannon was praising Owen. Well done. The Lizardman tribe plans to visit our tribe. Scarface Frog chimed in. They are so foolish, actually inviting us to visit their tribe. Now we know the size and actual number of the Lizardman tribe. Unexpectedly, the actual number is half of what we had estimated during our scouting. There are only a little over 300 people. Shannon looked at Owen satisfied. All thanks to our great contributor. Tell me, what do you want? Owen spoke softly. I just need you to release my son. Scarface Frog obviously was reluctant. The chief won't agree. Shannon reassured. Don't worry, I will remember my promise. The scene shifts. Evening. At this time, Owen was caught in deep hesitation. He didn't know whether he should help the people of the Black Scale tribe. Even though Rakrak appeared confident, the number of frogmen was simply too great, and the Lizardmen didn't even know how to use bows and arrows, let alone the frogmen warriors' secret weapons. Owen kept telling himself, don't trust them, but deep down, his thoughts involuntarily revealed themselves. Rakrak, why do you trust me? I'm just a swindler. The scene shifts to the next day. Rakrak leads the tribe's warriors to the frogmen's tribe. Shannon immediately comes out to greet them warmly, saying, welcome. I hope our two tribes can exchange in friendship. Rakrak acknowledges Shannon's welcome, but the Lizardman tribe's warriors come fully armed, because we were worried about encountering monsters along the way. Shannon, although smiling, had already planned everything in his mind. mind. He planned to get Rak drunk at the feast and then kill him with a poison arrow. Rak looks around, searching for Owen. Shin'en points to a spot. He's over there preparing the feast. Owen is currently squatting on the ground, carving something. Rak notices that he seems to be marking the positions of the Black Scale Tribe's warriors. Then, Rak calls out to Owen. Owen greets Rak as usual and reminds him, once the Black Scale Tribe's warriors sit down, the banquet officially starts. This is an interesting meeting for peaceful exchange. Rak looks at the symbols on the ground, already understanding everything. He then puts on a bullhead mask, signaling to his warriors. The banquet begins. The Lizardman warriors were already prepared. In the next instant, their spears pierce through the Frogmen archers. The Frogmen, completely unprepared for such a swift action by the Lizardmen, are instantly routed. Rak calmly commands, "Let none escape." In moments, most of the Frogmen's assassination squad is dealt with the rest scattering in retreat. Yer then reports to Rak. Next, the Frogmen will likely retaliate with bows and arrows. Don't worry, because we have already prepared for this. Then, Rak calls Owen aside, as there's an important task only he can complete. On the other side, Shin'en is furious, cursing Owen and his entire family. He did not expect Owen to turn traitor so quickly. Soon, the Frogmen rally their warriors on the other side, stating, "The Lizardmen are at the end of their tether. We far outnumber them, and as long as we hold out until reinforcements arrive, victory will ultimately be ours." In an instant, arrows soaked in venom are shot directly at the Lizardmen, and even a scratch would cause agonizing death. However, the Frogmen do not know that the Lizardmen are already prepared. An army holding shields appears in front of the Frogmen. The Frogmen's arrows cannot penetrate these shields, and seeing this, Shin'en is momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected that all the arrows would be deflected by the Lizardmen's shields. These shields, meticulously crafted, couldn't even be penetrated by spears, let alone small arrows. Shin'en immediately ordered, "Keep firing arrows, stop them from advancing." But just then, a strange smell drifted over. Shin'en turned to see that thick smoke had already covered most of the sky, greatly reducing the accuracy of the Frogmen archers. It turned out, this was the task Rak had given to Owen, to sneak into the Frogmen's village, rescue the trapped companions, and set fire to the houses of the Frogmen village. After completing his task, Owen quickly returned to his companions, signaling them to join the resistance. Although the trapped Lizardman companions were clearly hesitant, Owen firmly said, "This is your only chance. We must trust the Black Scale Tribe. They will definitely defeat the Frogmen." Meanwhile, when the Frogmen realized their village was under attack, they understood that other Lizardmen had also joined the rebellion. Shin'en had no choice but to retreat temporarily, but a nearby Frogman warrior obviously disagreed. "We've already lost many warriors. Why retreat?" Shin'en cursed internally, "Idiot. If the tribe's heir is endangered, the entire tribe is doomed." Then, the warrior suggested, "Should we let the two-headed serpent god fight?" Shin'en was clearly reluctant to use this trump card. Isn't there a more reliable method? On the other side, when Scarface saw the village on fire, he realized that a full-scale war with the Lizardman tribe had erupted. His subordinates reported to him, "There are only about 15 people left with Shin'en." Scarface pondered for a moment and said, "Including us here, we still have 45 people. We still have a numerical advantage." He then ordered, "Let all soldiers coat their arrows with frog poison, ready to support Shin'en." Just then, a huge noise came from the bushes nearby, chilling the Frogmen. "That noise can only be made by a monster," Scarface murmured quietly. In an instant, the Frogmen shot poison arrows in that direction. However, they were soon horrified. A huge drake appeared before them. The drake, Manon, blocked all the poison arrows, even swallowing them without harm. Before the Frogmen could react, Manon charged at them, biting and killing a Frogman in one bite. Scarface reacted quickly, dodging Manon's attack, and then he ordered, "Throw the poison frogs. Everyone throw together. That's the only way to poison it." Manon precisely swallowed all the poison frogs in one gulp, crunching noisily as if enjoying the taste of chicken. Why did they throw away the poison frogs? If they wanted to kill Manon with poison, they clearly miscalculated. The answer was simple. Manon had received the blessing of the nameless beetle god, making the poison completely ineffective against him. This realization drove Scarface to complete despair, but there was no chance for him to turn the situation around now. Manon stared at him like prey, and in the next instant, Scarface fell. Everything went silent. On the other side, the Frogmen tried to launch a sneak attack on Rak from behind, but Rak showed no intention of dodging. With a single tail swing, he knocked the arrows down. Immediately, Yer rushed forward to finish off the Frogman, quickly dispatching one. Meanwhile, Owen's tribe members joined the battle as well. However, Rak found it strange that the Frogmen's leader, Alroy, had yet to appear. Looking at the entire battlefield, Nebula's lips curled slightly, thinking to himself, "Of course, it's because of me." It turned out that when Rak had decided to leave the sacred land, Nebula, 100 kilometers away from the Frogmen's village, had discovered a deadly mucus virus. This virus had a strong ability to spread and a high mortality rate. Most importantly, it only affected the mucous membranes of amphibians. Nebula used a group of wasps to successfully carry the virus into the Frogmen's village, and it quickly spread. After the outbreak, the Frogmen's leader, Alroy, disappeared. Alroy, mistakenly believing that sacrificing humans could cure the disease, captured many lizardmen, but it turned out that this had no effect on alleviating the illness. Now, Wirae was preparing to sacrifice the captured children again to the two-headed snake god, hoping to save his tribe and his own life. He requested that the god kill all the lizardmen. Meanwhile, Owen, exhausted, found Rakrak, his face frantic. Seeing this, Rakrak immediately asked, "What's the urgent matter?" Gasping for breath, Owen said, "Go to the small island in the middle of the lake. They're sacrificing children to the two-headed snake. That god might not cure their disease, but you have enough power to stop it." Upon hearing this, Rakrak said, "This needs careful consideration. All their manpower is on the island. If we rush there, we won't be able to withstand the frogmen's archery, and we may face an ambush in the water." Owen pleaded, "Please help me. My son is being used as a sacrifice." In an instant, Rakrak's gaze turned fierce. In anger, he punched Owen in the face, shouting, "You idiot! You should have trusted me. I don't believe in the god those clumsy frogs worship. I believe we can defeat it with our own strength. If that so-called god really shows up and attacks me, I'll tell you how to crush it. But why didn't you tell me earlier to save the children?" Despite Rakrak's anger, Jail was at a loss for a moment. If they had known Shunan's intentions earlier, they might have been able to devise a strategy. On the other side, under the frogman's summoning, the two-headed serpent finally appeared before them. The frogman knelt and shouted, "Great God, here, I offer my offerings. Please punish these black-scale lizardmen." From afar, Owen was watching all this, filled with despair. He knew time was running out. However, Rakrak firmly said, "We still have a chance. Although we don't have the geographical advantage this time and can only confront them head-on, we must make some sacrifices to save those children." Just then, a blue butterfly flew by, and Rakrak immediately signaled Owen to look up. "Do you believe in miracles?" As the butterfly danced, a colossal figure appeared before everyone. Rakrak immediately recognized it as the incarnation of the nameless beetle god. The great battle between the two-headed serpent and the mantis deity was about to erupt. When the frogman's leader summoned the two-headed serpent, he knelt and prayed, "God, please accept this sacrifice. Please kill all these black lizardmen." However, the two-headed serpent did not heed his prayer, which left the frogman's leader bewildered. Usually, it starts being insatiable from the sacrifices. Why this time? He looked up and was startled by the scene behind him. A giant mantis was coldly watching them, its oppressive presence breathtaking. What in the world is this? Could it also be a deity? In contrast, the two-headed serpent seemed tiny before the mantis. Feeling threatened, the serpent issued a deep warning growl. This mantis, named Sratus, was a creature created by Nebula. Using the crustacean's inner core and belief values previously obtained, he endowed it with life. Sratus appeared as a giant mantis, but at this point in time, almost no other player could create such a powerful creature as quickly as Nebula. The battle erupted. The two-headed serpent attacked, its sharp venomous fangs striking at Sratus, but Sratus easily caught them. The frogmen hiding under the serpent scattered in all directions. Even the frogman's leader nearly got crushed by the two-headed serpent. Then, the other head of the two-headed serpent also attacked, but before Sratus' sharp scythe, the serpent had no chance to defend itself. With a swing of the scythe, the serpent was split in two like chopping vegetables. Then, Sratus issued a hollow and deep voice. "A little water snake dares to call itself a god? You are just an animal. Now, I will sacrifice you to my master, to cleanse you of your sins." With his immense strength, Sratus easily tore apart the two-headed serpent. Thus, the snake god worshipped by the frogmen perished on the battlefield. Sratus' attributes were enough to crush the two-headed serpent. Seeing the serpent dealt with, cheers erupted from the black scale tribe. Everyone's heart filled with gratitude towards the nameless beetle god. Watching Sratus' performance, Nebula felt very satisfied. It looks huge, but it can be stored in the summoning space, and the randomly added strength skills greatly enhance its scythe attributes. At the same time, Nebula gained another inner core, surprised at his own good fortune. This inner core had the ability to create a domain, but when he clicked yes, a message box informed him that he obtained a small area of seawater. However, he could not use it because the freshwater environment did not match the domain requirements. Nebula had to set aside the inner core for now, thinking, someday it will be useful. On the other side, Wirae stood dumbfounded, completely unable to accept what had happened. He had not expected their two-headed snake god to be defeated so easily. In front of Sratus, all the frogman warriors turned into cowards, afraid to step forward. Sratus slowly turned its head, signaling to Nebula, "Master, the task is completed. Well done, you can rest now." In the next instant, Sratus disappeared before everyone's eyes, and all was calm. "Rakrak, you won't just sit and wait, will you?" The frogmen were sailing towards the upper village, and there was no longer any trace of frogmen on the island. "Today, we will achieve a perfect victory. Is there anyone willing to lead us to the frogmen's village?" Owen was the first to stand up, confidently stating, "I am fully capable of taking on this task." At that moment, a member of the grayscale lizardmen stepped forward and pleaded, "Please let us help you too." Tribal leader Rakrak. However, Rakrak responded, "This is a dangerous mission, and you are not warriors." The grayscale lizardmen firmly replied, "It is not only warriors who can kill frogmen. The frogmen have sacrificed our children and families to the two-headed serpent, and now we only seek vengeance." Rakrak saw their anger and then said, "Everyone has the right to be angry. glory. All who seek vengeance, I will stand with you. All the Lizardmen quickly crossed the lake, determined and focused on their objective. Fortunately, the children were all safe, and Owen finally reunited with his son. Seeing this, Rakrak finally felt relief. He then signaled to Ur, prepare the boats to send the children away, then led the Grayscale tribe around to the rear of the Frogmen's village to confuse them. Upon hearing this, Ur immediately understood Rakrak's intentions. Your plan is to hit both sides at once? Correct. Once the Frogmen are drawn to you, I will lead the soldiers across the water to launch the attack. Ur asked with some concern, but is such a plan feasible? Don't worry, I've discovered another blessing from the god. Under the moonlight, our black scales appear like mist, capable of confusing the enemy's vision. This is their end. A moment later, the Frogmen's village was in complete disarray. The villagers were frantically preparing to flee, but before Alroy could recover, the Lizardmen tribe launched their attack. Alroy had not expected the Lizardmen to arrive so quickly, and the Lizardmen's pike formation rendered the Frogmen's arrows ineffective, giving them no chance to react. Rakrak quickly confronted the Frogmen's tribal leader, Alroy, and coldly said, "This ends now." But Alroy was still deluded that the two-headed serpent would save him. "I have sacrificed so many. Great God, please save me." Rakrak ignored him, and with a thrust of his spear, Alroy's sinful life came to an end. "Your god isn't here anymore." Elsewhere, Shunin realized that the situation was lost. "Although we outnumber them and have poison arrows, I never expected the Black Scale tribe to be resistant to toxins. Poisoning is completely useless," Shunin muttered to himself. As he searched desperately for an escape, Rakrak quietly appeared behind him. "So, this is where you've been hiding." Upon seeing Rakrak, Shunin instantly collapsed to the ground, his face full of terror. Rakrak looked down at him from above and coldly said, "Stand up like a warrior, protect your last honor with your weapon, and fight me." Shunin, however, frantically bowed and begged for mercy, even trying to play the emotional card. "For the sake of our past friendship, could you let me go? I was also threatened by the two-headed monster." Seeing that Rakrak remained unmoved, he quickly added, "I can tell you the secret of the bows. I'll tell you all the materials needed." At these words, Rakrak showed some interest. "What materials?" Shunin sighed with relief and said with a fawning expression, "It's a tendon." Rakrak frowned and coldly asked, "What species of tendon is it?" Shunin immediately became evasive, his words faltering. Seeing his behavior, Rakrak seemed to have figured everything out. Memories flooded back. Earlier, when Shunin visited the Lizardman tribe, he had mentioned, "Only we know the materials for making bows, and Lizardmen can easily obtain them." But the Lizardman tribe had tried many materials and still couldn't complete the task. Now, Rakrak finally understood the truth. The Frogmen had killed hundreds of Lizardmen just to harvest their tendons to make bows. Back to the present, Rakrak remained silent for a moment, then opened the tent flap and coldly said, "Go, Shunin. We have no grudges. I'll honor our deal." Shunin froze for a moment, then turned and ran out, filled with joy at the thought of having just saved his life. Owen, witnessing all of this, asked with confusion on his face, "Are you really letting him go?" "It's okay. I just needed a moving target." Suddenly, a bowstring shot an arrow straight through his foot. The intense pain shot through his whole body, and Shunin collapsed heavily to the ground. At the same time, the Grayscale tribe rushed over. Shunin tried to struggle and escape again, but the Lizardmen decisively delivered a fatal blow. Thus, the war between the Frogmen and the Lizardmen was definitively concluded. A few days later, after several days of practice, Rakrak's archery skills had significantly improved, and the bows had also been greatly refined. However, there were still shortcomings. The bow would break if pulled slightly more than its capacity, despite the substitution of new materials for the bowstrings. If only there were materials to strengthen the bow arms. There are no stronger materials than this in the forest. Although the Frogmen also use this material, the bows cannot withstand the great strength of Lizardmen. It seems we should not limit ourselves to just this forest. Winter is approaching. If we want to feed the buffaloes, we must move some people to warmer places. Then, Rakrak inquired about the situation of the Frogmen's escape. Owen reported, "They have been mostly annihilated." "Is your target Alroy?" "No way. Alroy's body was damaged as much as Shunin's. He will be on someone's head like Shunin's skull are on your head." Come to think of it, when I was ambushing the Frogmen, just as Owen was about to speak, a disturbance nearby interrupted them. Jail curiously approached a child hiding behind a tree and asked, "Child, what are you doing here?" Jail's appearance startled the child. "Are you here to find Rakrak?" Meanwhile, something on the ground caught Jail's attention. She picked it up curiously. It was a rudimentary handmade wooden carving. Rakrak immediately recognized it as an effigy of their guardian deity. He carefully examined the small doll and then affirmed the child's work. "You've made it very beautifully." Hearing Rakrak's praise, a happy smile appeared on the child's face. "This is a gift for our great tribe leader." Owen gestured to Rakrak to accept it with peace of mind, adding, "The children in the village all like to make these crafts and use them for exchange. Are there many such carvings in the village?" "Yes, because the guardian saved us, so he is the idol of all the children." Rakrak also thought this was a good practice and signaled to Owen, "We can produce more of these, so everyone remembers the great guardian." At this moment, Rakrak remembered the words Owen had not finished saying. "It was inside the cave where they were hiding I discovered something odd." Soon after, Owen led the others to the entrance of the cave. "This is the the entrance. The frogmen used it as a hideout. Owen felt that this place was very mysterious, suspecting that it hid some secrets. When Rakrak saw the mysterious patterns on the stone wall, he was also startled. He observed carefully and found that these hard stones were carved exquisitely, and he was also surprised to notice that these patterns very closely resembled the patterns on the backs of insects. Only Nebula knew that this was actually an ancient ruin. There are many types of ancient ruins. Some ruins provide ancient knowledge or uncover miracles. Some of these ruins have important functions, and in certain ones, you could even acquire magic or relics. These relics are often fixed in a special location due to their unique resources or mystical blessings. For the nomadic Lizardman tribe, whose current level of civilization is still low, the value of such relics might not be apparent. Nevertheless, Nebula was secretly praying that this was not the ruins of a demonic castle. As Rakrak pushed open the stone door, a dazzling light emitted from inside, and a deep, majestic voice sounded. "Who has awakened me? Stranger, welcome to the demonic world." They entered an ancient abandoned city and found a secret space within these ruins. In the center of the clearing stood several arch bridges tens of meters high, extending downward in a zigzag pattern. Should we consult the nameless beetle god? Such trivial matters should not trouble God. I believe we can resolve them ourselves. Suddenly, a mighty sound came from afar. In the passage below, countless eyes were staring at them. When the people saw clearly, they realized those were a group of enormous rats. Why are those rats crying so much? These should be nutrias. We've eaten them a few times on the road before, but typically nutrias are only about 60 centimeters long, while these in front of us are at least 1 meter long and could weigh tens of kilograms. Moreover, normal nutrias do not appear in groups, nor do they use their teeth to attack people aggressively. Rakrak realized that these rats were not ordinary and named them rat monsters. He speculated that these rat monsters might be guardians of the ruins. Rakrak immediately ordered everyone, prepare for battle. In the next instant, the rat monsters indeed launched a fierce attack. In front of the Lizardman tribe warriors' spears, the rat monsters quickly fell, and the remaining ones scattered in retreat. Rakrak looked at these enormous rat monsters and pondered, we should be able to eat these creatures. Perhaps we could domesticate them, just like the wild buffalo. If possible, I think fish farming could be feasible as well. Rakrak asked doubtfully, don't fish disappear on their own? He recalled the swamps and ponds he had lived near, where the fish gradually dwindled as they were caught and eventually disappeared. Owen refuted his view. When I lived with the frogmen, I know that in large ponds, this is not the case. Fish lay eggs and breed fry. During the breeding season, the frogmen even warned us not to fish. Just then, a warrior holding a rat monster's body suddenly screamed. Rakrak quickly turned around and asked, what's wrong? The warrior was clutching his hand in pain. My hand, it feels like it's been burned. I only touched it briefly and felt a sharp pain. At this moment, a sizzling sound surrounded the rat monster's body. Rakrak hesitated, then extended a finger and lightly touched the rat monster's body. Suddenly, a powerful force surged through his body, causing him an instant paralysis. Jael anxiously asked, are you alright? Are you hurt? Don't worry. It seems this creature can electrify upon contact. Only Nebula, observing from a distance, knew what this meant. This is exactly what I was hoping not to see, a demonic castle. He thought to himself, if Rakrak breaks through this ancient ruin to the end, there is a high probability that he will obtain demonic power. Obtaining magical properties does not immediately make you a wizard, but the magic properties get stronger with each generation. We can create wizards in future generations, but there is a problem. In Lost World, divinity and magic are in conflict. According to the lore of the game, magic originates from ancient evil, not from God. High-level wizards create their own forces without relying on gods. If the number of people affected by this increases, there will be a penalty for building faith. It's not that here is no way to overcome it, but if you get it early in the game, there are too many variables. Slowly, the demonic ruins will reveal their true colors and tempt you. Meanwhile, a creature resembling a devil fish suddenly appeared in front of Rakrak. Visitor, do you desire that kind of power? If you are willing, I can bestow it upon you. However, Rakrak did not immediately respond to its proposal. Jael reminded him from the side, your condition is not good right now. We should go back and make thorough preparations first. Let's take the rat monsters back with spears first. Rakrak noticed that he was the only one who could see this mysterious creature. The devil fish explained, I am the guardian spirit of this place, visible only to those of great power. You only need to think it, and I can hear your conversation. Rakrak then asked, what power did you mention just now? Nebula was also observing all this, hesitating whether to remind Rakrak. If I don't remind him, given his personality, he will surely reach the end of the ancient ruins. But when Nebula checked Rakrak's data again, he discovered a new unique attribute that had appeared, trickery. This ability could help Rakrak identify others' deceptive actions and increase his alertness. Nebula speculated that this ability might have appeared after Rakrak defeated the Frogman tribe. Therefore, he decided to wait and see what would happen next. At this moment, the devil fish was explaining the power it had mentioned. Its name is electricity, a power that can melt living beings and release a brightness like the sun. I can bestow it upon you. Rakrak, upon hearing this, expressed his gratitude. If you are willing to give it to me, I would be glad to accept it. However, However, the devilfish changed its tune. There is a condition to obtain it. Rak immediately frowned and said coldly, "Why didn't you mention any conditions before?" Seeing this, the devilfish clearly panicked and hastily added, "The condition is simple. You just need to possess enough strength. When making a deal, conditions should be stated first. You need to clearly tell me what you can offer and what you hope to get from me." The devilfish appeared even more nervous and kept apologizing. "Sorry, I didn't explain it clearly. What are the conditions to obtain this power? If there are any more secrets, this will be our last conversation." Rak waited for the spirit to elaborate further. "I can fly freely in this space, but I cannot leave here. Only by breaking free from these bindings can I regain my freedom. What needs to be done to break the seal? It's simple. Just defeat the creature guarding my seal below, and you will gain the power." "Is the power you mentioned the same as the electricity those rat monsters have?" "Yes, but the electricity in their bodies is minimal. You can train it by continually using this power, making it stronger, and even able to call down lightning from the sky. This growing power can rival that of gods. Not just you, your family members can also gain this power. Although your achievements can't be directly inherited, your descendants, if they keep training, might become even stronger than you." Hearing this, Rak was astounded. He couldn't help asking, "If such powerful abilities exist, why are you still trapped here?" "Because my power is too strong. People always stay away from dangerous things. If they can't stay away, they bind it." "Well, then, you just admitted yourself to be a dangerous entity. What are you hiding? Or is the downside of this power greater than its benefits?" "Stop lying. I warn you, if you continue to hide, I will go back now, completely seal the entrance to this cave, make sure no one ever finds this site, and warn my tribe's descendants never to enter here." The spirit suddenly panicked, and Nebula noticed that its intelligence wasn't as high. For those entering the demon ruins, resisting the spirit's temptation isn't easy. As expected, Rak's steadfastness was due to his newly acquired abilities. "In the distant past, I was a being that ruled this world. I originated from an ancient demon. Our existence has been forgotten by people. Even the gods do not remember us. I can't even remember my own origins. When I regained consciousness, I found myself trapped here." Hearing this, Rak said indifferently, "You two are a pitiable creature. This kind of mysterious power easily leads people astray. Because its origin is unknown, people believe the power belongs only to them. But in reality, they just happen to acquire it. Once they think this way, they tend to look down on those without power." Rak found it somewhat hard to understand, but agreed anyway. He thought about the previous blue scale leader and Alroy. "I suppose they were like that. Demon magic also turns people into that, right?" "Correct, but my power itself is neither good nor bad. Those who possess power simply decide by chance." Rak began to ponder what would happen if he acquired this power. He realized that this demonic power seemed different from the power granted by gods. The power of gods is given only to those chosen by the gods, and it is the gods who decide how it should be used. If a person is deemed unworthy of such power, others may become envious or even hostile. As power grows, people might begin to question or even despise the gods. Rak understood why this kind of power is considered dangerous, but he also felt its strength and allure. It could also enhance the tribe's overall combat effectiveness. If this power could be restricted by conditions, then it would be even more beneficial for the tribe's development. Rak agreed to the spirit's request but set several conditions. Although power can spread indiscriminately, if needed, one can also gain power through a ritual. If both these things are true, couldn't we also choose not to distribute the power indiscriminately but rather to certain chosen individuals? Why do that? That's not the point. If people think it is a divine gift, then from that moment, it is. Those chosen will believe the god granted them this power and will naturally develop faith and devotion. Thus, people will not defy the god. The spirit tried to object to Rak, but was at a loss for words. What Rak said was also consistent with the system of Lost World. If those who possess demon magic think the power is coincidental, then the faith points they gain would be penalized. However, if they mistakenly think it is a divine gift, it could actually bring more faith points. Then, Rak looked at the spirit and set a second condition: "You must also believe in our god." Hearing this, the spirit was stunned. "I am a demonic spirit, an existence older than your gods. None of that matters. What matters is what you choose to do next." The spirit slowly calmed down, but still felt that the gods would not like demonic spirits. "Don't think of our god with your standards. The nameless beetle god seems to be generous, and you seem useful. Will your god accept me if you accept the conditions? Actually, I'm not trapped in these ruins, but I rule them. That nutria, they were simply an attempt to break you down. It was a test to see if you qualify, but I still tricked you. Aren't you mad? I see. I understand. So you're forgiven. In such a damp and dark place, if you live with those rat monsters, I would get a bit eccentric too. You should go out and see more beautiful sights. What's your name?" "I'm Rak." "Good. The test is over. If your god accepts me, this ability will be yours. It's your choice. If you can change your faith, you'll find that the power you hold will no longer be bound by past mistakes, but can serve a new future." At that moment, a prompt appeared. "One of the demonic spirits wishes to be your subordinate. If you accept this, you will receive demonic domain, electricity. Do you accept?" Without hesitation, Nebula pressed the yes button. This is the only way to overcome penalties and acquire magic. "Well done, Rak. Perhaps meeting you is lucky for both of of us. Thus, Nebula acquired demonic domain, electricity. 9 years later, a tower made of buffalo bones stands in the wilderness, visible from a great distance. This bone tower, built on the foundation of the old tower first constructed by Rakrak, not only symbolizes the faith in the nameless beetle god, but has now become a milestone for the Lizardman tribe. A Lizardman is telling a human the story of their tribe. After listening, the man curiously asked, "But what does the nameless beetle god have to do with the thunderstorms? What color is lightning?" "It is blue." As the two were about to continue their conversation, a noise suddenly came from a distance. "Well, we will have to end our talk here. It looks like we have uninvited guests coming." "Those are gnolls. I have a question. Do they look like Sokkate's people?" The man paused for a moment, then answered, "They are defenseless, lack vigilance, and they are also poorly armed. To me, they are just wandering gnolls." Upon hearing this, Owen lowered his head, his expression complex, but with a hint of relief. "I think so as well. Then shall we break their spirit?" And at this moment, the completely unaware gnolls had no idea that danger was closing in. Suddenly, an arrow sliced through the air, appearing in front of the dog tribe members. Seeing this, one of the underlings immediately shouted, "We're under attack." Before they could react, a bolt of lightning struck from the sky, instantly enveloping them in a powerful electric current. "Damn it, it's the Lizardman tribe." Seeing this, Owen's face showed a look of satisfaction. The dog tribe members frantically fled the scene. Owen turned and smiled, saying, "Just to clarify, my name is Owen." Hearing this, the human was stunned. "I had no idea you were such an important figure." Then, Owen pulled out a stick from his chest. The end of the stick was rounded, and it was hollow inside. He gently exhaled, and a puff of smoke emerged from his mouth. The human finally understood. It was a pipe and tobacco, a ritual tool used by the chosen black-scale lizardmen. Owen noticed the human's puzzled expression and said lightly, "If you have something to ask, go ahead." "So," the human asked, "with such powerful abilities, why do you choose to live alone in this wilderness under such harsh conditions? This is something I can't understand." Owen exhaled a puff of smoke calmly and replied, "There's a reason for that. I am a man with a deep burden of sins." This made the human even more puzzled. "But the Lizardmen hold you in high regard. I have betrayed many of my kind, but someone showed me a path to redemption. By telling stories and recording writings, spreading the faith of the nameless beetle god, and the name of the tribal leader Rakrak. This is the way of atonement I have chosen." The human pondered. "Even if you don't do this, in this wilderness, no one is unaware of the existence of the black-scale tribe, especially Rakrak." Then, Owen curiously asked, "Are you also a wanderer?" The human scratched his beard and answered, "I'm not a wanderer. I come from Automation." Automation is an isolated valley, located at the southwestern end of the wilderness. It is also a region closely monitored by both the gnolls and the black-scale lizardmen. "So you are an envoy from the domain of Automation?" "Yes, I am here to visit the black-scale lizardmen and deliver a message from the king of Automation." "So you are our guest." I was disrespectful. After saying this, Owen blew a whistle, and a 2.5-meter-tall creature came running from the distance. The human was shocked. "Is that a cockatrice?" "You're only half right. This is a hybrid of cockatrice and a chicken." The human was stunned, not understanding how the Lizardmen tribe managed to achieve such interspecies hybridization. Then, Owen said, "I will personally take you to meet tribal leader Rakrak, but in return, you must listen to my stories the entire way." The scene shifts, and a formidable army of Lizardmen is advancing forward, with their leader, Rakrak, at the front. Just then, a messenger boy hurriedly ran up to Rakrak and said, "The one-armed elder says his life is in imminent danger." Hearing this, Rakrak's expression tightened, showing great concern. He knew there were many matters he needed to discuss with the elder. Thus, Rakrak immediately ordered, "Stop the procession, set up camp here." With his command, the warriors conveyed Rakrak's orders to the other Lizardmen. Watching the solemn expression on Rakrak's face, Jael approached him with concern and asked, "What has happened to you?" Rakrak told her about the situation with the one-armed. Jael also felt very sad after hearing this and said softly, "This is bound to be a sorrowful night." The one-armed Lizardman had made many contributions to Rakrak and the black-scale Lizardman tribe. Everyone in the tribe respected him greatly and gave him many titles: Elder, One-Armed Lizardman, Guide, Stargazer, but most often he was called the Elder. A moment later, Rakrak walked into the one-armed Lizardman's tent and quietly asked about his condition. The doctor sighed and apologized. "I have done all I could." The one-armed slightly opened his hazy eyes and said softly, "I remember now. I have done many things in my life. I have traveled many places, learned many things. Because I was missing an arm, I wandered for a long time until I met you, tribal leader. However, every lizard man will have this day. It's the natural law. There's only one way to cure this disease: sleeping forever." Rakrak sat silently by the bed, listening to him speak. Suddenly, the one-armed smiled. "So, I decided to indulge in my last journey. I wanted to steal the time of the busiest person in the tribe. Time is precious, isn't it?" Rakrak smiled too. "That's an interesting topic, but I don't think this is your last joke." Then, the one-armed asked meaningfully, "I have a question for you, and you are the only one qualified to answer it. What happens after we die?" Rakrak was silent for a moment, his brow slightly furrowed, as he was also unsure of the answer. "People often say that when you die, you will sleep forever. Do you think so too? Will we really sleep forever? Why do you think I am qualified qualified to answer this question. I think this way. The nameless beetle god taught us when we were lost. So, I believe that even if we die, he will surely guide us. Do you think this goes against the will of God? When we are lost, the nameless beetle god will guide us. Even after death, he will surely continue to guide us. Hearing Rakrak's answer, the one-armed showed a satisfied smile and then asked, then what do you think that place will be like? When we meet God, will it start with an awkward greeting? Rakrak, with his arms crossed, smiled and said, I'm not sure, but I think it won't be that boring. There will be a vast field where you can run as you wish. In this space, every step you take will make a slight creaking sound. The tip of your tail will joyfully swipe through the grass. There will be a giant rock where you can lie down to rest. The weather is usually good, but it wouldn't be fun if it was always the same. So sometimes it's cloudy, sometimes it rains. And there will also be a beautiful river. The one-armed, filled with anticipation, asked, is there really such a place? If possible, I hope to have a home there to rest, because I don't want to live in a tent. This elder has grown tired of being constantly on the move, and a tent means moving to another place again. I want to find a place to settle down. Rakrak looked up at the starry sky and said, we will get there one day, and I suppose God will take the stars with them too, because they can help us find our way home. Just then, Rakrak saw the guidance of the unnamed beetle god. A blue butterfly gently landed on the back of his hand. Do you see it? Rakrak asked softly, but at this moment, darkness clouded the one-armed lizardman's vision. His sight was blurry. Rakrak immediately became anxious. I have one more gift for you. The one-armed lizardman smiled weakly and said, what trick are you playing now? Are you gonna decline my gift again? As the one-armed lizardman's last breath touched the blue butterfly, it flapped its wings and flew away. Rakrak gently shook the one-armed lizardman's body, softly calling his name. The blue butterfly flew out of the tent, continuing towards the sky. Dusk gradually fell, and the wilderness was silent. Finally, the blue butterfly landed on another hand. What happens when you die in the lost world? Nebula knew the answer to this question well. The conditions to create the afterlife had been completed. Would you like to create an afterlife? Nebula clicked yes without hesitation. In the conditions of level, resources, and faith being met, players can advance their rank. This phase is called demigod, and they can create their own little world. The world after death is a very important element. When combined with a carefully designed worldview, it increases the player's chances of winning. The concept of heaven is commonly used alongside hell. If hell is the only destination after death, then there is no reason to believe in gods. Punishment should complement rewards, conveying a message of upholding morals and ethics. It could also serve as a training ground for warriors, as souls trained in the afterworld could also be sent back to the surface. However, currently, it is difficult for players to utilize the knowledge or power possessed by souls, as this requires a significant amount of faith points. But as the game progresses to later stages, souls become very helpful to players. There is no need to rush at the beginning. Many things are still in their initial stages. At this moment, Nebula is considering how to expand this little world and subsequently names it the Primordial Grassland. He then scatters all the souls across the Primordial Grassland. Hundreds of souls turn into blue wandering butterflies, landing on the prairie. These spirits, believing themselves to be butterflies once they land on the grass, remember that they were once lizardmen and revert to their previous forms. But in the Primordial Grassland, they bear no scars, no fatigue, and no deadly diseases. The lizardmen close their eyes to see if all this is a dream or reality, almost falling asleep beneath them. Just as Rakrak said, it's a vast grassland. Although there are no stone-built houses, he is quite satisfied. I suppose I don't need a house or anything. He looks up at the clear sky, his heart filled with peace and joy. This is perhaps the best gift. Looking out over the endless grassland, he recalls his last conversation with Rakrak. That talk seems like a dream, but is also very real. Now, the title one-armed no longer suits him. Stargazer might be better. Meanwhile, he notices other lizardmen lying on the grass. They are facing the sky with their eyes closed, seemingly not yet awake. The Stargazer wanders around, unsure whether he should wake them. They seem to be sleeping soundly, so waking them seems somewhat impolite. Among the other lizardmen, the Stargazer sees a few familiar faces. He recognizes one as one of the bravest warriors from a migration they once had, which was ambushed by goblins. Rakrak had split his forces to counterattack the goblins, not expecting a sneak attack from the middle. At that time, it was mostly the elderly and children here, and the one-armed could do nothing. In that critical moment, a young lizard man bravely stood up. The one-armed had taught him how to count, and this young warrior decided to trade his life for the survival of more. His heroic sacrifice was heartrending because if he thought it necessary, he would even defy the leader's orders. This was a scene no one wanted to see. For those warriors who never came back, Rakrak was very angry. He believed that perhaps he should not have taught them math. Warriors who are good at counting actually disobey my orders. They thought trading one life for two was good arithmetic, and Rakrak could only vent his frustration, unable to do anything else. The Stargazer observed the sleeping warrior, not waking him. His deeds had inspired many, and simply seeing him again brought joy to the Stargazer. A breeze swept through the grassland, snapping the Stargazer back to reality, suddenly filled with doubt. Do gods really exist in this place? At that moment, he saw a lizard man hiding behind a tree. He shouted loudly at the figure, then stood up and chased raced after it. But when he reached the tree, the figure had vanished. The stargazer continued to follow the trail, quickly spotting glimpses of the figure between the trees. He pursued the traces until he came upon a cottage deep in the forest. Cautiously, he approached, driven by curiosity. At that moment, the stargazer's mind was filled with questions. Why would a god choose the Lizardman tribe? Is it because Lizardmen are superior to other races? Or because gods are merciful? Or perhaps because we are useful? What happens if one day we are no longer useful? These questions remained unanswered. He remembered Rakrak saying that perhaps it was all just coincidence, yet it was the best outcome possible under the given circumstances. The stargazer agreed with Rakrak's perspective. With these thoughts, the stargazer entered the center of the room, where an astronomical telescope caught his attention. It was his first time seeing such a device, but instinctively he quickly learned how to use it. He adjusted the telescope, looking through the lens, and saw the stars clearly for the first time. Do stars really look like this? He continued to observe until he was certain this was the ultimate form of stars. The stargazer gazed at the starry sky, thinking, I guess I need to recalculate the trajectories of stars because what I knew before was just superficial knowledge. He pondered how this knowledge could greatly assist the living Lizardmen. However, since one cannot return after death, why would a god create such a place? Just to make an old Lizardman happy? The stargazer knew it wasn't just that. He caressed the mechanical device of the observatory, thinking to himself, the god did his best. He wouldn't do anything without reason. This knowledge will surely be useful in the future. Nebula was pleased with the stargazer's understanding. The world after death is not just a resting place for the dead. It significantly impacts the values of those who believe in gods. If warriors enter the small world, their tribe might dream of Valhalla. If scholars enter, it could lay the groundwork for technological advancements. So far, Nebula's creation of the small world had a perfect start. The afterlife had to start functioning properly, as the Klipdir tribe had displayed more advanced steel technology than the Lizardmen and even tamed fierce saber-toothed tigers. These technological forces and actions were highly unusual. Nebula speculated that behind the Klipdir tribe, there must be the involvement of other players. However, before going to war with other players, Nebula needed to be well prepared. After 9 years of development, Nebula had accumulated enough resources, and it was time to start a new chapter. Now, it's finally time to confront other players. Players are gradually expanding their territories, and to keep up, Nebula has invested heavily in the development of the insect tribe over these 9 years. Now, he commands 3 massive insect armies. Among them, a group known as the Locust Swarm has the fastest breeding rate. They can easily take control of other players' farms. Nebula is quietly dispersing them across the continent, allowing them to develop gradually to avoid detection by other players. The virus cluster host are used by Nebula as transport workers. Previously, he used them to carry a virus to the Frogman tribe, delivering a devastating blow. Finally, there are the hives, where Nebula breeds various insects. They are used to consume the food of other tribes. In times of food shortage, these tribes often choose to ally with powerful forces. With Rakrak's help, the members of these tribes also come to worship the nameless beetle god. Now, controlling the southern islands is just a matter of time. However, Nebula faces a new problem: how to deal with those overly aggressive players. Meanwhile, on the other side, Owen returns to the Lizardman tribe with a guest. A tribesman approached him and informed him that Elder One Arm had passed away. Hearing this, the guest behind also expressed condolences. We have all heard of his deeds. Today might not be a good time. Owen disagreed. We don't think it's bad to have a stranger attend our funeral. On the contrary, we see it as a lucky sign. Isn't it good to have one more person to share our sorrow? Owen then led the human to the funeral. A robust lizard man with buffalo horns on his head appeared before them. Among the lizard men, he was particularly conspicuous. He must be Rakrak, the chief of the Black Scale tribe. Seeing the tribe chief in tears, the human was very surprised. Is it okay for the tribal leader to shed tears? Hearing this, Owen was puzzled. Don't humans cry when they are sad? Human leaders do not cry in such public occasions because they need to consider their reputation. Different races have different values. Although I understand what honor is, what you mean is, if the tribal chief shows a weak side, his warriors will think the chief is weak. But do not try to explain this to other lizardmen, because they will not understand. For lizardmen, they believe some things are more important than reputation. Just then, Rakrak turned around. Owen apologized. I must have returned late. He then noticed the human beside him. Owen introduced him to Rakrak. This is an emissary from Automation. The man bowed politely to Rakrak, introducing himself. I am the emissary from Automation. We. Rakrak and Owen whispered for a moment. Then Rakrak smiled. Seeing this, we had a bad feeling. Then, the two entered the tent. You must have traveled a long way, but I'm sorry. We have to stay up late today. I hope you understand. This is our tradition. It's okay. We then pulled out a wrapped item from his chest. This is a gift from the leader of Automation. I hope you will accept it. Rakrak opened the bag and saw what appeared to be a white rock inside. He held the rock in his hand and immediately understood what it was. This is rock salt. The human confirmed. This is a product we take pride in. The first gift from our leader to the Lizardman tribe. It is an extremely rare item. Rakrak smiled, knowing this was not just a simple gift. There are second and third gifts to come, right? There will be even more after that. Please accept accept it. Rakrak's gaze sharpened and then squeezed the rock salt tightly. The next instant, the rock salt crumbled into dust, falling through his fingers. We was stunned, not understanding why Rakrak did this. Rakrak then clapped his hands. Go back and tell your city lord that I received this fine gift, and I crushed it as an offering to our god. We frowned. That was a gift from automation. I made good use of it. Isn't that great? At the same time, we gravely indicated to Rakrak, you know, that's not the purpose of giving a gift. Rakrak gently scratched the corner of his mouth. I have indeed heard that the Lord of Automation is very wealthy, but sending so much rock salt seems a bit extravagant. I hope you can bring more goods for trade next time. We, struggling to contain his anger, sized up Rakrak, who seemed like an experienced lizard. Despite their different races, there were no barriers in their communication. Although Rakrak's actions seemed crude, they were not meant to be rude, but rather a way of expressing rejection through appearances. Just as we was about to leave, Rakrak gestured for him to stop. I prefer direct communication over playing word games. We, turning sideways, asked, you surely understand the significance of this proposal, so why reject it? Rakrak, raising a finger, said, first of all, I don't like to accept proposals that others have rejected because I don't like picking up garbage. If others have rejected your proposal, isn't it because it is worthless? Hearing this, we looked even more confused. This offer is made only to you by the Lord of Automation. Rakrak interrupted him. Do you really think Owen happened to meet you, then brought you here, just because you were lucky? It turns out Owen had already guessed we's real intention. Since Automation is to the west, and we came from the north, the territory of the hyena tribe, that means you've already made the same proposal to them, but they rejected it. Now, why don't you be honest with me? Listening to Rakrak's deductions, we said nothing. He knew he had been seen through. Automation is an ancient ruin, difficult for ordinary people to locate. Its walls are 5 meters high and have mud soldiers that can automatically repair the walls. A true wonder of the lost world. In this castle that no one knows who built it, many humans and several tribes live together. Additionally, it occupies a strategic location on the essential path to the mainland, which is one reason why Automation seeks protection. The city not only has rich salt mines, but also stores a large amount of food. Facing the silent we, Rakrak was certain we was not just an emissary, but the Lord of Automation himself. A gift from someone who hides their identity like you, I cannot accept. Are you curious how I came to this conclusion? The first clue was the name you gave. You probably revealed that name to test how much we know. Even within the walls of Automation, few know your name and appearance. Such a thing is very rare for ordinary people. Anyone related to you by blood has we in their name. I've also heard you have 2 sons and 3 daughters, and from the wrinkles on your hands, it's clear you're not young. So I deduce that your real identity is the Lord of Automation. Hearing this, we showed no surprise, instead revealing a relieved smile. Yes, I am the Lord of Automation. We admitted to Rakrak's deduction, then slowly sat down. Actually, we could have provided the rock salt for free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Even the greedy Sockate rejected you, proving their strong insight. If we accepted your proposal, we would have to protect Automation when you are attacked by enemies, because we would become dependent on the salt mines. And that is exactly what you intended, right? This is what's called diplomacy. But what I don't understand is, this is clearly beneficial for the Lizardman tribe, so why do you refuse? I believe you've already heard the same question from others. Why don't we just take over Automation? Wouldn't all the resources inside be ours then? Hearing this, we was taken aback, but quickly suppressed his emotions and said, is the Lizardman tribe also planning to attack us? No, that's just the most advantageous assumption for the Lizardman tribe, because compared to your so-called diplomacy, it has no advantages. We frowned. Don't underestimate Automation. Even if we suffer a little damage, the Lizardmen could easily take down Automation. We have the Blue Insect God, and those walls are just fragments to the Blue Insect God. And now, your city lord is here. We laughed lightly, seemingly unconcerned about Rakrak's threat. He calmly said, I know you won't kill me. If I die now, Automation will immediately choose a new successor. What does that have to do with the Lizardman tribe? You must have heard of a game called Go, right? We place black and white stones one by one at the intersections. In this game, you win by completely surrounding your opponent's pieces. But now, the rules of the game aren't the point. What's important is that I am a stone on this board, because the real competition has already started. It is a contest between 2 gods. Automation is the board of this game. The conflict between the Hyena tribe and the Lizardman tribe is just a match between gods on the chessboard. And we, the Lord of Automation, had realized that his children also began discussing gods at some point. A spark of insight flashed in Rakrak's eyes, but he did not respond directly. 3 weeks ago, both Nebula and Hegemonia approached Automation, triggering a civilization clash. Remember our last game? This time, I will be the final winner. Nebula looked at him calmly. I guess you might have forgotten. This will be the final round. Facing his old rival, Nebula knew Hegemonia's gameplay inside out. Though his strategy seemed simple, he possessed an animal-like intuition and instinct in conflicts. Nebula knew there was no need to adapt to the opponent's preferred method, and Hegemonia felt the same. So, you want to decide the outcome in a different way? It seems clear we both want the same thing. So, it's decided. Putting Automation and humanity in jeopardy. Let's go with contradictory prophecy. The so-called prophecy is a skill that can only be used when a deity's level reaches 6 6 or higher. It's like a task that players set for themselves. Using the prophecy skill consumes divine experience points, so the risk of failure is high. If the prophecy fails, not only does the player receive no reward, but they could also be punished or even trigger negative events. A contradiction prophecy is a more complex form of prophecy in player gameplay. It originates from an ancient story and typically involves two players making opposing predictions about the same target. In the end, only one prophecy can come true. The successful player will be rewarded, while the loser will face punishment. This kind of gameplay is a specialty of Hegemonia, and he is quite pleased with it. Now, they have an excellent opportunity to initiate a contradictory prophecy. The ruler of automation is selecting an heir. After some discussion, Nebula and Hegemonia learn that the ruler of automation currently has 5 children competing for the inheritance. If each of them selects one heir and makes a prophecy about them, the two prophecies are likely to contradict each other, triggering the contradictory prophecy mechanism. However, Nebula doesn't know much about the personalities of these 5 individuals. To ensure fairness, Hegemonia shared detailed information about the candidates with Nebula. The first child is Dan, a man in his early 30s. He has a strong physique and is trusted by Wirae. He has the backing of 2 families out of 4, making him the most powerful heir candidate. The second candidate is June, a man in his late 20s. He is Dan's half-brother, and his personality is somewhat weak, not liking to show himself to others. Although rumors suggest he has little interest in becoming the successor, he is only supported by his mother's family. The third child is Jean, a woman in her 20s. She shares the same mother as Dan, but often goes out and deliberately hides her identity. However, she gets along well with hunters and hooligans, and has received the support of the one remaining family. The fourth child is Kyung, a woman in her early 20s. Her mother has already passed away, and her appearance seems to be cursed, which has led her to be alienated by the city lord and other family members. The last candidate is Min, a girl in her mid-teens. A smart and talented girl, the youngest of the 5. She is deeply loved by all the family members. After introducing all the heirs, Hegemonia provocatively looked at Nebula and asked, "So, what do you think? Do you need some time to think it over?" Nebula decisively rejected the proposal, firmly saying, "No need, let's decide right away." Without hesitation, the two chose the heirs they preferred and established the contradictory prophecies. A prompt appeared: contradictory prophecy. Would you like to set up a contradictory prophecy with the player Hegemonia? Warning: if a contradictory prophecy fails, you will incur big losses. Please check once more before proceeding. Both players simultaneously selected confirm and exchanged their chosen candidates. Hegemonia chose the second candidate, Wee Jun, as his prophecy target, while Nebula chose the fourth child, Wee Kyung. Nebula's choice of prophecy confused Hegemonia. He did not expect Nebula's choice to be so different from his own, which meant that the contradictory prophecy was officially established. With Hegemonia's hand falling, the Lost World acknowledged the contradictory prophecy between player Hegemonia and player Nebula. On the other side, the Lord of Automation, Wirae, risked his life because of 2 prophecies that were circulating. The 2 massive tribes, the Lizardman tribe and the Hyena tribe, were closing in on automation. He realized that everything was inevitably connected to these 2 tribes. As he had guessed, after meeting the leaders of the 2 tribes, he did not encounter the death foretold in the prophecies. This made him both relieved and despairing, because it proved that he was still an important piece in the divine game. Rakrak slowly spoke. "If you put diplomacy and respect aside, you can choose one of them. So, will it be the angry teeth god of Sake or the blue insect god? If a saber-toothed tiger and a cockatoo appear, I'd have to stick my head into their mouths and see which one does less damage. It's a pity that you think that way, but wouldn't it be better to stick your head into the cockatoo's mouth? If I let the saber-toothed tiger and the cockatoo fight each other, the winner will likely be exhausted, so you still don't want to choose?" Rakrak understood Wirae's approach. Perhaps doing nothing at this point was the better choice. Wirae remained silent and then slowly stood up. He had one last question. "You're just a piece on the game board after all. Don't you feel afraid or angry?" Rakrak smiled confidently because he decided to wait until the situation was over to answer. A moment later, Wirae left the Lizardman tribe. Outside, someone was already waiting for his appearance. He changed into his clothes, shaved off his 3-month-old beard, and then set off on the road back to automation. At the same time, a drop of water fell on the attendant's face. When the attendant looked up, he realized it was the Lord's tear, which puzzled him greatly. Another story was unfolding. The girl had always been considered unlucky since she was born with strange antennae on her head. People said she was cursed, so they avoided her. Yet, such a person was chosen by the god. As the rumors went, accidents had followed her life since she was a child. At the age of 13, she fell from the stairs at the market. At 14, she was accused of stealing salt and was locked up for 4 days. At 15, a wooden board strangely broke, sending her straight into a toilet. This was no joke. It was a life-threatening situation. 3 weeks ago, while transporting goods on a small road, her cart's wheel suddenly malfunctioned, causing her and the cart to fall off a cliff. But fortunately, she grabbed a rock just in time, saving herself from certain death. At this moment, Wee Kyung was nearly at her limit because one of her feet was injured, but she could only keep encouraging herself. Wee Kyung, Kyung, believe you can do it. After all, you can only rely on yourself. Just then, a voice interrupted her. Grab my hand. Wee Kyung looked up, and it was a person from the lizard people tribe. The lizard person noticed her hesitation and asked, don't you want to grab my hand? Full of doubt, Wee Kyung didn't understand how a lizard person could suddenly appear here. She slowly spoke, I don't have anything valuable to offer as a reward. Before she could finish, the lizard person grabbed her hand and pulled her up. I don't want your things. This path is so narrow. How did you dare to load it with goods? Hearing this, Wee Kyung felt a bit embarrassed and answered, if the wheel hadn't broken, I would have made it through safely. Then, she slowly got up and asked for the lizard person's name. My name is Siran Mule. Wee Kyung thanked Siran Mule and was about to leave when Siran Mule blocked her path. We haven't finished our business, Miss Wee Kyung. Wee Kyung instantly became alert, as she had never told him her name. She thought to herself, do I have to fight him? Siran Mule signaled her not to be nervous and explained, Rak told me your name, and he ordered me to find you. Wee Kyung became even more puzzled. Rak? Isn't he the leader of the Black Scale tribe, the one with the power of lightning, the first to receive the chosen blessing from the gods? On this continent, everyone knew the story of Rak. Wee Kyung asked doubtfully, but why would someone as powerful as him come looking for me? Recently, there have been 2 rumors about the successor of automation, focusing on the 2nd and 4th children. Wee Kyung was completely unaware of this and casually said, I just came back from a long trip buying silk. Do you really believe such rumors? Siran Mule didn't care whether the rumors were true or false. He was just seriously carrying out his task. Wee Kyung, however, suggested, you should look for someone else. I was just an abandoned baby thrown out by automation. Such rumors would be more beneficial to my siblings. However, Siran Mule rejected her suggestion and said earnestly, because my second task is to ensure your safety. Hearing this, Wee Kyung was startled and asked, why do you need to protect me? Your family members are very sensitive to rumors. They wouldn't allow a potential variable to exist. Wee Kyung insisted, I can protect myself. Siran Mule did not say more, only firmly stated, I am committed to completing my task. To make Siran Mule leave her alone, Wee Kyung lifted the broken horn hidden under her hair and said coldly, this is an ominous curse. When I was born, my mother was cut open by my antennae. Besides that, unfortunate incidents always happen around people near me, so you'd better leave now. Siran Mule was silent for a moment, then responded in a low voice, I am sorry about this, but regardless of whether your curse is real or not, I have accepted the chief's order, representing the will of our tribe. Even if you refuse, I will still protect your safety. Wee Kyung realized that intimidation would not persuade Siran Mule. With no other option, Wee Kyung had to accept Siran Mule's company, considering that having a helper might not be such a bad thing after all. She tentatively said, I need to go down to get my silk. Siran Mule saw through her caution immediately and said calmly, your leg is injured. Just ask, and I will help you. Hearing this, Wee Kyung felt at a loss, with ripples in her heart. This was the first time someone had offered to help her voluntarily. She said softly, could you please bring up the silk for me? Siran Mule smiled slightly. I'd be glad to assist you. Soon, Siran Mule helped Wee Kyung retrieve the silk, and the two set off on the road back to automation. Along the way, Wee Kyung remained puzzled and asked, how do the lizard people know my whereabouts? I know you use the name Mangji to do business with others. However, your partners seem to be dissatisfied with you. Why would they tell you? It was information bought with a bag of salt. They also mentioned that you borrowed a handcart and never returned it, so feeling cheated, they didn't hesitate to tell me. Wee Kyung, feeling somewhat ashamed, said in a low voice, it seems I shouldn't have been so greedy for small advantages. At the same time, the two had already approached the outskirts of automation. However, they were unaware that danger was silently approaching. Just then, a hidden weapon suddenly shot towards Wee Kyung. In the nick of time, Siran Mule did not hesitate to block the weapon with his palm, and blood dripped down from his hand. Wee Kyung was shocked and quickly asked, are you alright? Siran Mule looked at the wound piercing through his palm, but his face showed no pain as he said calmly, it seems that Rakrak's worries were justified. The succession battle has already begun. They suddenly encountered an assassination attempt by masked individuals, but these attackers were no match for the warrior Siran Mule, who defeated them in less than a round. Seeing this, Wee Kyung was incredulous and asked in confusion, doesn't the Lizardman tribe have a very strong warrior named Ur? Yes, he is one of the most powerful warriors of the Lizardman tribe, and I learned my combat skills from him. Wee Kyung was even more surprised, and what astonished her further was Siran Mule's extensive medical knowledge. He had acquired these skills while running errands alongside Jael, who handled the Lizardman tribe's internal affairs. Being able to learn from Ur and Jael, he must hold a high position in the Lizardman tribe. Wee Kyung realized that the Lizard People tribe sending such an important person to protect her was no small matter. Perhaps this was actually a good thing for her. Soon after, when Wee Kyung returned to the gates of automation, she found them shut tight, barring anyone from entering or exiting. Anxiously, she turned to a nearby fox to inquire about the situation. From the fox, she learned that automation was now under a full lockdown, prohibiting anyone from entering or leaving. Wee Kyung suddenly felt a surge of unease in her heart. The city gates would never close without reason. Something must have happened inside. Before long, Wee Kyung then heads to one of the 4 major families, Deities, the Gyo family. Upon seeing Wee Kyung, the head of the Gyo family, appear very troubled. Wee Kyung looks at him, her helplessness mixed with a hint of anger. I should be the one who's angry, right? After all, I was almost assassinated just now. Seeing her composed demeanor, the head of the Gyo family hesitates, momentarily at a loss for words, sensing that Wee Kyung doesn't fully grasp the situation. Did nothing particular happen on the way here? Wee Kyung then introduces Siran Mule, who had intervened just in time to prevent the assassination. Siran Mule politely introduces himself. My name is Siran Mule, from the Black Scale tribe, a warrior. The head of the Gyo family expresses sincere gratitude for Siran Mule's assistance. The reason Wee Kyung and Siran Mule came to the Gyo family was because they had learned from a goblin that the assassination was not orchestrated by the Gyo family. Of course, our Gyo family would never act like other families. Then, Wee Kyung inquires about what exactly happened in the automation. An assassination attempt occurred here too. Upon hearing this, Wee Kyung is shocked and involuntarily asks, how could this happen? The city lord is not in automation right now, which has intensified the struggle among the heirs. Now, the first heir, Wee Dan, has disappeared. Moments later, Wee Kyung and Siran Mule arrive at Wee Dan's study. This is the first time Wee Kyung has stepped into this place in many years. When she was young, Dan took great care of her, but as she grew up and became sensible, she began to distance herself from him. As the two inspect the study, Siran Mule noticed a faint smell of blood under the desk. He lifts the rug under the desk and indeed finds noticeable bloodstains. The head of the Gyo family, seeing this, explains, we also discovered these bloodstains, but the problem is, we haven't found Wee Dan's body. Based on our deductions, he's likely been killed. Automation immediately locked down all the gates to prevent the murderer from escaping. It won't be long before the corpse's scent is exposed, and they won't be able to escape. However, Wee Kyung mused, things aren't as simple as they seem. If the murderer dared to strike under the watchful eyes of so many, it means they were fully prepared. Just then, a strange laughter echoes in Wee Kyung's mind. Do you want to know the truth, or do you intend to sit and wait for death? Siran Mule noticed Wee Kyung's unusual expression and asked, are you okay? When she didn't reply, he decided not to press further. Wee Kyung told everyone, the body can be preserved in salt until it's finally disposed of. However, this will require a sufficiently large jar and a lot of salt. Her words caught Siran Mule's attention. That means the murderer not only knows how to handle a body, but even how to cure meat. This skill is usually possessed only by hunters or butchers. But why would they do this? Siran Mule paused, seemingly realizing something. This is to prevent the body from decaying. The murderer wanted to dispose of the body without anyone noticing, and not many people can do this. It requires a big enough jar, having stored a lot of salted meat, and being able to freely access the study. All this points to a person with a special identity, my sister, Wee Jin. Wee Kyung's deduction was quite reasonable. So, even though she shared this tip with only a few people in automation, by the time news of Dan's death spread, most assumed Wee Jin was the main suspect. As soon as Wee Jin learned that Wee Kyung deduced she was the murderer, she immediately sought a hiding place. Just as she was lost in thought, a voice suddenly interrupted her. Wee Min had been waiting there for a long time. Wee Jin was shocked, not understanding how Wee Min knew her whereabouts. However, before she could react, her companion was ruthlessly shot dead. Wee Jin immediately sensed trouble. She had not expected Wee Min to be so ruthless. No need to be so angry. After all, you were the one who first killed Wee Dan, the brother with the most potential to become the city lord. Let's put an end to this cursed sibling relationship. Wee Jin was furious, but helpless, only able to roar Wee Min's name, and she, unarmed, soon fell to Wee Min's arrows. Wee Min told the guards to check on Wee Jin's condition. However, just when Wee Min thought everything was settled, her pupils suddenly dilated, and she looked down to find a sharp blade piercing her body. You were right. It's time to end this cursed sibling relationship. The one who completed all this, Wee Jun, had a cold and ruthless look in his eyes. He looked at the three siblings lying scattered on the ground and sneered. There lie three. Now only the last one remains. Wee Kyung, I won't keep you waiting too long. The next day, when Wee Kyung heard this news, she was utterly shocked. Wee Dan's body was finally found, and beside it lay Wee Jin and Wee Min. Although the murderer deliberately concealed her identity, it was already very clear. Wee Jun first used Wee Min to eliminate Wee Jin, then took the opportunity to deal with Wee Min, killing two birds with one stone. Additionally, the mysterious mission received by the goblin points to the mastermind behind the scenes. Wee Kyung thought to herself, if not for Siran Mule's appearance, this would have turned into a simple robbery. However, now, the real danger has just begun. But Wee Kyung was not afraid, because she was already prepared. At the same time, the head of the Gyo family revealed to her that the Gyo family had just held an emergency meeting. Wee Kyung seemed to catch his implication and, unruffled, took a sip of tea and asked, what is the Gyo family's stance? The head of the Gyo family explained that after internal discussions, they believe Wee Jun is not suitable for the position of city lord. Therefore, the Gyo family has decided to take a chance on Wee Kyung. Upon hearing this, Wee Kyung slowly stood up and expressed her thanks to the head of the Gyo family. However, he solemnly said, this is not a favor, but a calculated decision. Please try to survive. Wee Kyung did not expect the struggle among the heirs to be so cold and ruthless. useless. Now only she and Wee-jun remained of the siblings, but she also felt fortunate that she was still alive. Although this body had been cursed, someone still chose to trust her. However, the problem was no longer just about avoiding assassination, because everything would not end until Wee-jun was caught. Moreover, Wee-jun had already gained the support of 2 families, while she had only one. At this moment, Wee-kyung was considering whether to seek support from the Su family. She touched the antenna on her head, her expression slightly hesitant. Siran Mule seemed to see her thoughts and reminded her, "Don't think about cutting off your own horns this time. It always bleeds a lot every time they are cut off. Indeed, not worth it." She composed herself and then thought about how to deal with Wee-jun next. Just then, news came from outside the castle. The city lord was on his way back, expected to arrive tomorrow. Following that, the guards slowly stepped forward, breaking the moment of silence, because the scout team had an important message that could only be told to Wee-kyung. Just as the guard leaned close to her to speak, he suddenly spat out blood. It turned out that Siran Mule and the goblin had attacked the guard. Immediately afterward, a dagger fell from the guard's hand. Wee-kyung was stunned. Wasn't this guy from the Gyo family? The head of the Gyo family appeared visibly panicked, realizing the family had been infiltrated. Meanwhile, intense fighting sounds came from outside. Realizing something was wrong, the head of the Gyo family signaled Wee-kyung to leave quickly. It seemed that Wee-jun had made up his mind to complete all his plans before the city lord returned. Wee-kyung quickly opened a secret passage, though she was doubtful about the safety of this route. But at this moment, they had no other choice. The passage emitted an unpleasant odor, but without hesitation, she jumped into the secret passage and signaled Siran Mule to follow. She recalled an experience from her childhood when she had fallen into this passage. At the time, she almost thought she would die there because it was pitch dark below and she couldn't see anything. Just as she was about to despair, suddenly many light orbs floated around, illuminating the pathway. When she saw the glowing objects clearly, she guessed they were the fireflies mentioned in books. However, Siran Mule denied this. "Fireflies don't live in a place like this, but they were here. I saw it with my own eyes. Maybe it was a creature similar to fireflies." Meanwhile, the two quickly arrived at the end of the sewer. This route led to the basement of the Su family hunter's lodge, and from here they could reach the outskirts of the street. Siran Mule decided to scout ahead. Before leaving, he instructed Wee-kyung, "If I don't come back after a while, you must immediately run in the opposite direction." Wee-kyung felt deeply grateful for Siran Mule, thanks to his caution during this time. Otherwise, her grave might already be overgrown with grass. Just as she was contemplating, she suddenly heard the sounds of a fight. She instinctively ran towards the door, despite Siran Mule's earlier instruction to flee. But she didn't know why. She still chose to go to the scene of the incident. She took out the dagger hidden in her bosom and determined in her heart, no matter what, she could not just watch Siran Mule die. It was a bright night, the moon visible through the clouds. When Wee-kyung finally saw the scene clearly, she was shocked and stood frozen. The light at the door cast the silhouette of a lizard man. It was Siran Mule, who had been pierced through the body with a spear. The person at the back of the crowd, a gaunt Wee-jun. "Lizard man, you're about to die." But Siran Mule showed no intention of submission, instead displaying an incredible resilience. Wee-jun was clearly surprised, because if it were a regular human, being pierced by a spear would have brought them down. But Siran Mule still stood. "Kill Wee-kyung," Wee-jun ordered coldly. The surrounding soldiers quickly closed in on Wee-kyung, but how could Siran Mule let them succeed easily? When the soldiers tried to break through the defense, Siran Mule grabbed the spear thrust at him. His tail fiercely whipped back at the soldiers behind him, repelling them. Then Siran Mule stomped the soldier in front of him to the ground. A sound of bone shattering was heard, and the soldier lay down without any resistance. Siran Mule grabbed the spear piercing his chest, wrapped the rest of the shaft with his tail, and fiercely twisted it, snapping the spear in half. Watching this, Wee-kyung couldn't help but wonder, why would humans make such choices, even knowing they are wrong? Not only humans have weaknesses, lizard men do too. Rakrak said that while protecting a target, one should not put oneself in danger, but I did not achieve that either. It seems the same for you and me. At this moment, seeing Siran Mule's strength, the surrounding soldiers hesitated, with no one daring to step forward rashly. A soldier whispered something to Wee-jun. Immediately after, Wee-jun raised his voice, signaling to everyone, "Whoever kills Wee-kyung and the lizard man, I will reward that person with a car of silk." However, the soldiers still did not act. They had heard that Siran Mule was the chosen one, clearly no ordinary warrior. Seeing this, Wee-jun scoffed and said, "Don't worry, he has been pierced by a spear, yet he has not used his power. If he really were the chosen one, he would not need to hide his strength." Just then, Siran Mule's gaze swept to the wall beside him. Noticing a faint glimmering light, he realized that the wall had a high salt crystal content, which indicated there might be a mine behind it. Siran Mule whispered to Wee-kyung, "Next, we'll run to the right." Like he said, "I'm not the chosen one, but that doesn't mean I'm just a low-ranking warrior. I am the second best warrior among lizardmen. Most people just don't remember the second." When the soldiers launched another attack, Siran Mule and Wee-kyung quickly moved to the right, planning to use the mine to counterattack. Siran Mule used all his strength to break the wall with a determined force. Accompanied by a huge crash, the wall collapsed as he expected, revealing a salt mine passage. Outside the entrance, Wei-jun and his soldiers were stunned, and after a moment, Wei-jun roared furiously, "What are you waiting for? Chase them!" The soldiers, coming to their senses, quickly rushed to the entrance to pursue them. Inside the salt mine passage, Siran Mule's wounds continued to bleed, bright red blood drops falling to the ground, forming a striking trail. Wei Kyung supported the battered Siran Mule, the two staggering forward. Siran Mule kept forcing himself on, not daring to stop his steps. "Move fast. Wei-jun will catch up soon." Moments later, they stopped at the end of the mine passage. Wei Kyung's heart suddenly overtaken by fear. She looked at the continuously bleeding wound on Siran Mule's chest, saying, "Won't it be best to pull it out and rest for a bit? I can't pull it out. If the spear is removed, the wound will become uncontrollable." His words were not yet finished when he was interrupted by Wei Kyung's sudden crying. "Are you crying for me?" Siran Mule's tone carried a hint of disbelief. Wei Kyung could no longer control her emotions, her voice filled with despair and anger. "I don't want to cry, but now you're about to die, so what's the point in saying these things? It's always been like this. Bad things happen to those around me." Siran Mule understood that Wei Kyung was referring to her curse, but he never believed in such things. He softly reassured her, "In the past 3 weeks, we've been through so many dangers, yet we've survived. Most people would call that luck. Do you remember when we first met?" He mentioned that he noticed clear human traces at the axle while he was helping her with the silk. These traces indicated that someone had tried to assassinate her even before the struggle for succession began. "These are not coincidences. Someone has always wanted to kill you." Meanwhile, that familiar voice echoed again in Wei Kyung's mind. "Yes, you know it too. Who tried to kill you?" Just then, the sound of pursuers' footsteps interrupted their conversation. Wei-jun advanced unhurriedly along the blood trail, knowing that these mines were mostly dead ends and deducing they couldn't escape. Soon, he and his soldiers appeared in front of Siran Mule and Wei Kyung. Without hesitation, Wei-jun ordered the soldiers to move forward and kill them. Although Siran Mule's consciousness was gradually blurring, he still gripped his weapon tightly, his gaze determined. "I'm still waiting for your luck." Just as the soldiers charged at Siran Mule, a blue light suddenly flashed in the middle of the cave. The light illuminated the entire dim mine, and the soldiers immediately stopped in their tracks, staring at the light in horror. Wei-jun was also stunned, incredulously asking, "What is this thing?" Moments later, a glowing ghost slowly emerged in front of everyone. "I am called Buzz." Buzz slowly spoke in the direction of Siran Mule. "You have been chosen." Hearing this, the human soldiers were clearly frightened by this sudden statement. Wei-jun gritted his teeth, furiously unable to contain himself. Damn it, such a thing happening at a critical moment. Wei-jun bellowed an order, commanding the soldiers to shoot Buzz with arrows. However, a hint of doubt rose in Siran Mule's mind. He knew there were exactly 5 chosen ones in his tribe. If he became the 6th, did that mean someone had already left? Buzz was silent for a moment, then said softly, "The Stargazer has departed. You are the 2nd strongest warrior in the tribe. Therefore, you are entitled to inherit the power of the chosen." As soon as he finished speaking, a dazzling light burst forth from Buzz. Siran Mule felt a powerful force surge into his body, and from now on, he too could wield the power of lightning. Moments later, the figure of Buzz slowly faded away. Seeing the ghost depart, Wei-jun immediately roared, "Act! Kill him!" The soldiers raised their weapons and charged towards Siran Mule and Wei Kyung. At that moment, Siran Mule gripped the spear piercing his chest with his hand and forcefully pulled it out of his body. Strangely, he felt no pain, and the wound visibly healed at a rate visible to the naked eye. With the power of lightning bolstering him, Siran Mule had become even stronger. He slowly lifted his palm, sparks of electricity beginning to emanate from his hand, making a sizzling sound. Wei Kyung quickly covered her ears. The next instant, a dazzling bolt of lightning split the darkness, illuminating the entire cave. A powerful current passed through the bodies of the soldiers. Wei-jun, who had hidden behind others, luckily avoided the attack. Sparks flew, and they fell to the ground, completely incapacitated. Wei-jun watched everything unfold. He couldn't believe that Siran Mule had mastered the power of the chosen. Having seen what a chosen one was capable of, Wei-jun, though reluctant, quickly made his escape. Wei Kyung stood aside, witnessing all this, and was immensely shocked by Siran Mule's power. She couldn't help but wonder, if the Black Scale tribe had such formidable power, why didn't they actively attack the Clipped Ear tribe? It was Siran Mule's first time using this lightning power, and he vaguely knew the reason. He felt mentally exhausted, clearly indicating that this power couldn't be used without limits. This made him think of Owen, who always smoked periodically, perhaps as a way to alleviate fatigue. Wei Kyung asked with concern, "Are you feeling alright?" "I feel much better now. After a rest, I can continue fighting." Moments later, when the two returned to the surface, they did not expect that soldiers were still guarding the entrance, but Siran Mule quickly dealt with them. Watching all this from a distance, Hegemonia could no longer sit still. He muttered to himself, "If that's how it is, then don't blame me for being ruthless." Just then, Siran Mule and Wei Kyung both showed surprised expressions. Suddenly, a saber-toothed tiger appeared in the mine. Siran Mule instinctively protected Wei Kyung behind him and whispered, "How could there be a saber-toothed tiger in a place like this?" The next moment, the saber-toothed tiger pounced fiercely, but Siran Mule, now empowered with the power of lightning, was clearly superior. In no more than a round, the saber-toothed tiger was defeated and lay gasping on the ground. Wee Kyung analyzed the situation calmly. This must have been brought in by Wee Jun. He clearly isn't ready to give up yet. When the two returned to the surface again, they found that Wee Jun had already gathered people to encircle the place. Wee Kyung, you left me no choice. Who do you think started all this? It was you who dragged that evil lizard into the castle. The struggle among heirs should have been just a contest between siblings, yet you resort to conspiracies and killings to clear your path. Wee Jun roared, his eyes filled with blame. So you think all this is my fault? At that time, two soldiers took the opportunity to pounce towards Siran Mule. However, Siran Mule merely waved his sword, and the blade swiftly cut through the attackers. Who would have thought that a lizard man on the brink of death could still stand up? Wee Jun thought, gritting his teeth. Wee Jun, you are the foolish one. The automation thrives on trade, but to not get involved with nearby forces means that you're voluntarily isolating us. Don't you know that many nearby forces have been wanting to take control of us? If you were really that smart, you'd have used them. Unlike you or father, I'm no coward. I'll put the automation on the line and obtain something even greater. A strange smile appeared on Wee Jun's face and said, you don't just look like a cursed monster, you also think like one. He then opened the fan in his hand. Wee Kyung immediately sensed something was amiss and became alert internally. He suddenly opened his fan. Is this some kind of signal? Sure enough, before Wee Kyung could react, an assassin hidden in the warehouse had already aimed at her. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang by her ear. You're not going to tell me to shut up when you're about to get killed, right? Wee Kyung was startled and recognized it as Shadow's voice. If things go on like this, you might die. Siran Mule also reacted, but it is too late. I should have warned you when I noticed the assassin, but your horns weren't fully grown, so it was impossible. Now, try to imagine a way to avoid it. I don't know, maybe if a gust of wind could blow now, the situation might change. The wind? Fine. The wind has always been on my side. Just then, a tornado suddenly rose in the sky, and the arrow aimed directly at Wee Kyung were forcibly diverted by the wind. Wee Jun watched this unfold, dumbfounded. My god, are you playing with me? Siran Mule was also shocked, but his emotions were complex. To think that something like this would happen. Wee Kyung herself looked just as bewildered, unsure if this was due to the curse lifting or some mysterious fate. The next moment, the arrow fell just in front of Wee Kyung. It's more complicated than you think. A deep voice echoed in Wee Kyung's mind, because I can manipulate probability. At this moment, Wee Kyung, engulfed in demonic property, has awakened the demonic property. The hidden demonic property will be revealed. Demonic property, probability. This scene left Hegemonia watching from afar, utterly dumbfounded. How is this possible? Wasn't she supposed to be cursed? Do you think I would be crazy enough to choose a child who is cursed? Hegemonia recalled Wee Kyung's character history. Indeed, her experiences seemed exactly like those of someone who was cursed. He even wondered if Nebula had altered the character's settings. No, I haven't made any changes. The world's setting has been like this from the start. Hegemonia still felt confused. Then how did you figure it out? At first, I wasn't sure. Her experiences did indeed resemble those typical of a curse, but some things were too coincidental. So coincidental that they made one suspect. There was more to the story. It turned out that many of Wee Kyung's seemingly unfortunate events were not coincidences at all, but carefully planned assassination attempts. Yet each time, at the moment of danger, she always managed to turn the situation around. When she fell into an outhouse, Nebula had created fireflies to guide her escape, but Nebula knew that even without the fireflies, Wee Kyung would have survived, because at that time, Nebula had already realized that what was on Wee Kyung was not a curse, but the demonic property of probability. Hearing this, Hegemonia had an epiphany. It seems my pettiness in summoning the saber-toothed tiger was justified. Now the game should also end, because Automation's lord, Wee Seo, had returned. Thus, Wee Seo told Wee Kyung and Wee Jun to stop fighting. It turned out that the true purpose of Hegemonia summoning the saber-toothed tiger was to buy time. Nebula was puzzled. Why delay time? Because once Wee Seo returns, he will definitely choose the heir, and I believe Wee Jun will be the next city lord. Wee Jun's political views align with Wee Seo, so Wee Seo will surely choose him. Even if you kill Wee Seo, it won't solve the problem. The four major families will acknowledge the heir chosen by the city lord. Your assumption is fundamentally flawed. Why do you think Wee Seo would choose Wee Jun as his heir? At this moment, Wee Seo finally approached the two, ready to officially announce the next heir of Automation. He noticed that Wee Kyung's horns had fully grown out, and she seemed to have a lot to say. At the same time, Wee Kyung also noticed that Wee Seo's beard had been shaved off. Wee Seo calmly said, "Speak your mind." Wee Kyung thought it would sound unpleasant coming from her own mouth, but she spoke anyway. "Why have you always wanted to kill me?" Upon hearing this, Wee Jun was stunned, and Wee Seo did not deny it. When did you find out? It turned out that Wee Kyung had long been aware of this. She just hadn't wanted to believe it. She clenched her fists tightly, her voice containing restrained anger. "And the horns on my head and the so-called curse, those were lies you fabricated, right?" A moment later, Wee Seo slowly began to speak. "It's because of your mother, Ryo. Ryo was the only wife he truly loved, but she died giving birth to Wee Kyung. This was a huge blow to Wee Seo, so he saw Wee Kyung, born with horns, as cursed, believing she caused Ryo's death. But that that wasn't the case. When Wee Kyung learned the truth, she felt much relieved. She had lived with the guilt of killing her mother, but all this turned out to be a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Wee Jun said anxiously, "You can't make choices lightly. This is a decision concerning the fate of automation." Wee Seo then signaled him to be at ease. "I will stand from the perspective of the Lord of Automation, not as a father." Wee Seo understood that he was merely a pawn in the divine arena. Just as Wee Seo was about to speak slowly, Hegemonia behind was incessantly praying, "Buddha bless, deities bless, Jesus, God, please bless this time too." Burning incense and praying simply won't work. Suddenly, Nebula noticed that the demonic magic on Wee Kyung seemed to have manifested. The demon, by observing Wee Seo's lip movements, deduced that the character following Wee was Kyung. "So you are the next heir." But it also noticed that Wee Kyung's expression looked worried. For Wee Kyung, being chosen as the heir might not be a good thing. From the conversation just now, everyone would think that the Lord chose her only to alleviate his guilt. If this story spread throughout the city, people will doubt my ability, saying I got the position out of luck. The 4 families and citizens of the automation won't follow me, and even the position of city lord I will receive will be at risk. I can't be chosen by father as his successor. I need to obtain that position myself. Thus, Wee Kyung raised her hand, saying, "Father, I've changed my mind. Regardless of what your plan was, I think I have to become the city lord. Please entrust me with the position of city lord." Hearing this, Wee Jun immediately started to stir up trouble. "Father, she is threatening you." However, Wee Seo responded calmly, "I'd like to know if you have the courage to threaten me, but how would you deal with it if these soldiers under you turned against you?" Wee Kyung said nothing further. She reached to the side, signaling Siran Mule to step forward. Electricity circled Siran Mule's hand, emitting a sizzling sound. This scene caused everyone to break out in a cold sweat. He is not a regular Lizardman warrior, but a chosen one. Although Wee Kyung did not know if Siran Mule had the capability to defeat all the soldiers, she knew that Siran Mule could definitely kill Wee Seo and take her away from here. Wee Jun reminded his father that Lizardman is now exhausted. His strength is nothing to fear. However, Wee Seo knew the capabilities of the Black Scale tribe, having visited them and met with their leader, Rakrak, an impressive individual. He is certain that Siran Mule is a pawn Rakrak placed for the purpose of making him make the proper decision. "But Wee Kyung, you must already know that the automation is special. If I die without designating an heir, the automation will choose someone within it to be the next lord." Wee Kyung responded firmly, "I don't want that to happen, but if it does, I'll seek help from the Black Scale tribe." After completely emptying out the automation with the strength of the Black Scale tribe warriors, all I have to do is be the only human left within the automation. Hearing this, Wee Jun shouted furiously, "You filthy scum! So this is your true nature?" Wee Seo paused for a moment, then slowly approached Wee Kyung and said firmly, "There's no helping it. I, Wee Seo, the city lord of automation, give my position to Wee Kyung." Starting this moment, Wee Jun collapsed to the ground, unable to believe what had just happened. A few days later, after Wee Kyung took over, automation burst into new life. Compared to before, trade with other races had significantly increased, and more merchants from afar were visiting. The city was thriving, its streets and alleys bustling with busy figures. The 4 major families within the castle seemed much more settled, gradually accepting the changes brought by the new lord, Wee Kyung. That night, Wee Jun was preparing to leave. His heart was filled with anger and reluctance, thinking that one day he would return to take back everything that belonged to him. Just then, someone approached him, catching him off guard. "Who goes there?" It was Siran Mule, who spoke up. "You must be going someplace far away." Wee Jun glanced back at him, his tone impatient. "That's none of your business." Siran Mule watched Wee Jun, showing no intention to stop him, and said indifferently, "Whether you stay or leave, it won't make a difference. You won't achieve anything." Hearing this, Wee Jun's expression darkened further as he gritted his teeth and nudged the horse to start moving. Siran Mule looking up at the night sky, murmuring to himself, "Everyone has their own choices and destiny, but I cannot let someone as foolish as you stay near Wee Kyung." After speaking, he picked up a piece of firewood and gestured towards the sky. There was no one on the city wall, but goblin assassins had already lain in wait there, silently waiting for their target. As Wee Jun stepped out of automation, a deadly strike from above hit him, ending the sibling strife. After completing the mission, the goblin assassin rode off, disappearing into the night. Meanwhile, Hegemonia, clad in armor, maintained a calm demeanor, but his eyes betrayed a piercing sharpness. He candidly admitted defeat in this game, appearing even more composed than Nebula had anticipated. "You're talking so gallantly." Hegemonia scratched his forehead, responding, "I'm vexed, but you are the victor, Nebula." Hegemonia, unconcerned, elegantly turned around, ready to lead the Knoll tribe westward across the continent. He understood that failure was just a part of the prophetic conflict, and the accompanying negative events were an inevitable cost. However, Hegemonia did not seem overly concerned about this loss. On the contrary, he looked forward to his next encounter with Nebula. As he moved on, he stole technology from the residents of the continent, appearing confident in his future plans. This was a good opportunity for Nebula to expand his influence. The coastal regions of the north and the southern peninsula, because of their geographical advantages, had always been key areas in his plans. Thinking about the inner alchemy he had obtained from the frogmen, which he had not had the chance to use due to various restrictions. It might now prove useful. Then, Nebula decided to first meet with the new ruler of automation. Meanwhile, while Wee Kyung was handling official duties, she suddenly felt tired and unknowingly drifted into sleep. Just then, a small bug emitting a blue light quietly landed on her hand. This puzzled her, and looking up, she saw a mysterious figure in a long robe standing not far away. Though she had never seen him before, Wee Kyung recognized him instantly as the blue insect god spoken of by the Lizardmen. She immediately changed her expression to one of reverence and devoutly knelt on the ground. I have received much help from the followers of the blue insect god. However, the blue insect god did not respond. The blue bug in his hand slowly flew up, then surprisingly transformed into a piece of iron. Wee Kyung was stunned. She recognized the piece of iron, which was used as currency in their trade. Not understanding the intention of the blue insect god, Wee Kyung tentatively spoke up to inquire, but suddenly felt a hand on her shoulder. She swiftly turned around, only to find Siran Mule standing there. However, Siran Mule's figure gradually became blurred, as if fading away. The next second, Wee Kyung's chair suddenly flipped over, and she abruptly awoke from her dream, realizing that everything had just been a dream. The scene shifts to the marketplace. Wee Kyung, while rubbing her sore buttocks, walked out thoughtfully. She understood that the dream must have been a revelation from the blue insect god, but she still couldn't decipher what the iron piece meant. Indeed, the thoughts of deities are truly unfathomable. At that moment, a troll was trading with a Lizardman. The troll had never seen such high-quality silk before and was very excited, eagerly conversing with the Lizardman. He mentioned that he came from a tribe in the west, far away from here. The Lizardman merchant was also very enthusiastic, as it was also his first time encountering a person from the troll tribe, so he began to pitch his silk to the troll. The troll hoped to enjoy some discounts, so he took out a piece of iron from his bag, asking if it could be exchanged for a bolt of silk. This silk was of very high quality, and he was unsure whether the piece of iron was sufficient. Just as the Lizardman was about to agree to the trade, a crisp voice interrupted him. Wee Kyung slowly walked up to the two, stopping the transaction. "Sorry, I think he should trade with me first." The Lizardman immediately understood her hint, acknowledged hurriedly, and the troll, without arguing, turned and left. Wee Kyung then sternly criticized the Lizardman. "If you continue to do business like this, you will sooner or later run into bigger trouble. Firstly, these fine silks, no matter who the buyer is, should not be sold at a reduced price just like that, because you are a merchant, not a charity giver." Originally, the Lizardman and Rakrak had transported these silks here by ox cart, and the cost was not high. He had thought about raising the price, but opted for a discount for a quick sale. Wee Kyung reminded him, "Products from the Black Scale tribe are rare goods. Reducing costs does not mean you should also lower the selling price. Your goal should be to maximize profit, not blindly chase volume." Then, Wee Kyung brought up the issue with the iron piece. The Lizardman seemed puzzled. "Is there something wrong with this iron piece?" Wee Kyung calmly took out a small scale from her pocket. After comparing the iron piece from automation with the iron piece provided by the troll using the scale, the Lizardman was surprised to find the troll's iron piece slowly lifting, indicating that its density was lower than that of regular iron pieces. Wee Kyung then advised him, "Be careful to assess the quality of iron pieces. Do not trade them easily just because they look similar." Just then, a familiar voice interrupted her. "Can you compare the weight of this iron piece?" Wee Kyung turned around and saw it was Rakrak. Of course, the scales of automation are very accurate. Wee Kyung picked up the iron piece and felt it was not just an ordinary iron piece. That is from an ancient ruin. It's of very high quality, but extremely difficult to smelt, so our local blacksmiths decided to give up. Maybe automation can find a way to smelt it into new weapons. Hearing this, an idea from the dream that morning immediately came to Wee Kyung's mind. She thought, "Is this the revelation from the deity?" Soon after, the iron piece was eventually fashioned into the spearhead she needed, but now she faced a dilemma. She recalled promising Rakrak to help him manufacture weapons, but the current problem was that the cost of forging this type of iron was extremely high. Normally, a blacksmith could complete the process with 10 hammer strikes, but now it took 30 or 40. It took him half a day to barely forge one product. "Why don't you take a break? During the forging process, the metal must remain malleable. If we stop midway, we would need to reheat it and add more charcoal, which would increase the cost significantly." Hearing this, Wee Kyung felt a headache coming on and then signaled the blacksmith to go and rest. Meanwhile, Siran Mule walked in, clearly noticing Wee Kyung's distress. "Maybe you should be honest with Rakrak." Wee Kyung refused. She was confident at the time and believed she could complete the task. Admitting failure now, she worried that Rakrak might look down on their alliance. Rakrak is a forgiving person. He probably didn't have high hopes to begin with. He would say, "It's okay. I didn't expect much anyway." Siran Mule's imitation made Wee Kyung pause. Although it was a bit of a blow to her pride, she knew Siran Mule was right. Actually, Wee Kyung had already thought of a solution, but it was still just on paper. Then, she motioned for Siran Mule to follow her somewhere. The two walked into a secret passage, where Siran Mule saw the legendary mud soldiers, Automation's repair guardians. However, Wee Kyung's purpose was obviously not to show Siran Mule these. As she pushed open a large door, a giant water wheel appeared before them. Siran Mule was stunned by the sight. It was his first time seeing such a device. This is the power source of automation, built here to prevent enemy sabotage. But there's one thing you need to focus on. The water wheel operates on water flow, producing a continuous supply of energy, like a tireless worker. I don't want to use that power just for the iron plates. I want to use this power to change the automation. Will you help me? Of course. The next day, Wee Kyung took out her design blueprints. Her idea was to add 3 new wheels under the first one without altering it. However, she was not sure if this idea was feasible. Jail, the expert responsible for technological affairs in the Black Scale Tribe, affirmed Wee Kyung's idea. After her careful investigation of the water flow, she believed the success rate of this method was high. However, she also reminded Wee Kyung that this project was enormous and would require significant financial and material support. The wood used for construction needs to be extremely sturdy, and there are no forests nearby. Therefore, the wood needs to be transported from far away. Wee Kyung reassured that funding was not an issue since automation had sufficient financial resources. However, Jail warned her, the problem isn't just on the surface. Along with investing a large sum of money, you also need to consider its return. If it does not meet expectations, it could weaken your position in automation. That's the risk you need to take. After returning to her room, Wee Kyung fell into deep thought. Later, she sought advice from the demon inside her. However, the demon was helpless as well. I am not a god of prophecy. What I know or can change is simply the moment in front of you. Wee Kyung explained her plan in detail to the demon. The first will serves as the main energy source for automation. The second will connects to the blacksmith's bellows, which, with ample charcoal support, can keep the flames burning continuously. The third will connects to a huge hammer, capable of flattening iron blocks that human strength alone could not. The fourth wheel powers a grindstone, efficiently grinding more grain. Wee Kyung was filled with anticipation, as she believed this would not only improve efficiency but also bring long-term prosperity to automation. Hearing this, the demon commented that it was a good idea, but the immediate tasks could only be completed by Wee Kyung herself. Having gained everyone's approval, Wee Kyung's confidence was bolstered, so she decided to go all out to complete the construction of the water wheels. With that, Lizardmen and humans were frantically busy with the construction of the water wheel. During the construction, accidents were frequent and dropping water wheels were common. Worse, they were cheated by faulty parts purchased from merchants. However, these were minor issues. A bigger problem emerged due to miscalculations of space. There wasn't enough room to install the fourth wheel. This meant the first 3 wheels had to be dismantled and adjusted. This issue caused Wee Kyung a great headache, but she still opted to rebuild rather than settle for less. Facing a difficult proposal, the major families suggested using only 3 water wheels, arguing that it would save time and reduce the waste of human and material resources. However, Wee Kyung disagreed with this proposal because for her, this was not just a project but a mission given to her by the blue insect god. Do you want to provoke the wrath of the blue insect god? Upon hearing about the potential wrath of the blue insect god, the major families dared not raise any more objections. Meanwhile, Nebula watched everything happening in automation from above. Although he never required Wee Kyung to build 4 water wheels, he saw no problem with Wee Kyung's insistence. As long as Wee Kyung could bring him enough faith value, Nebula was satisfied. After all, humans are a difficult group to control, unlike the absolutely loyal Lizardmen. Although Wee Kyung used the name of the deity to extend the construction period, the other influential families in automation were unlikely to strongly object, as the progress of the construction would bring them various practical benefits. Automation thrives on commerce, and the brief stay of workers would inject resources into the commercial district, and expanding the commercial district would eventually bring greater profits. After many twists and turns, the most advanced structure in the Lost World, the 4 water wheels, finally operated successfully in automation. And behind all this, the help of the Black Scale Tribe was indispensable. With the surge of the water flow, the nearby hammer also started operating, emitting a heavy and rhythmic sound. Watching the scene unfold, Wee Kyung revealed a satisfied smile. Then, she silently apologized to the blue insect god because she had used the deity's name to complete the project, but she also firmly believed that the deity would understand her intentions. Meanwhile, Nebula's system alert sounded. Skill, iron making, has advanced to level 2. Your civilization has now laid the technological groundwork to produce higher grade iron. Your civilization can now smelt to create more durable and long-lasting ironware. The first base currency of the 3rd continent, Pion, has been established. The first writing system of the 3rd continent, the Chung letter system, has been established. This technology is significantly faster than the average development speed of all players. How could I be mad at this? This was precisely why he chose humans as his second race. The next day, 2 elves were wandering around the city, full of curiosity about the mechanical and human noises around them. Although they had heard about automation's water wheels, they did not expect to hear the noise from such a distance. Just then, a Lizardman merchant behind them called out to them, introducing them to the silk of the Black Scale Tribe. The elves, seeing such high-quality silk for the first time, expressed their desire to purchase and then took out iron pieces crafted by the elf tribe as trade items. After being trained by Wee Kyung Kyung, the lizard man had learned to use a scale for measurement. As the iron pieces were placed on the scale, it quickly became apparent that these iron pieces were underweight, a case of shortchanging. Faced with this situation, the lizard man merchant decisively refused the trade. However, this made the elves very angry. They disparaged the silks as mere rags on the spot, which enraged the lizard man merchant. He told them that the production cost of silk was extremely high, not only consuming a lot of time but also requiring intricate craftsmanship. Faced with such rude customers, the merchant promptly sent them away. Meanwhile, Wee Kyung, hidden in the shadows, secretly observed all this, feeling reassured in her heart. It seems he has grown into a competent merchant. However, the appearance of the elves puzzled Wee Kyung, as elves rarely appear in automation. To find out more, Wee Kyung decided to discreetly follow them to see the true intentions of these elves. After an afternoon of tracking, Wee Kyung was astonished by their behavior. These elves were not exchanging currency but exploiting their beautiful appearances to deceive merchants. Their targets were often novice merchants, using their lack of experience rather than conducting legitimate business. This was more like a game of fooling the naive. Wee Kyung realized this was a new scam. Where the hell are these people from? Meanwhile, on the other side, Nebula's inbox suddenly popped up with a message, a video call request from the player Eldar. This was different from Hegemonia. Although Nebula was quite familiar with Hegemonia's personality, he knew very little about Eldar, especially regarding the North Coast region. Nebula hesitated for a moment, unsure whether the call was necessary, but ultimately chose to accept. Once the connection was established, a very beautiful elven figure appeared on the screen. Pleased to meet you. I am the god of elves, Eldar. Is she a role-playing player? Eldar indeed looked like an elf, but due to the androgynous features of elves, it was hard to determine their gender. However, gender is not a crucial factor when creating avatars. Nebula didn't mind. He politely responded to Eldar, who then said, "You are much more polite than Hegemonia." Nebula was somewhat surprised, not expecting that Eldar knew Hegemonia, but the next statement shocked him even more. Eldar claimed that it was she who had driven Hegemonia away from the North Coast. Is this role-playing player that strong? Nebula thought to himself. Then Eldar got straight to the point. She directly demanded tributes from Nebula. Without giving an answer, Nebula hung up and decisively chose to blacklist Eldar. The upcoming war was the real issue that Nebula needed to address. Who would have thought that there would be players so shameless, demanding tributes before even starting a conversation? Although Nebula had no direct conflict with her, with his current strength, he need not fear any player. The elves have always been stationed on the North Coast, and due to the cold climate, Nebula was unable to use insects for reconnaissance, limiting his understanding of the elves. However, this lack of intelligence was mutual. By sending elves into the city, Nebula deduced she also couldn't control birds and other creatures. Despite this, he did not underestimate her, especially since she mentioned having defeated Hegemonia. In this situation, Nebula was already prepared for battle and also decided to observe the movements of other players. The scene shifts, and Wee Kyung confidently heads to one side, having heard that an elven envoy had requested an audience. This person was the captain of the president of a trading company, Leonar. Wee Kyung roughly guessed that his purpose was related to the elves' actions in the city. Upon meeting the Lord of Automation, Leonar was forthright, immediately explaining his purpose. However, Wee Kyung paid no attention to his request. Seeing this, Leonar took out a box and handed it to Wee Kyung. When Wee Kyung opened the box, she saw a sparkling gem inside. Leonar explained, this gem was discovered by the elves in an ancient ruin. They hope to exchange this precious gem for Automation's tacit approval to conduct their business without interference. It was a clever plan. The elves thought Wee Kyung was greedy, but the next moment, they were stunned. Wee Kyung unhesitatingly threw the gem onto the ground. Seeing this, Leonar quickly lost his smile, bent down to pick up the box, and carefully checked whether the gem was intact, then breathed a sigh of relief. Wee Kyung was very skeptical of the elves' bribery, as they had never come down from the northern coast before. Could something have happened in the north? Without understanding the specifics, Wee Kyung chose to hold her forces. At this time, Wee Kyung thought of the blue insect god, feeling it was a good marketing opportunity. She confidently began to promote their wooden puppets, trying to attract the interest of the elves. However, the elves said they already had their own deity, the dancing shadow god. Not long after, Siran Mule walks into Wee Kyung's office and tells her that he has sent people to apologize to the elves. Last time, not only did Wee Kyung try to change their faith, but she also insulted their deity. To this, Wee Kyung could only sigh helplessly. Those elves, apart from their looks, don't seem to have much else special. You mean to say they're good-looking? Hearing this, Wee Kyung was stunned and quickly changed the subject. After all, they were planning to bribe the Lord of Automation. Meanwhile, Siran Mule looked out the window, guessing that the elves might act before the rainy season arrives. We need to be fully prepared by then. Wee Kyung agreed, and Siran Mule said, by then I'll have more insulting things to say. Also, prepare for war. A few days later, the soldiers of Automation suddenly noticed a disturbance ahead during their patrol. An army was rapidly moving towards Automation. As the view became clearer, the reality matched their guess. It was the elves, guided by the dancing shadow god, launching an attack on Automation. At this moment, the leader of the elves, Hasadian, wore a smug expression. In his view, a castle built of mud could be destroyed at any moment. He firmly believed their deity was watching this battle from above. He confidently thought that with a squad of 300 people, they could easily take over automation. Although the walls of automation are towering, there are only about 150 soldiers equipped with inferior bows and arrows. In contrast, their elven bows can accurately hit targets beyond 80 steps. Hasadian is already imagining the scene of the Lord of Automation kneeling before him in surrender. However, Nebula was well prepared. If that's the case, let's see the truth in action. Meanwhile, while Hasadian was fantasizing about capturing the Lord of Automation alive, a guard hurriedly reported that an army was spotted on the mountains outside the city. There are around 70 soldiers. They must have been aware we were coming. Hasadian became confused. They only came with 70 soldiers? Why? Just then, his soldiers noticed a commotion from behind and discovered a small squad attacking them. Hasadian quickly turned around and saw that it was people from the Black Scale tribe. Damn it, how are they here? Meanwhile, Eldar panicked. She had not anticipated that Lizardmen would appear on the battlefield and aid the humans. Clash of civilizations. The opposing tribe possesses faith. Eldar became even more confused after seeing this alert. She was clearly battling one player, so why could the opponent mobilize two races? Eldar hastily sent a message to Nebula, filled with shock. Is the Black Scale tribe your ally? Are there other gods involved in this war? Looking at Eldar's continuous inquiries, Nebula sighed helplessly. Before contacting, couldn't you check the local information first? Eldar checked the local list. She quickly opened the local list, but found that it only showed Nebula as a player, with no signs of other deities involved. What does this mean? Eldar's confusion deepened, but Nebula answered her straightforwardly. You're right, I am indeed a god worshipped by humans, but at the same time, I am also a god worshipped by lizardmen. Eldar was stunned. He hadn't expected that a player could have the faith of two tribes at the same time. The war erupts. Despite Eldar's shock, chaos had already begun on the battlefield. At this moment, the elves were at a disadvantage and in disarray. Exhausted from the long march, the soldiers had no energy left to withstand the siege from two tribes. All they could do was try to withstand the onslaught from the Black Scale tribe and attempt to break out through a narrow path. But the human ambush left no chance for them. Human soldiers on the mountain aimed at the elves, and with fully drawn bows, countless arrows rained down like droplets on the elf soldiers. The unsuspecting elves were immediately thrown into disarray. As the elves were busy dodging arrows, Rakrak had already led his cavalry into the fray. Hasadian tried to keep the troops in formation, though some soldiers managed to raise their spears again. It was too late. Rakrak was at the forefront of the cavalry, pointing to the sky and issuing commands. However, the next moment, they saw Rakrak slowly drag his finger from the sky to where the elf spearmen were. A blue line of energy seemed to strike down from the sky, illuminating an area. Rakrak gave the elves no chance to breathe. With a spear in hand, he charged into their ranks, where he left a trail of blood in his wake. The well-trained Lizardman cavalry slaughtered the elf soldiers without leaving a trace. Hasadian watched helplessly as his soldiers dropped their weapons and fled in all directions. Even though Hasadian called out the name of the dancing shadow god in an attempt to boost morale, no one paid heed. The elf soldiers had completely lost their will to fight, collapsing beyond recovery. At that moment, Buzz appeared as a specter, hovering over the battlefield and spreading panic. The Lizardman and human coalition swiftly concluded the first wave of battle, leaving the elf army in disastrous defeat. But Rakrak has no intention of letting the fleeing elf soldiers go. Watching her tribe being unilaterally slaughtered, Eldar quickly offers to surrender. You're not going to intervene with dissent? Eldar is helpless, as the disparity in strength is clear. She asks Nebula to state the terms for a ceasefire. Nebula extends 3 fingers: information, technology, and resources. This leaves Eldar momentarily stunned, as these 3 demands encompass all he has. Faced with such harsh conditions, Eldar looks serious. She knows that agreeing to these terms will doom the elf tribe, but refusing to surrender means complete destruction. But this is already the best outcome. Eldar acknowledged Nebula. I, Eldar, the god of elves, am conquered by the kindness of the god of humans and the god of lizardmen. I will offer everything you require. Please forgive my past arrogance. Now, let me tell you all about the North Coast. Currently, there are 2 other players on the North Coast. They are Solonos and Lim Chunsik. Solonos has won the faith of the Centaur tribe, which is known for its cavalry superiority. However, the disadvantages of the Centaur tribe are also very clear: slow population growth, high resource consumption. Nebula also finds this problematic. Although the Lizardman tribe has its own mounts, they are clearly at a disadvantage in cavalry battles with the Centaur tribe. Lim Chunsik has won the faith of the Ogre tribe by compensating for the intellectual deficiencies of the Ogre race, allowing them to fully leverage their physical size advantage. According to Eldar, Lim Chunsik has made significant progress in this process. Lim Chunsik, through unique methods, has improved the intellectual deficiencies of the Ogre race, making them rely not only on brute strength. Now, the Ogre tribe, with both physical size and strategic capabilities, is a formidable race. He appears to have successfully enhanced their intelligence through the blessings of small regions, which Nebula can understand. After all, he had previously bestowed blessings beginnings on Rakrak. Meanwhile, Nebula is curious. Lim Chunsik should be the stronger one out of the two. Then did Hegemonia fight Lim Chunsik? Eldar states that none of this has happened yet. On the north coast, each player occupies a region, while Hegemonia is situated in the far south. Knowing Hegemonia, Nebula believes he would prioritize developing his base in the south until he encounters Nebula. Lim Chunsik is an extremely dominant figure, often demanding tributes from Eldar. At this point, Eldar can't help but tear up as it's difficult for her to meet Lim Chunsik's excessive demands. So Lim Chunsik is more amiable towards Solonos than towards you. Eldar is startled. How did you figure that out? Because Solando's race is the Centaurs, and both elves and ogres are in the same area. Ultimately, land issues usually spark wars. The elves would definitely be the first to be targeted, so Lim Chunsik has no reason to be nice to you. This leaves Eldar stunned, not realizing his situation had deteriorated to this extent. Immediately, Nebula signaled for her not to worry too much. After all, if a powerful nation suddenly emerges in the north, it would be extremely disadvantageous for me as well. So, the best approach now is to help each other. Upon hearing this, Eldar's emotions were stirred. Are you really willing to cooperate with me? Eldar asked cautiously. Her main force had already been nearly destroyed. What could she still contribute? Nebula had already anticipated Eldar's concerns and replied confidently. You said your god name is Dancing Shadow God, right? You must also have gained the domain of arts. Eldar's heart jolted. She hadn't expected that Nebula knew her so well. Then, Nebula signaled for Eldar to come closer and patiently explain the next steps of the plan. After hearing Nebula's plan, Eldar was both shocked and confused. Can this really work? Meanwhile, in the snowstorm, the Centaur clan leader was gazing at the land beneath him. The seer had recently made a prophecy. In the near future, a new king would emerge here, one who would rule over everything, and all would bow before his feet. The leader was curious about this prophecy, yet also somewhat disdainful. He sneered and said, "The king you speak of is just a god, isn't it?" "No, there are no gods in these lands." The leader then laughed heartily, confidently declaring, "That person must be me." However, the seer immediately rejected his interpretation, saying, "Have you heard the recent rumors about the Black Scale tribe? Despite their great strength, they cannot reach the northern coast because a stronger tribe is blocking their way. The one who will become king is a giant, one far more intelligent than the centaurs or elves." Upon hearing this, the centaur leader's expression changed drastically, clearly angered. "Am I supposed to bow to him as king?" The seer was adamant in reaffirming his vision, but in the next instant, he was struck down, his blood splattering the ground, for the centaur leader had refused to accept the prophecy. "I will not bow down to anyone but the gods." This was all a message from the Dancing Shadow God. Eldar was very puzzled by this. She didn't understand Nebula's intentions. Nebula noticed that the leader was very angry and seemed not to believe the prophecy. But Nebula's objective had already been achieved, and now they just needed to wait and watch the drama unfold. Meanwhile, Temerdo once again wakes up from his dreams. The nightmare predicted by the elves has troubled him for a long time. Every time he nears the summit of the mountain, a massive stone always lands on his head. He doesn't understand why the position of the king has become an obsession in his mind. In this wilderness, how many people will know his name? Is he doomed to just watch the ogre become the new king? As he is lost in thought, one of his guards interrupts him. A few messengers have come to visit. Temerdo doesn't hesitate and immediately lets them in. He also wants to know the thoughts of other tribes. Soon after, Temerdo appears very imposing inside the tent. The first messenger belongs to the same race as the previous prophet, but their prediction is completely different. He completely disagrees with the previous viewpoint. Instead, he says Temerdo might become the new king. The second messenger comes from the automation. They bring many tributes and also agree that Temerdo will become king. Although this is not a divine revelation, Temerdo's heart begins to show signs of wavering. The final messenger is a representative of the Lizardmen tribe. He enters the tent and naturally removes his hood, introducing himself. "I am Owen from the Lizardmen tribe." Temerdo, who is full of anticipation toward this unfamiliar lizard man named Owen, wonders what he will say next. "Are you here to tell me that I will become king?" "Honestly, I don't want you to become the king." If Temerdo had been told just a day ago that he couldn't be king, he would have been furious. But now, after speaking with the first two messengers, his emotions shift from anger to confusion. He wants to know the answer. "Is it because I'm not qualified?" Owen smiles naturally. "It seems that you've gained the recognition of the other tribes." Temerdo confirmed Owen's guess. He has just earned the recognition of the elves and humans. "So what about the Black Scale tribe's stance?" Owen confidently replies, "The chieftain will acknowledge you." But Temerdo feels something is off, as Owen's words seem to carry hidden meaning. Owen then gently reminds him, "Do not fight for that position. This is just my personal opinion, not that of the Black Scale tribe." At this moment, Temerdo was very dissatisfied with Owen's opinion. He questioned, "Even humans and elves support me, yet you advise me not to compete. What is the reason?" Owen did not hide anything anymore and said straightforwardly, "It's not about qualification or capability, but about the gods." Hearing this, Tamari was shocked. "Our god doesn't want me to become king? Why? This is simply a guess. If there are hierarchies among the races of the continent, then the same applies to the gods. Your god can only bow down before the god of the ogres." Hearing these words, anger flashed through Temerdo's eyes. He grabbed an axe from the ground and swung it toward Owen. "You are insulting our god." However, Owen did not attempt to dodge, instead calmly stating, "I was merely speaking of a hierarchy among gods, not between tribes." "Why are you so angry?" Temerdu stared at Owen and asked through gritted teeth, "Do you really think the ogre's god is superior to our god?" Then, Tamari recalled the scenes from his dreams. Every time, just as he was about to reach the peak, a huge rock would strike him down into the valley. These recurring nightmares had left him increasingly anxious. He then asked Owen if there was a solution, and Owen simply got up slowly, calmly stating, "Warriors of the Blackscale tribe will also defy the chief's orders when necessary. Perhaps your god might do the same." As he was leaving, Owen turned back and advised, "If I were you, I would do what your god is unwilling to do." After the conversation with Owen, Temerdu was left deep in thought. He realized that he had to become a king. He must take the path that his god is unwilling to tread. He resolved to do whatever it takes. Meanwhile, on the other side, Nebula and Eldar were quietly watching everything happening in the Centaur tribe. Eldar couldn't help but remark, "I never thought my realm could be used in such a way to actually influence the will of other races. Even if they are manipulated by other players, that player named Solonos must be quite overwhelmed by now." At this moment, Eldar, full of confusion, couldn't help but ask, "Can stirring up trouble among races really be used against gods too? Why not?" Solonos must also be aware of the limitations of nomadic development. If he doesn't act, does he really want to wait until Lim Chunsik engulfs him before he retaliates? I'm sure Solonos knows about this, so there's a high possibility that he won't actively stop him. Nebula's tone was full of confidence. As Nebula predicted, Temerdu had already begun waging war on the ogre tribe, while Solonos was apologizing to Lim Chunsik. However, Lim Chunsik did not blame him, as they hadn't expected Eldar to choose to ally with other players against him. Solonos didn't lift his head, only murmuring, "I indeed hadn't considered that. No, the one who should be apologizing is me, for making you contain hegemonia. Otherwise this wouldn't have happened. If Temerdu dies, you'll lose an important high priest." Hearing this, Solonos lifted his head and laughed, his laugh tinged with mockery. He said sharply, "What I have to tell you is, Temerdu will kill Kijin." Lim Chunsik scoffed softly in return. "I don't think so." Solonos chuckled softly, muttering to himself, "Let's wait and see then." On the battlefield, the battle soon began. Temerdu led the Centaur tribe in a raid, but the scene before him was unbelievable. The ogre tribe had already ambushed in the woods. The centaurs were caught off guard by the appearance of a group of ogre giants standing 2.5 meters tall and weighing nearly a ton. The ground was littered with the bodies of goblins sent by the ogres, obviously as bait to attract attention. At the same time, seizing the moment, the ogres wielded giant stone hammers, launching a devastating attack on the centaur warriors. With their speed advantage lost, the centaur warriors were completely passive, merely slaughtered by the ogres. Temerdu finally realized that the goblins were just a trap. Watching his warriors being massacred, he was furious and immediately swung his great axe into the fray, chopping down 2 ogres in front. Blood splattered as he coldly pressed on. After he had slain the 2 ogres, an even larger ogre appeared before him. The two stood in the center of the battlefield, eye to eye. They had never met before, yet recognized each other instantly, as if fate had destined them for this battle. Without further words, Temerdu and Kijin charged at each other, engaging in fierce hand-to-hand combat. Temerdu was very strong, and even though Kijin was a massive figure, the battle was evenly matched, their weapons having been knocked away in the clash. Kijin seized an opportunity, grabbing Temerdu by the neck, and despite Temerdu's attempts to break free, he found his strength for the first time so suppressed. Using his immense size and strength, Kijin mounted Temerdu's back, pressing him to his knees without using his hands, but rather locking Temerdu's neck firmly with his wrists and forearms. Temerdu gritted his teeth and struggled, trying to seize a moment to counterattack. However, just when he thought he had caught a glimpse of opportunity, Kijin twisted his arm, and with a crisp sound of bone cracking, Temerdu's neck was completely twisted, and he fell to the cold ground. Meanwhile, in the distance, 2 deities stood on rugged terrain, watching all this unfold. "Are you planning to challenge it?" Nebula did not respond, his gaze fixed on the system window, seemingly pondering something. Eldar paced in circles nearby, talking to himself. What a pity, just a loss of some goblins and ogre warriors. Nebula still did not reply, scrolling through the system information window with focused attention. "Aren't the lizard people your main force? They have relatively weak resistance to cold. If they fight in the north, they can't give their all. However, I know your human troops have been blessed, enhancing their combat abilities." But Nebula remained silent, as if waiting for some more crucial information to emerge. "Their physical abilities have improved, but they are still outnumbered." At this point, Nebula interrupted Eldar, directly stating that he does not need the elves as the main force and will not send the Lizardmen to attack the ogres. Eldar was stunned, not understanding what Nebula really meant. Then, Nebula suddenly changed the subject, asking Eldar about his ranking in the previous Lost World game. Eldar glanced sideways, reluctantly, but still answered, 3,400th. Upon hearing this, Nebula immediately sank into a low mood. This ranking is not too bad, but it's certainly not outstanding. Nebula began to wonder what the selection criteria for the candidate for deity really were. Could it be random random, he muttered to himself. However, the joining of the first and second candidates obviously wasn't by chance. It seemed deliberate. Nebula confirmed to himself. There must be other hidden selection criteria, but he couldn't guess what they were at the moment. Just then, as if suddenly remembering something, Nebula asked Eldar, "By the way, you'll continue to cooperate with me, right? I just said so much." And this guy didn't listen to a word. Despite this, Nebula immediately responded, "Thank you." Meanwhile, on the other side, Lim Chun-sik was analyzing a series of recent events. His system interface displayed the domain information. He began to notice a name, Nebula, a player who was starting to make him feel uneasy. If Lim Chun-sik was not mistaken, Nebula was the guy who ranked first on the leaderboard. Lim Chun-sik had once tried to invite Nebula to participate in live streams and offline gatherings, but was rejected because Nebula was only interested in the game itself. Recently, Lim Chun-sik observed that the Lizardmen were nomading under Nebula's control, which he considered a strategic mistake. He judged that the Lizardmen would not pose much of a threat to his own game strategy. Lim Chun-sik felt he had the upper hand because he could control bird creatures, while Nebula's Lizardmen and insects feared the cold. His ogres were completely unaffected by harsh environments, and as long as sufficient food was stored in advance, they could easily survive the winter without disturbance from the Lizardmen. Moreover, Lim Chun-sik's previous game ranking was 20th, and he began to consider whether he should try to defeat this first-ranked player. Soon, winter arrived. However, Lim Chun-sik noticed some anomalies. The Lizardmen tribe showed no activity at all, which puzzled and unnerved him. Just then, his map showed smoke billowing from the elves' village. "What's going on? Are you trying to divert my attention?" Nebula employed the classic scorched earth tactic. He turned all areas that could potentially be occupied by the enemy into ruins, fundamentally cutting off the ogre's supply of resources. This method was as crucial in Lost World as in real warfare. Watching the villages consumed by flames, Eldar's expression darkened, as those were villages she had watched being built. However, she wasn't too worried, because Nebula had evacuated the elves' inhabitants before setting the fires. "So, you plan to use this tactic from the start?" Usually, it's difficult to implement this strategy in the initial stages of a game, but this time all conditions were met. Since the opponent is located in the North Shore area, it is difficult for them to replenish their food, and I control the food supplies of automation. Once war starts, they will raid the elves' resources, and now they can only wait and starve. Eldar didn't respond, just silently watched Nebula. He found that he was increasingly unable to fathom Nebula's plans. "Also, you are a part of my luck." This comment made Eldar blush momentarily, mistaking it for Nebula teasing her, but Nebula did not elaborate further and continued explaining his plan. Because the elves are a sedentary tribe, they have always been providing a steady supply of food to the ogres, so burning their villages is a very effective measure. The ogres won't last until next winter. As Nebula predicted, the ogres decisively attacked the goblin NPCs due to the shortage of food. The starving ogres directly used the goblins as food, which resulted in Kijin losing control over the goblins. However, he was powerless as their food supplies were already minimal after the winter. The starving ogres had no choice but to attempt to flee the area. Kijin realized that continuing like this was not a solution, but since he hadn't received any divine guidance, he didn't dare to make a move and could only continue to wait for instructions from the gods. Seeing his fighters dying from hunger and battle, Lim Chun-sik was deeply saddened but had no solutions, and he could only watch helplessly as the ogre tribe gradually disintegrated, as more and more people stopped believing in him, which directly led to a continuous decline in Lim Chun-sik's faith value. Now he had to make a decision. Looking at the message window, Lim Chun-sik hesitated for a long time but finally made the call. He tried to borrow some manpower from Solonose. However, Solonose had no solution either. Last year's great battle had cost him almost all his warriors, and the Lizardmen tribe had taken advantage of the situation, leaving only the old, weak, sick, and disabled in his tribe. At the same time, Solonose also had something to discuss with him, as Eldar had sent him an invitation, and behind Eldar was Nebula. Hearing this, Lim Chun-sik immediately became anxious, eagerly wanting to know what Solanose's choice would be. Solonose stated that he had already rejected Eldar's invitation, but in reality, this decision was made after a long period of consideration. Hearing this, Lim Chun-sik was moved to tears, feeling relieved. Solonose then mentioned that he could still send 10 fighters to help Lim Chun-sik. The two then began discussing the next battle strategy. After Lim Chun-sik's inspection, they finally chose a deserted valley as the battlefield. They deduced that Nebula's divine level was higher than theirs, so they decided to join forces to challenge Nebula's divinity. Lim Chun-sik believed that he definitely would not lose this time. Soon, Kijin led all the ogres to attack the Lizardmen, including some fighters from the Centaur tribe, but their combat effectiveness was inconsistent. The Lizardmen tribe's patrol team quickly arrived upon receiving the news, numbering about 50 people, led by the chief of the Black Scale tribe, Rakrak. Lim Chun-sik did not hesitate, decisively initiated divine possession, and boosted the combat effectiveness of the ogres to the extreme. At the same time, Solonose also activated the same skill. They knew Nebula would also choose to possess the Lizardmen, so they hoped to take this this opportunity to completely eliminate Nebula. However, facing the attack from the two, Rakrak showed no signs of panic because he knew that God would surely appear. In the next instant, Rakrak felt a surge of power fill his body, and with a swift leap, he easily dodged the attack. After Kijin's attack ended, the Centaur warrior continued their sweep, but Rakrak agilely jumped and quickly reached the side of the ogre. Before the two could react, Rakrak had already leapt in front of them. His hands seemed to be gathering some form of power, as a burst of white light shone from his hand, instantly engulfing the two. After completing all this, Nebula clapped his hands and said with a relaxed expression, "Did you think you could beat me if you just descended?" At the same time, a dialogue box appeared. Players Lim Chunsik and player Solanos has been sealed. In the Lost World, when players lose their health bars while they've descended, this mechanism is triggered. If their level is below 1, they will directly become sealed. This is almost equivalent to being annihilated, viewed as death by the players. Looking at the spoils obtained after the battle, Nebula appeared very satisfied. He noted that Rakrak's required experience points to reach level 10 had greatly increased, but he had finally reached level 12. He then received an opportunity to randomly obtain small domain each from the defeated players. Nebula didn't hesitate to select confirm. Several cards appeared before him, from which he casually drew two. He obtained bird domain and swamp domain. While the swamp domain was nothing special, the bird domain excited Nebula greatly. He decided to substitute the blessing of the insects that he gave to the lizardmen and humans. More importantly, the effects of these blessings would start to show in their next generation. With new cards in hand, Nebula already had a clear plan for what was to come. Now, Nebula must prepare for what's to come. Through Locust Swarm reconnaissance, he discovered that a major battle had broken out in the western region of the continent. Although he wasn't sure if he had grasped the full situation, he knew this battle involved 5 players, split into 3 factions. They were fighting at the borders of their respective territories, each trying to occupy open land behind their opponents. However, Nebula wouldn't easily disrupt this delicate balance before they reached his domain. As for the east, the sea was a barrier. Nebula thought it best to focus on developing the land in the early stages. As for the south and north, the north was already completely under Nebula's control, while the south had some NPC tribes. His plan was to send Rakrak to gradually conquer these tribes, solidifying the territory for the lizardmen and humans. Lastly, the issue with Eldar needed to be resolved. Meanwhile, due to the defeat of the elves, they were forced to relocate to the northernmost part of the continent. This area was harsh for them, and they were very dissatisfied with this decision. But under the threat of the lizardmen's spears, they had no choice but to accept reality. The newly appointed elven leader, Leonar, told her people that the dancing shadow god had guided them to a new way out, and foretold that a group of people from the south would come to help the elves. Just as she finished speaking, a guard hurried in to report a group of people had arrived to visit the tribe. Leonar immediately understood that these were the helpers they had been waiting for. Despite the elves' current financial constraints, Leonar still prepared a grand welcome ceremony for the humans. As Wee Kyung just took off her hat, Leonar immediately recognized her, and Wee Kyung did not expect her to become the new leader of the elves. Leonar hurriedly warmly invited them to rest in the tent, but a lizard man stopped her. They would not let Wee Kyung enter until they were sure there were no dangers inside the tent. Leonar looked at the stern expression of the lizard man, Siran Mule, worried he harbored hostility towards the elves. However, after inspecting the tent, Siran Mule's expression relaxed due to the warmth of the cabin, and Leonar then realized that he was just unhappy because of the cold. Leonar carefully asked, "What wind has blown you here?" Wee Kyung confidently replied, "It's the blue insect god. He specifically helps the weak and abandoned. So, we've brought some agricultural tools that help with production, as well as seeds that can survive in cold climates." Leonar's face lit up when she saw the seeds, but when she heard Wee Kyung mention, "We can give you a discount," she was stunned. "You're a merchant too. Naturally you understand my meaning. After all, there's no such thing as a free lunch." Hearing this, Leonar clenched her fists. The elves had nearly been impoverished after their defeat, and just migrating here had depleted most of their resources. Wee Kyung gently put the seeds back in her pocket, with a hint of regret in her tone. "If that's the case, then it's a pity, but we might not be able to make a deal. After all, our time is also precious." Seeing Wee Kyung take back the seeds, Leonar couldn't sit still. "I know why you came to this remote land. You must want something. After all, I'm a merchant too. I don't think you would come all this way, especially for an uncertain deal, especially for a chosen one from the Black Scale tribe." Wee Kyung smiled at this. "Didn't you say it yourself? You have nothing to give us, so what should we take?" Leonar pulled out a piece of silk from her bosom. It was an intelligence map of the elves' resources, clearly marking the locations of some minerals. "We can trade these with you at a cheaper price." Hearing this, Wee Kyung couldn't help but laugh louder. "Are you insane? Are you trying to sell me the future and your trust?" Leonar, however, affirmed without hesitation, "Yes, I stake my name as a guarantee." Wee Kyung was silent for a moment, seemingly seriously considering her words, then said, "All right, I agree." However, the slight gleam of triumph in her eyes seemed to suggest that everything was under her control. "Words alone are not enough. I need something tangible as evidence of the promise." Leonar had no choice but to comply, knowing that minerals would would become more precious in the future, but they needed a future now. Believe in the dancing shadow god. She will not abandon us. Eventually, both pressed their handprints on the contract and solemnly swore to their respective gods. At the same time, a system dialog box popped up. The first credit trade in the third continent's north shore has been made. Up to this point, in the Lost World, the concept of the world was limited to one's own tribe, with other races merely seen as threats. This barrier had resulted in very rare trades with nomadic tribes. But now, with the stabilization of settled tribes and the nomads' migration along the paths, their trades began to be recorded. The value of reputation and credit was gradually being established, and the structure of the entire world was quietly expanding. And Nebula, the instigator behind all this, pondered, how can I rule this wide world? Meanwhile, under Rakrak's leadership, the Black Scale tribe fought their way through and eventually took down the southern continent. Looking at the scattering goblins on the ground, Rakrak knew it was all over. He took off the buffalo bone mask from his face and walked alone towards the end of the continent. Blood still stained his clothes. Standing at the edge of the vast sea, Rakrak looked up and murmured softly, is this the end of the continent? Under his leadership, the Black Scale tribe, with the will of the blue insect god, had conquered the southern continent. Now, the name of the Black Scale tribe was known far and wide. However, as all warfare came to a close, Nebula found himself faced with new challenges. What should I do next? Nebula silently looked at Rakrak, as if he also knew the doubt in his mind. Rakrak's achievements in conquest forced Nebula to face a choice. Should he implement a feudal system or establish a monarchy? The advantage of a feudal system is that the king can select a few feudal lords and grant them land. In this model, each lord guards their own territory, which reduces the king's burden. However, the relationships between the lords are difficult to manage, and frequent internal wars could plunge the nation into chaos. While wars can somewhat drive technological development, the management challenges are immense, and once things spiral out of control, the consequences could be disastrous. A monarchy, on the other hand, was the option Nebula leaned toward. A central government rules the entire nation, with a stable and clear power structure. The administrative system with defined roles allows for more efficient management. Moreover, a powerful central government can quickly mobilize the army to handle emergencies. However, establishing this system requires vast resources, time, and full control over localities, and the Black Scale tribe was far from having those conditions at the moment. There was much to prepare, including roads, ports, the legitimacy of the king, and the selection of bureaucratic officials. He turned to Eldar and asked, which do you think is better? Eldar shrugged, not answering directly. She thought it wasn't because she didn't know the answer, but because she felt Nebula already knew it. She just didn't understand why he still needed to ask her. On the other side, Rakrak gathered all the Lizardmen for a meeting. He had a strange dream last night, and after hearing it, the Lizardmen silently looked at him because they knew it wasn't an ordinary dream, but a divine revelation. Jael was the first to speak and asked, what kind of dream was it? Rakrak lowered his head, drawing something on the ground with a stick. I dreamed that I flew up, passing through countless mountain villages and wilderness, places that we had once traveled through. Hearing Rakrak's story, the other Lizardmen were filled with curiosity. Although it sounded somewhat absurd, they believed it without question because it came from Rakrak's mouth. After a moment, Rakrak stopped his actions and pointed his tail at the end of the drawing, saying, here, this is the place where we are now. However, he was confused about the name of this area and didn't know what to call it. At this moment, a lizard man raised his hand and said, the dwarves called it Maganen, meaning the end of the land. Rakrak then wrote the name on the ground, Maganen. Then, Rakrak took another step forward and drew a point on the ground with his stick. This is where we drove out the redskin orcs. Does anyone remember what this place is called? The orcs called it Saman. I've heard of many places called Saman. This area is in the southern part of the continent, so let's call it South Saman. Then, Rakrak marked other unnamed places on the map. After discussion, most of the areas were quickly named. Now only one place remains. Does anyone know what it's called? Everyone was silent, seemingly unaware of the name of that place. Then someone remembered, that's an area where no battles have occurred because cockatrices live there and other species don't want to approach. It seems that none of us know the name of that area. Hearing this, Rakrak tapped the ground gently with his stick. I know this land. Though surrounded by mountains, it would be easy to clear a path by removing vines and small trees. Deep in the mountains there's a river connected to a valley, and downstream is a flat, wide land that leads to the sea behind it. Isn't that the place you mentioned in your dream? Rakrak nodded. Yes, its name is Orizon. It means land where our god stands. According to his will, I shall become the king of Orizon. Hearing this, everyone was filled with joy and anticipation. Rakrak then gathered the tribespeople and announced, we will go to Orizon. Looking at the land beneath his feet, Nebula exclaimed, after planning for so long, we've finally taken this step. However, some held opposing views. Establishing a nation requires extensive preparation, and the capital had already been decided to be in Orizon. Rakrak announced this widely and opened a road to Orizon, facilitating the tribe's migration. He also dispatched administrators, naming them war chiefs. These war chiefs, armed with swords and holding codes of law, were responsible for managing the order of the new territory. Nebula was satisfied with Rakrak's arrangements and appointed Wei Kyung and Leonard as marquises, sending people to coordinate with them. Although all this seems primitive and clumsy, the embryonic form of a nation has already emerged. Meanwhile, the system notification reads, "Your nation has entered early monarchy." Eldar stood frozen. She hadn't expected Nebula to adopt both systems simultaneously. "When I weigh the pros and cons to decide what's best for the current situation, I have no choice but to use both." "But why are you making my species a part of your kingdom?" Nebula showed a hint of confusion, calmly stating, "That's my land too." Hearing this, Eldar fell silent. After the establishment of the nation by Nebula, Tatar was sent to the southernmost Maganen to serve as the war chief. Because life there was too mundane, he often remembered the days he fought alongside Rakrak. A young lizard man beside him chuckled in agreement. "Mr. Tatar is the best warrior. That's why you were also appointed as war chief." This made Tatar scoff at himself. The best warrior who lost an eye became useless, so he was sent here to quietly grow old. The young lizard man panicked. "I didn't mean that. I think Chief Rakrak wanted you to guard the land of Maganen, because it is now our territory. Such a life is boring. If something came from across the ocean, I wouldn't feel so." Before he could finish, he noticed something approaching from the sea. Then, a group of beings with green shells appeared before the two. Tatar carefully observed these newcomers from behind the bushes. Noting that they carried no weapons, he decided communication might be possible. Thus, he signaled the young lizard man to hide behind him. "Outsiders, I am the war chief of Maganen. Please state the purpose of your visit. We are turquoise astacidines who've come across the ocean. We got lost because of the waves." At this moment, the young lizard man behind him was extremely nervous because he had heard that Tatar was merciless towards foreign enemies. He had already prepared himself to fight the turquoise astacidines. Meanwhile, Tatar's penetrating voice rang out, "I see." Across the ocean, the turquoise astacidines were all drenched in cold sweat from the pressure of Tatar's presence. Then, Tatar gave a slight smile. "Prepare a temporary shelter for them, and if they're hungry, share some of the leftover food with them." This left everyone present utterly dumbfounded. The next day, after being treated by the Lizardmen, the turquoise astacidines expressed their deep gratitude for their help, and then they left. The young lizard man looked confused. "Why help them? If it were me, I would have driven them away without hesitation." Tatar looked meaningfully in the direction the turquoise astacidines had left, and said, "Do you know how I lost my eye?" One day, he received an order from Rakrak to carry out a mission. Along the way, he encountered some wanderers who had been captured and sold by trolls. Tatar chose to join the fight and single-handedly dealt with more than 10 trolls, but the price was that he lost an eye. In the end, he confessed his mistake before Rakrak. However, Rakrak didn't blame him. Instead, he said, "From now on, everyone will become your left eye. Don't you regret losing your eye for the people of other tribes?" Tatar's answer was, "I heard the leader wandered in the wilderness, guided by the blue insect god, but the blue insect god requires no reward." Rakrak's eyes widened, seemingly understanding his meaning. "You mean, this was the will of our god?" Tatar lowered his head in shame. "Even without God's guidance, I would have done the same. Perhaps your actions were right." Then, Rakrak advised Tatar, "Continue to act like that, and if anyone says you are wrong, let them know about this conversation we are having right now. Tell them that Rakrak also agrees with you." A few days later, Tatar received news from the turquoise astacidines again, so he quickly went to the seaside. Rubwa greeted him warmly and explained that this visit was to purchase silk and iron tools from the Lizardmen. They brought the most valuable items from their tribe, some shiny stones as a trade. Tatar picked up one of the stones and examined them carefully, but was somewhat puzzled because he had no knowledge of their value. This was his first time seeing such items, so he was unsure whether they were worth trading. However, Tatar's attention was soon drawn to the turquoise astacidines' boats. He said, "I'm more interested in your ships than these stones." Rubwa looked troubled upon hearing this and said, "These boats are crucial tools for our survival, and it takes a long time to build one. If you don't like it, then no deal." Hearing this, Rubwa became anxious and said, "We'll bring an empty boat next time." Ultimately, the two reached a trade agreement, but they didn't notice a white bird perched quietly on a distant treetop, watching their every move. Meanwhile, the system notification window popped up with a message, "Clash of Civilizations. The cultivation level of turquoise astacidines is the Bronze Age. This suggests that it's unlikely that there is a player controlling them." Nebula recognized that the ship technology was quite advanced. If those shiny pearls could be traded across the continent, they would sell for a high price. But for Nebula, more valuable than the pearls was the shipbuilding technology. If we master this technology, we can start maritime trade, which will be a huge opportunity. Given the current level of their civilization, it is highly likely that the turquoise astacidines will become a subordinate nation to the Black Scale tribe in the future. At that point, it would be possible to start mining the silver deposits on their islands, which are a crucial basis for currency. Just as Nebula was deep in thought, a voice interrupted him. It was Hongo, a creation of Nebula. Hongo was created to manage the swarm of locusts, and Nebula had made it clear not to contact him unless it was something special. However, the situation now seems too significant to ignore. The true nature of the locusts has been exposed to other deities, and some of their nests have been destroyed. Nebula opened the window to check and found that indeed a few of his insect colonies had been reduced. Originally, Nebula had commanded Hongo Hongo to lead the locusts to stealthily infiltrate other tribes and consume their food to hinder the player's development. Experienced players quickly noticed these movements, realizing it was intentional interference. Despite this, Nebula appeared very calm. "Don't worry, this is all within my expectations." Hongo felt a wave of relief but still seemed somewhat tense. Nebula asked with concern, "How are you doing? If I lost you too, I'd be at a loss." Hearing this, Hongo quickly scratched its head and replied, "Although a few nests were destroyed, I managed to hide before they discovered me." "Good. Now, use the remaining locust swarms to disrupt the enemy. Survival is the priority. Stay hidden." Hongo bowed deeply to Nebula, then quickly exited the scene. Nebula then turned off the video. He did not want to have too much interaction with his creations. Unlike the AI of Lost World, these creations have their own souls and thoughts. Nebula then checked the battle results of the insect swarm. 5 players have been affected. If they discover that someone is behind this, they will definitely unite against me. He noticed that 2 tribes have already formed an alliance, while the other 3 players are still observing. "I thought it would be a 1 against 5 situation, but it seems things are still under my control." On the other side, the leaders of the Leaner and Satiros tribes are conspiring on how to deal with the locust swarm. They have learned that the locust swarm is controlled by the Lizardman tribe, which has also taken control of Automation's trade. Although the location of the Black Scale tribe is close to them, both leaders do not want the other 3 tribes to step into their territory. The prophecy of the 5 deities tells us that our 2 tribes together can definitely eliminate the Lizardman tribe. If so, how should we proceed with the attack? The southern coastline is filled with swarms of insects, making it impassable. Another route is through Automation, but it is also controlled by the Lizardmen. Then let's take Automation back from the Lizardmen. If so, then even if it takes us a while, we'll take our forces through the northern wilds. A month later, they mobilized their armies toward Automation. The 2 tribes assembled 800 Satiros warriors and 1,100 Leaner warriors. This expeditionary force of nearly 2,000 became the largest army on the 3rd continent. The 2 players watched all this silently from above. The deity worshipped by the Satiros tribe, Krampus, a player ranked 1,430th, appeared somewhat nervous, asking another player, "How do you plan to supply the army?" The one who answered him was a woman who appeared quite unremarkable. She had long hair and wore a white off-shoulder dress. If she wasn't floating in the air, she would almost look like an ordinary human woman. "I'll have them plunder NPC villages along the way, and once they enter deep into the wilderness, they will bypass the northern coast." In contrast, Runda, a player from the Leaner tribe, ranked 38,702 in the player rankings of Lost World, was still frustrated. "I still can't contact Nebula." Previously, she had been trying to contact Nebula, but a month had passed, and Nebula still had her and others blacklisted. "If we could have contacted him, we would have been fine with just being compensated for the damages up until now." He also blatantly increased his military training and scouting parties. "It's too late for negotiations now. An army of 1,900 is enough to take him down. His defeat is only a matter of time." At that moment, Krampus noticed the mole on Runda's face, a feature that didn't necessarily have to be there. He wondered if her avatar resembled her real-life appearance. Just then, Runda received a whisper request. It was from the player Eldar. "Our joint forces will definitely encounter members of the elf tribe along the way. Perhaps she wants to negotiate, or she has other plans. Eldar's alliance with Nebula is a loose relationship. We could try to persuade her to betray Nebula. Maybe this conversation will create a rift between them." Runda immediately clicked the accept button. A character resembling an elf with petal effects appeared on the screen. "I am the god of the elves, Eldar." This left Runda momentarily dumbfounded, and she stammered, "Hello." Eldar's tone carried a hint of pity. "I need help." Neither of them expected that Eldar was a player fully immersed in role-playing. "What kind of help were you referring to?" Eldar quietly squeezed out a tear. "I had to submit under Nebula's oppression, but I couldn't do anything. He defeated players like Solonos and Lim Chunsik." Hearing this, Runda was shocked. "You didn't help him defeat them? Don't you know Nebula's ranking in Lost World? He has always been firmly in the first place." This left both of them shocked. They had originally thought that Nebula's name was just a coincidence with that player, but now they realized that the first and second placers were actually on the same continent. "Anyway, I've been groveling to stay alive until now, so please allow me to help you." Runda paused for a moment and then communicated, "If we are to trust you, we need information on Nebula. To gain your trust, I'm willing to provide everything you need." Eldar waved his hand, and all information about Nebula appeared. He also played the sympathy card. "You don't know how badly I've been treated under Nebula." Upon seeing the information provided by Eldar, both were shocked. "Nebula has taken too much from you." Eldar took the opportunity to say, "So I want you to help me defeat Nebula. Although I don't have an army to support, I know what Nebula is planning for this battle." Having relayed all the details, Eldar ended the whisper and glanced at the figure beside her. "Is that good enough, Nebula?" Unbeknownst to Runda and Krampus, accepting Eldar's whisper request had already led them into Nebula's trap. "Your acting is really good. Is it because you've been playing roles before?" Eldar could only laugh awkwardly. "More than that, it is because the information she provided was so convincing." As instructed by Nebula, she told them that Nebula will launch a preemptive attack. Looking at the unconcerned Nebula, Eldar was worried, but won't that not be enough to change the situation? Why do you think so? If the Leaner tribe decides to retreat and the Satyros tribe attacks automation, then the Black Scale tribe will be caught between them. Nebula directly dismissed her conjecture. I will end the war with the Leaner tribe ahead of schedule. Eldar looked bewildered, already unable to guess Nebula's plan. Do you still need my help? Nebula smiled slightly. Of course. Meanwhile, the Leaner tribe suddenly received bad news. Many soldiers suddenly got food poisoning. This made Hattie very angry, and he immediately drew his sword, but was stopped by the deputy commander, Yubei. Until yesterday, there was no problem with the food. The issue started with the food supplied by the elves this morning. They look fresh on the surface, but they might contain poison. Yubei quickly guessed that this might be a tactic of the blue insect god. It's rumored that the blue insect god excels at controlling insects, and the elves and lizardmen are allies. At the same time, a subordinate rushed in, interrupting them, as a large army of lizardmen was spotted ahead, with at least 1,000 or more. This left Hattie conflicted, as too many soldiers were sick to fight, with only 900 able to battle. Even with equal numbers, their size puts them at a disadvantage. Now, outnumbered as well, defeat is certain, so Hattie immediately ordered a retreat, deciding to lead the troops into a nearby forest to use the terrain for guerrilla warfare. The massive Leaner army changed direction, Hattie only hoping that the Satyros tribe would attack automation soon, which would make the Lizardmen go back for support. However, just then, a dark figure suddenly blocked their path. A giant mantis had already ambushed them on their essential route. Dare to step into the territory of the blue insect god, and you shall be punished. The sudden appearance of the giant creature panicked the Leaner soldiers. The next moment, huge rocks fell from the sky. Seeing this, Hattie quickly signaled his soldiers to abandon their supplies and retreat, but Yubei stopped him. No, we need to defeat that monster. Yubei, that's not just any monster. It's definitely the guardian of the Lizardmen. We can't defeat it. Then, a fast-moving figure approached. A giant rat suddenly appeared in front of the Leaner soldiers. This was the guardian beast Runda had sent to the Leaner tribe. Seeing this scene from a distance, Runda's face changed instantly, especially when she saw the mantis guardian, Shradis. She was restless because Shradis's attributes were far beyond her expectations. Her own summon could not possibly defeat it. She had thought everything would go smoothly as before, but now hesitated. Should she run? But she knew well, if she fled now and Shradis regained his senses and attacked back, they would undoubtedly lose. So, she decided to take a gamble. Although Shradis's level was high, its divinity level was only level 4. Together with Niji, our divinity levels add up to 12, and we still have a chance to win. The next moment, a powerful energy entered Yubei's body. Hattie realized that their god had descended. Yubei ordered all troops to retreat, as she was going to face this colossal creature alone. Niji tried to persuade her master to leave, but Runda did not want to lose her summoned creature. You have no divine intermediary. It seems your god doesn't value you much. Shradis didn't heed her, merely responding coldly. I'm just here to complete a task. As Niji and Shradis were fighting, Yubei took the opportunity to get under Shradis's feet, hugging his thigh tightly. With divine power, she forcefully tore off one of Shradis's legs. Despite the extreme pain, Shradis didn't stop, instead delivering a heavy punch to Niji. You damn insect, to endure such pain for my god, shouldn't it be considered a blessing? Hearing this, Yubei realized this guy was simply a fanatic. Just as she thought she could defeat Shradis within 10 minutes, a figure as quick as lightning was rapidly approaching the battlefield. Rakrak, carrying the 12th level divine power added by Nebula, stepped into the battlefield. With a roar, Rakrak leapt up, his spear already aimed at Yubei. Found you. The spear tore through the air, directly aiming at Yubei. Yubei tried to dodge, but still felt a strong oppressive force. She was still hit by the spear in the arm, and blood immediately spurted. Seeing her master wounded, Niji immediately lunged at Rakrak. However, a sharp claw quickly extended, firmly locking Niji's movements. With a forceful swing, Shradis flung Niji several meters, crashing heavily to the ground. Subsequently, Rakrak summoned Buzz to lend his power, intending to completely resolve this troublesome little mouse. Rakrak pointed towards Niji, and Buzz quickly gathered all his power. A bolt of lightning suddenly split the sky, striking directly at Niji. The current passed through its body, causing it to be immobilized, blood leaking from the corner of its mouth, yet it still stubbornly muttered, "Even if you are a god, you can't stop me." Before the words fell, another stronger bolt of lightning flashed again, instantly illuminating the surroundings. When the light faded, Niji had been burned to a crisp, completely losing its combat capability. Seeing this, Runda was furiously enraged and wanted to curse aloud, but her words were choked back. She realized that although divine possession enhanced her physical responsiveness, it came with fatal risks. Runda hurriedly tried to cancel the divine descent, but found there was still a 10-second cooldown. She was forced to make a life or death decision. If she died while in the state of divine descent, she would suffer additional penalties. Runda was known to her race as the Supreme Fruition God, which was the first domain she acquired. Quickly, she found a fruit in the nearby bushes and ate it. The power of the fruit began to work, healing her wounds at a visibly fast pace. However, just as she thought to use the fruit's healing power to buy time, a swarm of locusts suddenly appeared, completely blocking her escape route. These insects beasts did not attack her directly but formed a barrier with their bodies, completely blocking her view. Just then, Stratus's scythe aimed precisely at Runda's position, but she was already alert, determined internally. All I need to do is dodge its attack. Yubei's body quickly leapt in the opposite direction of Stratus, but in the next instant, a powerful hand brutally grasped her throat. "So you're here," Rakrak taunted in a low voice. Yubei struggled desperately, staring at the countdown which had only 1 second left. She clenched her teeth and roared internally, "Damn it, hurry up and end." However, her hope dissipated into thin air. Time was no longer on her side. Blood poured from her neck, drenching the battlefield, staining the ground red. This outcome was hard for the confident Runda to accept. She witnessed her own creation, Niji, die miserably, and now even Yubei could not escape her fate. The Leaner's army was reduced from 1,100 to 215, completely breaking their morale. Yet the worst was yet to come. Runda found that her divinity level had dropped from 9 to 5. Had she cancelled the divine descent earlier, it would have dropped only to 7. This irreparable loss left her heart sinking into despair as the battlefield smoke lingered. At the same time, Krampus made a call. Learning that Runda had lost the battle, he inquired about her current divinity level with concern. Runda hesitated, then answered, 7. This response shocked Krampus, his tone clearly uneasy. By this time, Runda was already sweating profusely. If he knew the actual situation, he might be even more panicked. She was well aware that a drop in divinity level would not only lead to a decrease in faith points, but could also directly affect the yield of her orchard, potentially destroying it entirely. Under such circumstances, the Leaner tribe might lose faith in her. Even worse, Krampus might change his attitude towards her. To avoid these consequences, Runda decided to hide the truth. She changed the subject, asking, "Is the Satyros tribe on their way to attack?" "Yes, they'll reach automation in 2.5 days. The city's defenses are weak now, a perfect opportunity to capture it." Runda pretended to be calm and responded, "So I just need to divert the Lizardmen's attention for 2.5 days, right?" Krampus affirmed this. However, at this moment, Runda was struggling internally. Should she tell him the truth? She knew her forces could not delay the Black Scale tribe's soldiers, but she was unwilling to admit defeat and chose to conceal the truth. "I can't be the only one who gets defeated." The next day, Krampus contacted Runda again, his tone tinged with unease. "I heard the Lizardmen forces are coming down this way. I thought you were going to keep them busy." Runda immediately understood the true situation but still chose to lie, calmly responding, "It might be that the information from Eldar was inaccurate, causing them to encounter the Lizardmen's army prematurely. I originally thought the battle would occur in Black Scale Continent, but it started in my territory instead. And now, the Lizardmen are closing in on the Satyros tribe's territory." Krampus furrowed his brows, beginning to sense something was amiss. The Satyros tribe's border doesn't have any defensive fortresses, which doesn't make sense. This means they can't stop the Lizardmen's cavalry, so now they must retreat to the capital. However, Runda had already foreseen what would happen at the Satyros tribe's capital. The Satyros tribe's 800-strong army, facing 1,700 Lizardmen and the formidable Stratus, were bound to lose the battle. At this moment, Runda was already considering new allies. That guy Wisdom, he should be a good choice. Krampus was unaware of Runda's thoughts and suggested she provide some support. This made Runda panic internally, quickly making up excuses to brush it off. She rubbed her forehead, trying not to show any signs of distress. If she didn't help Krampus immediately, it would look very suspicious. Damn it, at this rate, he's definitely going to find out. The next thing Krampus said made Runda even more anxious. He proposed that Runda send cavalry to support his attack on automation. "You said the enemy lost 400 men, now they have about 1,300. So, 300 of my Satyros, along with 800 of your Lenars, should be enough to match the Lizardmen. Plus, you said you killed Nebula's creation, so the fortress's defenses should be secure." Runda didn't speak, only using a smile to mask her emotions. "Damn, I've told too many lies. If the lies are exposed, my alliance with Krampus will be over." Just then, Krampus suddenly exclaimed, startling Runda. "It's a whisper request from Nebula." Runda quickly intervened. "Don't answer it." But it was too late. Nebula's figure appeared in front of them. "So, have you started considering surrendering now?" Krampus was taken aback, thinking Nebula was just being arrogant. Seeing Krampus's reaction made Nebula puzzled. Then he glanced towards Runda. He quickly guessed Runda's intention. She lied to protect herself, downplaying the extent of her losses, so she has been hiding the truth from her own allies. If that's the case, it makes things more interesting for me. Facing Nebula's attitude, Krampus was very angry. "Why have you been blocking our whispers? Why decide to contact us now all of a sudden?" Nebula felt sorry about this and said lightly, "Because I have my reasons." Regarding Nebula's suggestion for surrender, Krampus directly refused. However, Nebula didn't mind because all this was within his expectations. After Nebula hung up the video call, Runda was already sweating profusely, her heart pounding. But the worst outcome she had feared didn't occur, so she could only laugh and soothe the angry Krampus. Then, she changed the subject. "I want to check on my troops. I'll contact you later." Then she ended the whisper. Runda immediately requested a whisper with Nebula, but received no response. At this moment, Nebula was calculating his gains, completely ignoring Runda's whisper request. Nebula intentionally occasionally left Runda hanging for a while. However, Runda's thick-skinned nature indeed exceeded his expectations. Looking at the messages she sent, Nebula finally decided to accept the request. When the video connected, Runda jumped out and yelled, "You piece of shit. What do you really want? What's there to be angry about? I should be the one upset about being suddenly attacked." Runda was very dissatisfied with this and countered, "You haven't suffered any losses, have you? But being almost attacked is still very upsetting. If you called just to argue, then I'm hanging up. Goodbye." Then, he directly ended the call. This left Runda dumbfounded and fuming, and she immediately initiated another whisper request. "What now? I'm not your friend, so don't treat me like that. What is it that you want? Can you ask me calmly instead of crying?" Feeling almost explosive, Runda struggled to suppress the urge to scream and continued, "Why did you end the call when Krampus didn't surrender? I originally planned to end all this by having him surrender, but now, I think it would be better to destroy these two nations and conquer all their land. Although this will require some effort on my part." Runda immediately pointed out the flaw in his plan. "You can't protect your own borders, because with your current population and level of development, it's just not sustainable." But such problems were obvious to Nebula. He calmly responded, "I can take over the land of the Satiros tribe and give the leaner tribe's land to the other 3 players. They would be happy to reap the benefits. But what if I and Krampus start a rebellion? Other players might take advantage of the chaos to attack you." Nebula's expression suddenly became serious. "I think you're misunderstanding something. When did I ever say that I'd leave you and Krampus alive?" This statement drastically changed Runda's complexion. From then on, Nebula's ruthless image was deeply engraved in her mind. Combining this with her past experiences, she realized that Nebula would indeed eliminate them from the game without hesitation. But she also knew that Nebula didn't just have this one option. Runda suppressed her temper and asked, "So, let's get back to the first question. What exactly do you want?" "Information about the leaner tribe and Krampus, as well as information on the trolls. I can talk about Krampus, but wisdom is not my ally." "I think you misunderstood me. I want you to ally with wisdom to obtain information. How you do it is irrelevant to me." Runda's expression turned even uglier, and her view of Nebula was updated once again. "You want me to be a double agent? To approach wisdom and Krampus to dig for information?" She pounded the window with her fist, furiously saying, "Stop joking. Do you think you're superior just because you won once?" Nebula extended a finger towards Runda's face and said coldly, "Your lies are the problem. I don't need to do anything else. I only need to tell Krampus the truth about our fight and warn wisdom not to ally with you because you're a liar. You will be isolated by your 4 allies. Then, how will a level 5 deity stand in the center of the continent?" At that moment, Runda was furious, but helpless. Then, she ended the whisper and started thinking about her next plan. "Let me think. There must be a way. There must be." Soon, Runda arrived at the capital of the leaner tribe, Minan. Located far from the border, the Lenars felt no fear of the impending war. Meanwhile, a leaner person was praying. This wasn't a prayer about war, but a thanksgiving to their god for allowing him, a carpenter, to safely complete his work for the day. As the prayer ended, Runda's faith points increased by 1. She closed her eyes and pondered for a moment. Damn it. Eventually, Runda requested another whisper with Nebula. "I accept your proposal." Nebula revealed a smile. "Then, let me first hear the information about the leaner tribe and Krampus." After the war with the allied tribes ended, Krampus seemed to struggle with accepting Nebula's proposal, but under Runda's persuasion, he had to compromise. Runda had driven herself to this point. No matter the cost, she had to prevent the truth about this battle from being revealed. Meanwhile, this multinational war unexpectedly spurred rapid commercial development. Thus, Wirae invited representatives from various merchants across the Black-Scale Nation to attend this gathering and took the opportunity to establish a commercial alliance. However, the biggest challenge was the issue of trust. Every merchant came from a different tribe, and they worshipped different gods, which clearly wasn't conducive to the development of the commerce alliance. Although we can't change our species' differences, beliefs can be changed. The troll was curious about how Wirae would resolve the disputes over gods. Then, Wirae pulled out a die. "Isn't it more convincing to decide this way?" Meanwhile, a notification box popped up. Through Wirae's leadership, the Merchant Alliance, the 5th wheel, has been created. Nebula watched everything happening in the Merchant Alliance through the window. "I didn't expect Wirae to use her demonic probability control to roll the highest number. That's quite shameless. According to the current situation, the national borders will not change significantly in the short term. Next, it will be a war of the business era. Before that, I also need to make preparations for what comes next." After this period of development, the civilizations of various players in Lost World have gradually evolved. During this phase, beyond meeting basic needs, various items promoting the development of civilization have also emerged. At this moment, Rakrak is holding a piece of thin paper, a trophy obtained from the routed leaner soldiers not long ago. The Black-Scale tribe's craftsmen developed new technology based on this paper. Jael suggested using it instead of silk, as paper is cheaper and more practical. Rakrak immediately inquired about the difficulty of production. Jael, swaying his tail quietly, answered, "We have water wheels that save a lot of time, and the paper can also promote the spread of writing." Rakrak, looking at the paper in front of him, fell into thought. If the paper wears out, the text can be copied copied onto another sheet. But if the original record is completely damaged, it cannot be restored, and paper has its limitations. Then, Rakrak glanced at Jael. I have brave warriors in the protection of our god, able to fight and defeat any enemy. If the enemy attacks in 2 groups like before, we can just manage. But what if there are 3 or 4 groups of enemies? Neither you, I, nor the gods could be everywhere at once. Rakrak picked up a piece of charcoal and drew a line on the paper. This is the barrier I plan to build. Jael carefully examined the defensive line and after a moment of thought said, but constructing such a long barrier would take a long time. We don't have mud soldiers like in automation, and considering the problem of materials, it might take 100 years to build. I thought it might take 200 years. However, Rakrak was not planning to give up this idea. He quickly thought of combining geographical advantages such as swamps, rivers, and other natural barriers. Jael, after some calculations, replied, in that case, it should only take 70 to 80 years to complete. Although both of Rakrak's ideas were dismissed by Jael, he did not give up. The purpose of the barrier is to delay the enemy's invasion. But what if we think the opposite? Not delaying the enemy, but assembling our troops faster? He then drew several fortress-like patterns on the paper: fire and smoke. One of the 5 must always have a fire lit. It means peace. 2 means that an enemy has been discovered. 3 means said enemy is heading this way. 4 means that the beacon has been intruded. 5 means that a battle has begun. Jael expressed approval after hearing this. To make the beacon towers more conspicuous, Rakrak decided to build them on mountain ridges. After drawing, the beacon towers formed a defensive line. He asked Jael again, how long will it take to complete this? After a moment of thought, Jael answered, it can be completed within 5 years. 3 years later, the royal palace of the Black Scale Kingdom was beginning to take shape. Those residents whose houses had been built started to retrofit their floors to replicate the palace's heating system. For the Lizardmen, overcoming the cold is of utmost importance. At this moment, Rakrak sat alone on the throne in the hall, pondering recent changes. The development of the Black Scale Kingdom had been smooth, facing not too many troubles. But he knew well that maintaining a nation was harder than establishing one. It was not only necessary to guard against foreign enemies, but also to keep tight unity internally. Species other than humans harbored deep fears towards lizardmen, and this fear was not wholly beneficial for ruling a nation. Isn't there a way to unite everyone's hearts? Isn't living on the same land enough? Just then, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Yes, though they live on the same land, they are not living in the same time. Seeing the lizard man in front of him, Rakrak stood up happily. Stargazer, weren't you already dead? Rakrak was very surprised and had many questions to ask him. However, Stargazer only raised his index finger to his lips, signaling him to be quiet, and indicated not to ask further. Rakrak understood that many secrets might be involved here, so he remained silent. What do you mean that we're not living in the same time? Stargazer didn't answer, but glanced outside through the door. Rakrak followed Stargazer out. It was a night dotted with stars. Do you see the same shape of stars whether you stand in Maganen, across the wilderness, on Leaner, or Satiros people's land? Rakrak gazed at the sky, realizing for the first time that every piece of sky looks different. The shape of the sky is the same, but everyone has their own time. But that's not enough, especially for you. As a king, you need to live in everyone's time. Rakrak pondered. Under Stargazer's hints, Rakrak gradually understood his meaning. That is to let everyone use unified time. However, Rakrak felt this plan was difficult to implement because other species harbored hostility towards the Lizardmen. Stargazer smiled, pointing at the stars in the sky. That's why I came back here. He pointed to the brightest star and said, the brightest one there is you. Then, he used his hand to connect the nearby stars in a line, symbolizing Rakrak's existence. Rakrak asked in confusion, what about those stars moving toward me? Stargazer compared them to Owen. It pauses briefly, then continues to spread new stories for you. After hearing Stargazer's explanation, Rakrak found it very interesting. He was amazed that Stargazer could mention names relevant to them. After a while, Stargazer said, I need to leave now. I have been here long enough. I can feel our god calling me. However, Rakrak still had many questions he wanted to discuss with him. Aren't you curious how many kids I have? That's the business of the living. Then what about the afterlife? Can you tell me about it? That's the business of the dead. After saying this, his figure ascended into the sky, surrounded by a dazzling swarm of butterflies, and disappeared under the starry sky, along with the phantom of the blue insect god. Seeing this, Rakrak devoutly saluted the void in respect. Just then, a voice called his name, pulling him back as he opened his eyes. A servant stood beside him and said, it's time for the meeting. Your vassals have arrived. The morning sun shone through the cracks of the window, and Rakrak immediately ordered his servant to bring a large enough piece of paper and some charcoal. I want to depict the knowledge Stargazer brought. Meanwhile, an information window appeared in front of Nebula, indicating Third Continent Green Cidiac. The first calendar, the hunting star calendar, has been created. Seeing this information, Nebula was very pleased. He had been thinking about establishing a calendar since discovering Stargazer and didn't expect it to be realized so quickly. However, every time Stargazer spoke, Nebula's heart bled. The faith points are dropping like a waterfall, but having achieved this so quickly, Nebula also acknowledged Runda's contribution. Since his Leaner tribe also supported the calendar, Rhonda nodded with a frown. Seeing this, Nebula encouraged her to cheer up. After all, this is the first calendar in the Lost World. Rhonda sighed helplessly. I just told one lie, and now I'm almost becoming your vassal. Regaining his composure, Nebula asked Rhonda what she needed. Rhonda's originally angry expression instantly became calm and serious. It seems a new force has emerged in the center of the continent. Nebula was puzzled. How can a new force emerge out of nowhere? I think it's another player. Her reasoning was based on a clash of civilization notifications she received. Two divided tribes have come into contact. Both tribes will experience a great increase in EXP. Warning: the opposing tribe possesses faith. Nebula fell into thought. This seems very unreasonable. It's impossible for a new player to appear in the center of the continent now. The game has been going for 22 years. A player who hasn't made any moves until now suddenly appeared. Rhonda and others tried to communicate with this new player but were rejected. After a moment of contemplation, Nebula became skeptical of Rhonda's news. Where did you get this fake news from? Rhonda then sent him the information she had about the new player. You got the info I shared, right? This is from player AR-1026, whose main species is Nixon and has formed a loose alliance with me. She also sent this message to Krampus in Wisdom. Nebula looked at the information and felt it was highly improbable. He then asked, what's the new player's name? Rhonda said her name was strange, as if randomly typed out. The first is the Hanja Jeol. We took the next two characters to call this player Jeol Wooby. Nebula originally thought this might be a player seeking an unusual username or just a system error, but what followed was truly baffling. The appearance of vampires in the world. He had played this game for so long and had never heard of a vampire race. With this, Nebula had to consider a possibility he didn't like: the existence of DLC. Strictly speaking, the Lost World they had previously played was not exactly the same as the current game. The key difference was the lack of graphical options. The options window was empty, with no configurable content items available. After listening to Nebula's explanation, Rhonda agreed. At this moment, Nebula suggested that a few others go ahead to scout because those vampires looked somewhat dangerous. Although the vampires seemed like a weakened version of zombies, they retained their own consciousness. Rhonda resisted a bit after hearing this. Currently, 5 of us have already split into 3 factions, and I really can't bring myself to approach AR. After all, she's an enemy to me. That's true. Okay, let's see each other again later. This left Rhonda puzzled. By then, after Rhonda left, Nebula continued to study the information before him. This is abnormal. Meanwhile, atop the mountain, 5 players opened their communication windows in sequence, clearly gathered together to discuss and decide on the sudden changes. They were discussing whether to invite Nebula. The man wearing a lion mask expressed his confusion. Do we really need Nebula's help? At that moment, a woman dressed in Rococo-style attire with a bridal veil spoke. After all, we can't invite Hegemonia because Hegemonia would use aid as a pretext to send troops. Next to the woman, the demon Krampus interrupted their conversation. In my view, Nebula and Hegemonia are the same kind of people, but Rhonda compared them and said, Nebula is somewhat easier to communicate with than Hegemonia. Well, if that's what you think. Meanwhile, a man with a star-shaped head reminded the group, we're in contact. The next instant, Nebula's window appeared before them. Everyone is looking for me. Didn't expect I'd be this popular. Hearing this, other players displayed annoyed expressions, because most of them had been disrupted by Nebula's insect army at one time or another, particularly Rhonda and Krampus, who suffered significant losses. Wisdom, whose face remained expressionless, spoke first. You should know why we've called you. Nebula then put on an act of feigning ignorance. I have a feeling, but it's not like predictions are always right. Seeing this, Rhonda clenched her fists. She had already told Nebula all the information before this meeting. This guy really has no shame. Wisdom got straight to the point. A player we call Jeol Wooby has appeared with a race of vampires. Moreover, the vampires that only appeared in the GoldenEye Nation are now widespread across our 5 nations, forming a powerful force. Yes, I'm aware. Now that everyone was aware of the situation, Wisdom directly asked Nebula, are you willing to help us? Why should I help you? Nebula's response brought the meeting of the 5 players to a stalemate. At that moment, Rhonda was fuming internally. This bastard, here he goes again. Our food supply is unstable because locusts have attacked the fertile lands across the continent. We know you're the mastermind behind the locust swarm. Nebula boldly admitted to this, but the war that Rhonda and Krampus waged against me, hasn't that already ended? Seong-woon couldn't sit still any longer, interrupting the conversation. It wasn't even a proper war. Have you ever thought that we were going easy on you? Nebula saw Seong-woon's discontent but remained indifferent. My point still stands. If you're pissed, come at me. Wisdom immediately told Seong-woon to calm down. Nebula is intentionally being arrogant. Don't get worked up. Is that really the case? If we're lucky, maybe we can drive away Jeol Wooby's vampires on our own. But if we're unlucky, the vampires could develop into a bigger force. If it comes to that, we won't be able to negotiate for help. That's why we have to invite Nebula to join us. After hearing this, Nebula unreservedly affirmed his point of view. Indeed, but I could also just watch you slowly get destroyed. So, why should I help you? If our cooperation breaks down, it could become troublesome for you too, because dealing with one united person is harder than dealing with 5 fragmented individuals. Nebula looked at Wisdom Wisdom without saying a word. Although he didn't remember the other players, he had a distinct memory of the ID Wisdom, who had been in the top 10 for several months during his peak. Thus, Nebula was aware that the gap in their capabilities wasn't very big, similar to his gap with Hegemonia. Nebula sighed helplessly. That's just your thinking. For me, dealing with one person is easy. So you mean you have no reason to help us? Are you saying you can't help us? That's not it. If I do help you, I need to receive the appropriate reward for it. What do you want? Nebula bluntly stated. I need 3 candle craftsmen, 3 glass craftsmen, 3 brick craftsmen, and 12 wagons of gold. Hearing this request, everyone was shocked. Such demands were indeed excessive. But Nebula did not back down. As I said before, if you're pissed, come at me. Helplessly, Wisdom asked Nebula to give them a few minutes to discuss. Then, Nebula's call was disconnected. Wisdom was a smart man. He knew how to persuade others. Sure enough, just 2.5 minutes later, they re-invited Nebula to the call and agreed to his terms, although they needed a few days to prepare. At that moment, Wisdom curiously asked, "What's your plan to defeat Jill-Wooby and the vampires? You must have some plan in mind for you to have mentioned being rewarded." Nebula, resting his chin in his hand and staring at the screen, said, "In mind? You're wrong. I've already started it." Months earlier, the Nixon were ravaged by the Knoll tribe. Some dark elves survived, but the Juman tribe's chiefess, Shaven's mother, was sacrificed. Her mother fought her life on the line and passed away, and the invisible root god chose another chief from a new family as a result of Shaven's family weakening. Now the new chief is trying to chase and kill them. Shaven felt ashamed before her mother and harbored resentment towards their god. She didn't know what her anger meant. Just then, a mysterious figure suddenly appeared before her. Shaven instinctively thought it was an assassin sent for her. Following this, the mysterious person threw something in front of her. To Shaven, who had been starving for days, these appeared like steaming bread and clean water. She began to devour them without hesitation. Shaven expressed that she was willing to do anything the stranger asked. Meanwhile, the mysterious person drew a sword from his waist and threw it on the ground. Shaven tried to resist, but her hands trembled uncontrollably as they reached for the sword. Realizing what was happening, Shaven understood that a new god had chosen her. "I will do as you wish, blood and rotten meat god." Just then, a notification appeared. The blood and rotten meat god has chosen Chief Shaven. The first vampire has been born. Meanwhile, Nebula was looking at the vampires. With just 6 months of development, the vampires had amassed an army of 6,000, 4,000 of whom were combat ready. The first to suffer was player AR-1026, whose nation, Juman, lost its capital, and she was killed while possessing a creation. Nebula guessed her divinity level might now be only 4. If someone had helped AR-1026 eliminate the vampires when their forces were still small, perhaps things would have been different. It was only when other players realized the situation was uncontrollable that they decided to seek help from Nebula. Although it was late, they could still resist for some time. The vampire nation called White Fang, located in the center of the 5 players, mainly consisted of unmanaged weak groups. Their goal was clear: to seek revenge on the gods who had abandoned them, and these gods were the players before them. Hearing this, the players showed embarrassed expressions, but these problems were their own making and had nothing to do with Nebula. All Nebula needed to do was to tell them the 3 weaknesses of the vampires. Krampus was puzzled. Aren't there only 2? It was well known that vampires' weaknesses were sunlight and silver. Rhonda nodded in agreement, but Krampus quickly thought of a 3rd weakness: vampires would gradually weaken with each generation. Nebula confirmed this, explaining that this was both a weakness and an advantage for the vampires. High-ranking vampires indeed had superior physical qualities, but their reactions to sunlight and silver were also much more intense. As generations passed, vampires' physical abilities would weaken, and some vampires became completely immune to sunlight and silver, but at the cost of their strength becoming ever weaker. At this moment, Wisdom didn't understand the meaning of Nebula's earlier words. Nebula had mentioned that he already started, but Wisdom, after observing, noticed that nothing recent had happened in the Black Scale Nation. "I'm not the one who moved but them. The White Fang has started." The players were stunned. They clearly hadn't fully grasped Nebula's line of thinking. Nebula, unwilling to play riddles any longer, lightly clicked on the screen, displaying a map magnified in front of everyone. This is the vampires' 3rd weakness. They had divided their forces into 4 directions, deploying 1,000 men each. Immediately, Nebula divided the map into 4 parts for everyone to see. Rhonda was puzzled, as the content of these 4 maps was exactly the same. Nebula reminded her to pay attention to the dates. These are maps from 4 different periods. This means that the 4 vampire armies haven't moved for a long time. Maybe they are stopping to regroup. Would 4 armies rest at the same time? He further explained that vampire armies usually only pause briefly when pillaging villages, but these forces haven't moved since they last replenished their food supplies. Wisdom raised a question: how can you be sure they stopped for no other purpose? Nebula tapped his mask and said slowly, "It's simple. You were wrong from the start by treating vampires as zombies. There is a crucial difference between vampires and zombies. That is, they still possess consciousness. Vampire society is divided into upper, middle, and lower classes, and some individuals are forcibly transformed into vampires. Every vampire must obey their superior superiors, but this obedience weakens as the hierarchical gap increases. Although others still looked puzzled, Wisdom seemed to understand Nebula's point. That means they lack justification. The core of vampire unity is their inherent obedience. Initially, to obey or to survive, they must harm others. To live, they had no choice. But with the establishment of the vampire nation White Fang, this dynamic changed. The environment in White Fang allows them to continue living even without harming anyone. They no longer have any justification to fight and only have vague subservience left. This means that some of the generals don't want to face losses. It's as you say, some people start daydreaming once they are full. Thus, other vampire generals learn to watch and wait, observing each other, waiting for someone else to make the first move. Meanwhile, Juenro was personally transformed into a vampire by Shaven. During the attack on the capital, he was fortunate to become a vessel for divine possession. Thus, Juenro became Shaven's most trusted general. At this moment, he was puzzled as he looked at the map, noticing that the other vampire generals had stopped moving. Just then, he sensed a disturbance outside the door. The next instant, a ray of sunlight suddenly shot in from behind the door. Fortunately, Juenra quickly blocked the attack with his hand. Then, he forcefully threw a dagger, hitting the Satiros woman outside accurately, killing her instantly. When he looked down and saw the mirror on the ground, he realized that the sunlight had been reflected in. Following that, a man fully wrapped up entered. He was Seong-woon. Their relationship was like that of a general and his deputy. Juenra immediately shared his confusion with Seong-woon, who seemed to have already anticipated Juenra's perplexity. Not everyone will follow the will of the blood and rotten meat god. That's obvious. This Satiros was a follower of the life-proving god. However, Seong-woon seemed reluctant to delve deeper. He slowly shared his view. Some among the vampires do not believe in the blood and rotten meat god. Juenra responded angrily, but it was the blood and rotten meat god who helped us in our most difficult times. Not everyone wants to become a vampire. Although the vampire queen carefully chose the first generation of vampire generals, the selection might not have been as careful from the second generation onwards. Perhaps their choice not to attack is to conserve strength, preparing for future plans. Juenra's expression was complex. Clearly, this answer was hard for him to accept. After White Fang was founded, we must fight the other generals in order to conquer even better lands. To do that, we need to maintain new forces. That's why they don't want to advance first and face losses. Hearing this from Seong-woon, Juenra suddenly had an epiphany. Then, he decided to launch an attack after sunset, as he wanted to prove to the vampire queen that there were exceptional generals. As Nebula had predicted, among the vampire generals, only one would obey the vampire queen without question. If they act now, won't that weakness become useless? By understanding vampire behavior, we can predict their next moves. For example, we can set traps that make them think they have an excuse not to proceed. If we use this method to delay the vampire's supplies, their army will quickly collapse. If vampires cannot get supplies everywhere, their army will disintegrate. Thank you, Starhead, for explaining so much to us. Wisdom corrected somewhat irritably. This isn't a star. Nebula looked puzzled. Then what is it? This is the great dodecahedron of the Kepler-Poinsot polyhedra. Hearing this, Nebula was silent for a moment, then apologetically said, "Sorry, I'll be more careful next time." He secretly decided never to mention Wisdom's head again. Then, are you going to create social division so the army of vampires are broken up? The method is effective, but slow, and as their army dissolves, the damage spreads. So, instead, I'll regroup them. Seong-woon tilted his head curiously. Unify them? How? Nebula confidently answered, using myself as bait. Some guys are confident they can handle everything, then I'll give them a big slap in the face. Meanwhile, Juenra suddenly wakes up from his sleep because the soldiers report an enemy attack. He initially thought it was the Satiros' army, but found it was actually the Lizardmen. Just as the sun was about to set, the army of Lizardmen had already reached the vampire nation. Have you heard about Tatar? Of course, one soldier replied. Tatar is a warrior who defeated 10 trolls alone. Yer smiled, motivating his soldiers. Now, you also have the chance to surpass Tatar. The soldiers laughed at Yer's words, and one of them said, "But aren't you already a great general and an elite warrior? Do you know how to become an elite warrior? You need to be a bit greedy." The battle quickly began. Despite the vampires' large numbers, they seemed no match for the Lizardmen cavalry's charge. Juenra soon clashed with Yer, unafraid because he firmly believed the blood and rotten meat god would grant him strength. However, the battle between them quickly decided the victor. Yer raised the head of the last vampire he had slain and loudly declared to the soldiers, "I only killed 9 vampires because the other soldiers, after hearing about Tatar, desperately tried to kill more." The soldiers all laughed, and Yer continued, "This is the head of a vampire general, so it counts as 2, right?" But he was just joking. After all, keeping the soldiers' morale high was what mattered most. Soon, the news reached Shaven's ears. When Shaven heard the briefing, she couldn't believe her ears. General Juenro was dead, and about 400 vampires had died in battle. At this moment, Shaven was furious, but she was also puzzled. If the Lizardmen wanted to make a quick raid, they had to reduce their supply of military provisions, meaning they needed to obtain food locally. Suspecting that the Lizardmen had crossed so many nations to reach here, she wondered if the Lizardmen had formed an alliance with other nations. However, she she quickly dismissed this idea. Shaven believed that Hukran Nation had no reason to help other nations. So, she speculated, was the king of Hukran Nation afraid of the rise of another major power? Although the Lizardmen had occupied many lands of the Vampire Kingdom, these places, even if occupied, would not truly belong to them. Shaven realized the current situation only after receiving intelligence from the scouts she had sent. Although she had already issued orders to the remaining 3 generals, their forces were still stagnant. Now, Shaven had to make a decision between 2 options. Was it to reorganize the remaining 600 defeated soldiers to face 300 Lizardmen, or to call together the remaining 3,000 soldiers, making a force of 3,600 to counterattack Hukran Nation? But she knew the main strength of the Lizardmen was cavalry. They could continue to move around this domain without launching a direct attack. At this moment, Shaven was deeply conflicted. Just then, the blood and rotten meat god gave her an answer. A red moon hung in the eastern sky. Shaven understood. This was the guidance of the blood and rotten meat god. She immediately ordered her adjutant to gather all the soldiers. We will attack Hukran Nation now. Just as Nebula planned, he successfully gathered the enemies in one place. But at this moment, other players felt puzzled. Are we supposed to perform a joint pincer attack on them? Although Nebula thought this was a good idea, he raised a crucial question. Do we have enough soldiers? Nebula's question left everyone momentarily speechless, as they had all suffered varying degrees of losses in previous battles. Although Zhangwan's troops could participate in the battle, they were too far from Nebula's Hukran Nation to be of immediate use. Only the forces of Krampus and Wisdom could truly be mobilized. However, Krampus could only send 500 people, and Wisdom's forces were even fewer, at only 300. Nebula deduced that if the vampires decided to attack Hukran Nation, they were more likely to target the fortress near the automation rather than crossing the wilderness. From the vampires' perspective, it was hard to avoid sunlight in the wilderness, while the mountain paths provided natural shade, and they could also raid villages along the way to replenish their blood supply. Therefore, Nebula suggested combining his 300 cavalry with the forces of Wisdom and Krampus to pursue the vampire forces from behind. After hearing this, Wisdom asked, but if we are too far apart, how can we truly coordinate a joint attack? From the current situation, Hukran Nation must withstand the first attack alone. Do you think you can handle it? Nebula's tone was filled with immense confidence. Do you think I can't protect myself? Wisdom shrugged. As long as you think you can do it. Meanwhile, the other players were assigned their respective tasks. Everyone must do their utmost to eliminate the vampires within their territories. Zhangwan's troops need to recover the areas originally belonging to AR. It's not just about reducing the number of vampires, but more importantly, shaking their faith. However, what Nebula is most concerned about now is the player Jill Wooby. He has yet to utilize his resources, and the territory of Vampire Kingdom has become the largest in the 3rd continent, with the number of vampires rapidly increasing. As a player, Jill Wooby's capabilities should not be underestimated. According to Nebula's calculations, his level might have already reached 17. Players gain a divine skill at level 16. This is the real reason Nebula fears him. If Jill Wooby really is at level 16 or above and remains composed until the end, things will become very troublesome. But it's not entirely without solution. Meanwhile, Shaven led an army of more than 3,000 vampires to the automation. However, the sight before her was disconcerting. The way to automation had already been transformed by Rakrak into a fortress that was easy to defend but hard to attack. The trees around had been cleared, leaving behind a hillside crisscrossed with trenches. The adjutant looked at the terrain and couldn't help but exclaim, only a honey badger could easily reach there. Unfortunately, they didn't have many resources at hand. Time waits for no one, and Shaven knew she had to act quickly. She immediately ordered to use the Lenars and trolls to approach the castle walls with large hammers to break them down. However, the adjutant reminded her that due to the terrain, if they attacked forcefully, at least half of their forces would be lost. Shaven pondered for a moment, thinking if they could make the slope gentler, it would facilitate the soldiers' movement. Suddenly, Shaven stopped in her tracks. A solution sprang to mind. If we wanted to make stairs, why do we, the vampires, have to do the work? Hearing this, the adjutant immediately understood her intent. Using slaves as meat shields for arrows not only reduces the enemy's combat resources, but also fills the slopes. More importantly, a rumor has recently begun circulating among the slaves. The 5 gods have abandoned them, but one god has not given up. Under Shaven's orders, batches of slaves were taken out. It's already the 3rd batch. At this moment, one of the rat people is terrified because they are next. Izan is among them. Although he already knows the outcome, he still feels powerless to resist. They are just vampires, slaves, and food, and their gods have long abandoned them. Otherwise, why would they allow vampires to torture them like this? The recent rumors, however, have given some slaves hope. It's said that the vampires will go to war with the Lizardmen, and perhaps the blue insect god of the Lizardmen will save them. As time passes, it's soon Izan's and his companions' turn. The other slaves are restless, anxiously looking at the situation in front of them, while Izan remains silent. Although it's just a rumor, he has to choose to believe it, because, aside from this faint hope, there is nothing else in his heart to cling to. Below the city, the bodies of slaves are piled up like mountains. Although this is within Izan's expectations, he is still deeply shocked when he actually sees it. Then, a vampire commander coldly says, "Your objective is simple. Run towards the gates of the Lizardmen's fortress. If the Lizardmen are the saviors as you believe, they will open the gates and save you." Izan hesitates between two choices, but he knows he is powerless. The road to the fortress requires turning 3 corners to reach the gate, but Izan notices that no one can get past the second bend. The vampires begin the countdown. All the slaves hesitate briefly. Izan looks at the bodies beside him, knowing he must run first. One of the rat people tremble, afraid to move forward. However, what meets him instead is the vampire's cold blade. The moment the countdown ends, everyone is forced to start running. Then, several arrows whiz past Izan. An arrow flies right past his ear. If he hadn't tripped accidentally, he would have been dead. However, the other slaves behind him are not so lucky. Shaven's satisfaction with the continuously running slaves made this plan seem like killing 3 birds with 1 stone. It not only reduces the Lizardmen's arrow supply, but also uses the corpses to fill the slopes, and simultaneously intimidates other slaves. However, the adjutant is somewhat worried. What if the Lizardmen really open the gate? Shaven is unconcerned. The Lizardmen are not fools, but if they really do open it, it might also be a good thing for us. The blood and rotten meat god is the only savior of this land. All other gods are just our enemies. Meanwhile, Izan has reached the second bend. He is the first slave to get there. The arrows of the Lizardmen have stopped, but Izan just stands there dazed. He knows the Lizardmen are unlikely to open the gate for him. However, the vampires behind him loudly warn him, "If you don't move, we'll shoot you from behind." Now Izan is doomed either way. He can only move forward slowly. He doesn't understand why he must suffer like this. Why did he come to this world? Who can give him an answer? Just then, a blue butterfly flew up to him. The gate he thought would never open is now slowly opening for him. Time rewinds 2.5 minutes. The Lizardmen notice that the vampires are again sending unarmed slaves forward. The third batch now. Quetzal realizes the vampires' intent. They want to fill the slope with corpses to make their attack easier. Also, to achieve a quick decisive battle, the vampires have dispensed with surplus slaves. Rakrak agrees, but points out that there's a deeper reason. Yura has gone through countless battles across the lands dealing with vampires. Such victories will become symbolic and spread to other nations. Therefore, the enslaved slaves see a glimmer of survival. Now the vampires want us to shoot those slaves who pin their hopes on us. If we refuse to help, they will fall into despair. This strategy will lead to slaves completely losing the will to resist. Looks like their commander is wiser than we thought. No, that's not the case. Rakrak then ordered one of the guards to open the gate on his signal. Quetzal, puzzled by the command, asked, "Are you planning to save them? Those people may not be slaves, but weapons that the vampires have been hiding. That's why we shot the first 2 batches to verify whether they really carried weapons. Even if we open the gate, we can only accept a few dozen of people." Rakrak smiles slightly. "Do you know why you lost to me last time?" Quetzal, "Your computational ability and logic are excellent, but your vision is not far-reaching enough. Learn to see the big picture." Meanwhile, a swarm of blue butterflies appears before Quetzal. The blue butterflies are seen as an oracle. Rakrak and Quetzal know the butterflies are not just there to inspire them before battle. More importantly, their god have agreed with Rakrak's approach, hence no one will oppose him. As the gate slowly opens, a boy is the first to rush in. Rakrak then walks towards the gate, while Quetzal draws the silver sword from his waist to check if the slaves are vampires. Rakrak reminds the soldiers not to aim at the slaves. As the gate opened, the vampires rushed in immediately behind it. However, Rakrak showed no intention of avoiding them. He slowly walked outside, grabbed a Nyx woman, and threw her into the fortress. Quetzal caught her inside. At that moment, a vampire from behind lunged at Rakrak. Rakrak turned around, extended his palm toward the vampire, and a blue light shot out from his hand. Immediately, a bolt of lightning tore through the sky, lighting up the entire gate. Seeing this, Shaven muttered softly, "What a pity." Rakrak quickly retreated inside the gate. The adjutant behind him quickly apologized to Shaven. "This is all my fault. I thought they wouldn't open the gate, so we missed the opportunity." However, Shaven didn't blame him. She calmly said, "Continue the siege as planned." In her view, the vampire army had a clear advantage over other armies. That advantage was that they were composed of multiple races. The Lenars are fast and skilled with most weaponry, and the Kobolds are small and nimble, which makes it easy for them to dodge their arrows. The Trolls, due to their massive size, could not ride any animals, but this was precisely their strength. They could keep moving forward under attack, showing incredible resilience. The Nixon and Satyros were the main offensive forces of the vampire army. Although the third-generation vampires had reduced physical abilities, they retained the traits of their original races, which was the key to Shaven's success. success so far. Shaven estimated that there were about 2,000 lizardmen inside the fortress, while she had 3,400 vampires, so she was confident she would win the battle. However, as Nebula had predicted, Shaven didn't know how to effectively capture the fortress. The fortress's defense design came from simulations between Wirae and Jail, where they had already solved various potential problems. Meanwhile, the trolls and Nixon took the lead in charging the fortress. Although the Nixon archers were excellent, the lizardmen's bows had a longer range, and the height difference of the fortress provided a significant defensive advantage. Under the suppression of the arrow rain, the trolls and leaner's soldiers barely managed to hold on, attempting to climb the fortress walls. However, the lizardmen were well prepared, facing the charge of the vampires. These physically strong vampires could withstand the arrow rain and reach the front lines of the fortress, but none could touch the gate. This was because a lightning lizard stood atop the fortress, and Wirae only needed to extend his hand for the vampires who managed to get near the gate to be struck down by lightning. Wirae, while smoking tobacco, looked down at the vampires lying on the ground, appearing completely at ease. He had simply used the necessary force to end this assault. Below, the vampires had all fallen, their bodies scattered across the battlefield. In this wave of attack, the vampire army lost 600 soldiers. However, Shaven insisted on continuing the assault. She swore to capture the fortress and destroy the lizardmen. At this time, the bodies of the dead vampires piled up the slope, even filling it in. This sight terrified the remaining soldiers, who began to hesitate whether to continue charging, with some even turning to flee. To curb the fleeing behavior, the vampire general immediately executed a deserter to deter the others. Nebula observed the situation, knowing that whether Shaven chose to continue attacking or retreat, it would result in massive losses. If Shaven were a calmer commander, she might accept the reality of not being able to capture the fortress and choose to retreat. Is her fanaticism blinding her? At this moment, Nebula was more concerned that the player Jeol-woo-bi might intervene in the battle. He suspected that Jeol-woo-bi was waiting for Shaven's forces to be completely exhausted before launching his own abilities. However, it seemed that Jeol-woo-bi had not noticed the turmoil happening at the rear of the army. Shaven watched the battle unfold far worse than expected and was furious. If she continued, she might lose all her soldiers. However, just then, a soldier hurriedly reported, "The trolls and Satyros have joined forces with the lizardmen." Upon hearing this, Shaven felt an unprecedented sense of crisis. She knew this was the enemy's tactic, but she was unwilling to retreat. "We've already lost so many soldiers. Instead of thinking about retreating, let's figure out how to take down the castle." However, just then, drops of blood fell onto the table. She wiped her nose with her hand and discovered it was nosebleed, making her expression even darker. Due to the slow and gentle heartbeat of vampires, Shaven had never experienced a nosebleed since becoming a vampire. Could this nosebleed be some sort of ominous omen? At the same time, the adjutant's call interrupted Shaven's thoughts. What has happened now? The slaves have revolted. Back then, the fourth batch of slaves had been brought back because the lizardmen opened the gate. However, these returning slaves brought back shocking news. The blue-haired slave told everyone, "I saw blue butterflies. The lizardmen opened the gate for us. Some of the slaves have entered the castle." However, many of the slaves were skeptical about this. They couldn't understand why the lizardmen would do such a thing. "I'm not sure, but no matter the reason, I am going to fight." The rumors might be true. Vampires would eventually be defeated by the lizardmen. Instead of helplessly waiting for death, let's resist together. Maybe we still have a chance to survive. His words sparked the slaves' desire to live. Their fighting spirit was completely ignited. Just as the vampires sent people to check the situation, the slaves had already begun to resist on a large scale. The adjutant urgently reported to Shaven, "This is no small matter. All the slaves have completely broken into chaos." Shaven was seething with anger, but quickly regained a strange calm and asked, "When you say all, do you mean all 1,200 of them?" "Yes, all of the slaves. The guards watching over them were all attacked. Although most of the slaves are unarmed, we don't have enough soldiers to stop them from leaving the camp. You have swords and spears, yet you can't stop unarmed slaves. The number of slaves in the camp far exceeds that of the soldiers, and these slaves are strangely hostile. Compared to usual, they don't care that they might die and are diving in to steal weapons." Hearing this, Shaven realized that Wirae anticipated this when he opened the gate. At that moment, the adjutant called to Shaven again, but noticed her nose was bleeding. "This cannot be the will of our god. I don't believe the god who chose me would treat me like this." Then, Shaven calmed down and ordered, "Tomorrow, deploy all soldiers to take down the fortress." "Lord Shaven, what about the slaves? If we send our soldiers outside to attack the fortress and leave these fleeing slaves behind, could they pose a greater threat from behind? If the enemy surrounds us, we surely won't hold out. I never said to let them escape." The adjutant, puzzled and about to ask further, was abruptly bitten by Shaven. Shaven's sharp teeth pierced the adjutant's artery, and blood sprayed from the bite. The adjutant, terror-stricken, fell to the ground motionless. After this, Shaven seemed much clearer mentally. "It seems I need to replenish my blood, probably because of my nosebleed." Then, Shaven glanced coldly at the generals present and said, "Do you still need me to personally dispatch troops to suppress the slaves?" A general immediately stood up, nervously stating, "There's no need for you to trouble yourself. I will use the station soldiers to prevent the slaves from escaping. Shaven affirmed this and turned to another general, commanding coldly, from now on, you are my new adjutant. Go fetch my armor now. I will personally open the gate. Meanwhile, the vampires are resisting the rebel slaves. Seeing this, Quetzal was puzzled. Could it be that our reinforcements have arrived? Our reinforcements are still far from here. Moreover, vampires don't need torches, so it must be the slaves who've caused this ruckus. But why would the slaves rebel at this time? Rakrak smiled slightly. It'd be good to assemble the cockatrice warriors. Rakrak then posed another question. What if the vampires don't send soldiers to stop the slaves' rebellion? Quetzal felt this hypothesis was absurd. How could that be? If that were the case, they would surely try to resolve the issue once and for all quickly. Correct. If it's confirmed that all slaves have betrayed them, the enemy will have to face being attacked from both front and back. Their only way to break through the gate might depend on their deity. After saying this, Rakrak's gaze shifted to directly in front of the fortress. At this moment, Shaven, holding a sword, slowly walked towards the Lizardmen's castle. She shouted loudly, Rakrak, if you are not afraid, come out and fight me one-on-one. Upon hearing this, Quetzal immediately turned to Rakrak and asked, will you fight? If I don't, the vampires will use the power of their god to destroy the gate. They are desperate. Before leaving, Rakrak reminded Quetzal, the slaves will soon appear from behind the vampires. When that happens, send out the cockatrice warriors to join forces with them and eliminate the vampires. Meanwhile, Shaven was calculating her plan. Once Rakrak opens the gate and appears, the big weasels will immediately charge. Without the gate as a defense, they will also lose the advantages brought by the fortress and the terrain. However, things did not go as Shaven had planned. Rakrak, riding a majestic cockatrice, stood imposingly atop the castle walls. This scene left Shaven dumbfounded. How did you get up there on that? Rakrak, with a smile on his face, responded, don't you know that a winged cockatrice can fly? With his command, Rakrak and his cockatrice soared into the air and dove towards the ground. The cockatrice's talons aimed directly at Shaven, while Rakrak brandished his long spear. At the moment when Shaven's sword clashed with Rakrak's spear, she was knocked back by the immense force. Although Shaven's physical prowess could match most cavalrymen, she hadn't anticipated Rakrak being so powerful. Before she could fully react, Rakrak had already turned his spear around for a powerful strike aimed at her head. Shaven had no chance to use her fangs, nor could she get close to Rakrak. She could only struggle to maintain her footing and try not to be knocked back. Rakrak was no ordinary cavalryman, and with the swift cockatrice, his combat effectiveness was impeccable. Riding it, Rakrak was a powerful 21-level warrior. Meanwhile, the slaves had successfully defeated the vampire general. They armed themselves and began attacking the enemy from behind. Victory seemed within reach. At this moment, a message popped up on Nebula's panel. Player Jill requests a whisper. If it were any other player, Nebula would not entertain such a request, especially now with the tense situation in the battlefield. He would at least wait until after killing Shaven to consider having a conversation. However, the caller was an extremely suspicious player, Jill, a mysterious figure who appeared years after the game started and controls the unprecedented race vampires in the game. After a moment's hesitation, Nebula accepted the whisper. The face that appeared on the screen was an ugly face stitched together from various skins. Nebula couldn't help but comment, what a weird taste. The other party remained silent, making the atmosphere awkward for a time. Nebula was the first to break the silence. How should I address you? So far, I've been calling you Jill. Is that okay? Jill remained silent. If you have nothing to say, then I'm hanging up. It was then that the other's mouth slowly began to move, with a low tone. Do you think you've won? Nebula responded without hesitation. Of course. What else? Jill sneered, slowly saying, you're wrong. You will lose. Nebula didn't understand where Jill confidence in predicting his defeat came from. From the current situation, Shaven was doomed to fail. However, Jill interrupted his thoughts, coldly saying, I'm not talking about those unintelligent, foolish, and lowly things. Are you talking about the battle currently taking place between Rakrak and Shaven? If you descend, I can descend too. Jill once again denied his view, stammering, no, you can't change anything in this world. Nebula was momentarily confused. If the opponent really was a player, especially one from Earth like Nebula, their tone should be filled with anticipation for victory. However, Jill words sounded more like stating a fixed fact. Nebula cannot change anything. He decided to try to provoke Jill to extract more information. I believe I will win, and then I will be able to open up all civilizations. I will build temples in every city and excavate all ancient ruins. Jill was obviously angered, raising his voice angrily. That power does not belong to you. It belongs to us. Nebula instantly caught a key point. He used us. This implies that Jill might not be a player. Nebula followed up. Just what is your identity? We are the masters of this world. Everything you owe us, we will take back. After that, Jill ended the call. This guy's every move was bizarre, leaving Nebula bewildered. However, Nebula decided to set aside his doubts and focus on the situation at hand. Just as he was about to intervene in the battle, suddenly, a beam of light pierced through the void. Seeing this, Nebula was stunned. Meanwhile, Rakrak chopped off one of Shaven's arms, and his cockatrice Fortress snatched the limb in its beak. Rakrak then poised his spear and said to Shaven, "The battle should end now." Saying this, he charged at Shaven. However, just at this critical moment, Rakrak suddenly sensed a dangerous aura. He immediately stopped the cockroach action. The next second, a beam of light suddenly appeared between Shaven and Rakrak. When Rakrak looked up, he saw a giant hand holding a massive sword. The giant was too immense to see clearly, only a vague outline was visible. Through the darkness, the deep red eyes were distinctly visible. Rakrak understood that this was the god of vampires. Rakrak, the Lizardman, was now facing a giant hundreds of meters tall. Nebula, watching this scene, realized that this was manifestation. This is a skill unlocked only when a player reaches level 16, allowing them to customize the appearance of a deity, with the combat ability depending on the environmental conditions of the deity's location. Looking at this gigantic figure, Nebula realized that even summoning his powerful creation, Shradis, to the battlefield would merely be scratching an itch. Meanwhile, Rakrak was commanding the soldiers within the city, issuing an order, "Evacuate the city." This was a very wise decision. Facing a giant nearly 100 meters tall, even if thousands of people fired together, the end result would be futile. However, Nebula was aware that manifestation, compared to descent, required a lot more faith points, but there was no ceremony held now, meaning Jielwubi did not make sacrifices, and the giant had to draw offerings from surrounding creatures to sustain itself. The giant hesitated not at all to reach towards the direction of vampires and slaves, indiscriminately grabbing and devouring everything. Seeing this, Shaven's eyes widened in disbelief, her smile frozen in place. The giant's hand swept across the battlefield, revealing their god's indifference to friend or foe as he gorged on blood and flesh. In that moment, she understood that he was no different from her. With that thought, Shaven laughed loudly. Meanwhile, Nebula analyzed the situation, realizing he might lose some Lizardmen. Jielwubi could quickly restore faith points by devouring, but this would drastically reduce the number of Lizardmen in the city. If Shaven survives and captures the city, relying on the remaining forces, she would be unable to fully utilize the mountain fortress's advantages. Jielwubi clearly wasn't foolish. He would leave part of his army and might let Shaven roam the continent to somehow increase her military power again. This would cause more trouble for other players, but these were not within Nebula's considerations. At this moment, Rakrak was quickly commanding the soldiers to evacuate the city. He didn't know when the evil deity would strike, but he had to be prepared. Quetzal stepped forward, offering to stay behind to stall the enemy. However, Rakrak immediately rejected his proposal. What kind of leader abandons his warriors and flees first? For Quetzal, Rakrak was not just their leader, but also their king and the beacon guiding the Lizardmen forward. But Rakrak didn't think his life was more precious than that of other soldiers. Just then, an explosion erupted nearby. He suddenly realized that sacrificing himself would plunge the nation into chaos. At this time, Rakrak and Jael had 3 children, and their future was the hope of the Black Scale Nation. "I think I am not fit to be king. That thing hasn't even filled half of his stomach yet, and not even half of the Lizardmen have been evacuated." Yet Rakrak showed no signs of backing down, his gaze steady on the evil deity's movements. If it continues to live, that vile vampire queen will surely survive by chance. Then, this war could drag on for years, even longer. Quetzal stood in front of Rakrak, trying to persuade him, but ultimately, "We will win. It's a victory bought at a great cost, but still a victory." Rakrak just looked deeply at Quetzal and then said, "Quetzal, you still need to learn a bit more about math." Quetzal hadn't yet reacted when Rakrak grabbed him by the collar and flung him behind him. By the time he steadied himself and turned around, Rakrak was already charging down the slope on his cockatrice. Seeing this, Nebula's face showed deep concern and disbelief. Why does he have to do something so foolish? I should just control him directly with descent. Nebula opened the interface for the descent skill, trying to forcibly take over Rakrak's actions. However, a system prompt popped up. "Your high priest is resisting the descent skill. Would you like to force use?" Nebula clenched his teeth and eventually chose to cancel. He knew that if he used descent forcibly, Rakrak will be frozen for a moment, and he might die during that time. Meanwhile, Rakrak finally had a clear view of the immense creature. This must be the true form of their god. It looks absurdly strong. The evil deity slowly raised a giant arm, the massive hammer in its grasp aimed directly at Rakrak. With quick reflexes, Rakrak dodged the hammer's fierce swing. At this time, Nebula's heart was on edge. "Rakrak, what are you doing? Run away!" Just then, a swarm of red butterflies appeared in front of Rakrak. Blue butterflies symbolize good fortune. Thus, red ones are seen as an ill omen. This was Nebula's first use of red butterflies, and he believed Rakrak would understand his message. However, Rakrak ignored the warning of the red butterflies, bypassing them and pulling his bow to aim at the giant. "Damn it, Rakrak ignored my hint." The arrow struck the giant's face like a toothpick, which was inconsequential to the giant and only enraged Jielwubi further. Another giant hand raised a massive sword, slashing down at Rakrak. "Rakrak, do you know what you're doing? You can win this fight if you just retreat. Return to the palace. You can live with Jael, the warriors, and your children. For the next decades, no warrior would dare challenge your throne." At this time, a system prompt appeared. "Would you like to sponsor faith resources to the battle?" Without hesitation, Nebula pressed pressed the S button. Instantly, Rakrak unleashed lightning at Jilwoobi. Though powerful, the lightning required divine power to cause significant damage to Jilwoobi. Nebula tried using the descent skill again, but it was still rejected by Rakrak. Is this it? Some of the Black Scale Tribe warriors will disobey the chief's orders when necessary. Is that why you, the chief, is also going against God's will with your own decisions? Using your one life to save more lives? Is that your damn math? Thinking that fighting him would decrease his manifestation time? You're saying victory isn't everything? At that moment, Rakrak used the arrow as a springboard to leap into the air. At the same time, he said to Buzz, "Old friend, do me a favor." Rakrak needed to borrow Buzz's power, continuously gathering strength, his spear wrapped in intense electrical currents, shimmering with a light as blinding as the sun. Then, this spear of thunder struck straight at the giant's head, instantly illuminating the entire land. However, Jilwoobi is a deity. How could a mere ant shake him? Following that, Jilwoobi picked up his giant hammer and slammed it down hard on Rakrak. Thus, Rakrak of the Black Scale Tribe, the Hand Hunter and Lizardmen of Thunder, the first chosen one and the chief of the Black Scale Tribe, the founding king of Hukaran and Great Thunder Dragon King, the model of Lizardmen, and the one who opened the path, and he who was more like a king than anyone else, who was known to be good at figures, fell. A notification box appeared. Your High Priest Rakrak has died. You have lost EXP. After Rakrak was killed by Jilwoobi, Jilwoobi was furiously swinging his giant hammer, wildly venting his anger. Nebula, standing in the background, clenched his teeth, momentarily at a loss for words. His mind went blank, and he fell into a brief stupor. However, he soon regained his composure and calmed his emotions. No, it's okay. The death of a high priest is acceptable. In fact, he had anticipated that something like this might happen. Therefore, Nebula had previously appointed Weekyung as the successor to the priest. Although there was indeed a loss of experience points, the divinity level had only dropped by 1 level. More importantly, Nebula still had the afterlife at his disposal. He only needed to summon Rakrak's soul there, and not everything was over. Meanwhile, the notification box indicated Rakrak, who was respected by everyone, has died. Many are sad about Rakrak's death. Is someone teasing me? However, Nebula was suddenly stunned by a message window that appeared before him. Entity Rakrak has been enthroned as Apostle. Apostle Rakrak has obtained a divinity level. At this moment, Nebula almost doubted whether there was something wrong with his eyes. Rakrak became an apostle. Apostles are the beings that assist deities. When a god's creation grows, or when special beings like dragons become followers of a god, they have the opportunity to evolve into apostles. Sometimes normal entities can grow and become apostles, and this is called ascension. Apostles receive their own divinity, not only obeying the commands of their god, but also leading the spread of the faith. Nebula still couldn't believe it all, because he knew the conditions for ascension had not all been met. He could not infer the first 3 conditions, but he was sure the 4th condition had not been reached. According to the game rules, a player's divinity level must reach at least 21 to raise the limit of faith points to 1 million. But now, Nebula's divinity level is only 11, and he can only have up to 100,000 faith points. Thinking of his divinity level, Nebula hurriedly opened the panel to check his faith points. This look left him completely dumbfounded. The faith points were rapidly increasing. Compared to the speed of increase in faith points, the amount of faith points consumed to summon an apostle was even more astonishing. How is this possible? Where are all these faith points coming from? He quickly turned his gaze back to the center of the battlefield. At that moment, Jilwoobi was still lashing at Rakrak's body. However, in the face of the evil god, not a single person fled. The Black Scale Lizardmen, the vampire's slaves, even the vampires of White Fang Nation were all praying for Rakrak. But even so, their prayers were not enough to generate such a massive number of faith points. Quickly, Nebula realized something. He seemed to have overlooked a crucial point. This was not the Lost World game of the past. Those windows were just a facade to maintain the appearance of the game. When faith will surpass the quantifiable limits of the system, errors may occur. At this moment, the rapidly increasing faith points were the best proof. So, am I witnessing a miracle that transcends the system's scope? Just then, another message window popped up. Your apostle Rakrak is requesting advent. Will you permit? Does Rakrak want to come back for revenge? Becoming an apostle is indeed a good thing, but I can't send him there just for revenge. Nebula opened Rakrak's character panel, and a smile gradually appeared on his face. He is indeed very powerful. The abilities and skills of an apostle reflect the reputation and various titles they accumulated throughout their life. Becoming an apostle means becoming a legendary figure in epic tales. Nebula finally pressed the yes button. Do your best, Rakrak. Meanwhile, as the last Lizardman evacuated the fortress, all the Lizardmen successfully retreated. Quetzal watched these fleeing Lizardmen and said, "This is all thanks to Lord Rakrak. His sacrifice secured everyone's safety." But Quetzal didn't know how to break the news of Rakrak's death to jail. Up until now, many on the continent have been fighting just to fill their stomachs, but Rakrak has left an indelible, significant mark on this land. The only regret is that Rakrak didn't defeat the evil god. As everyone fell into silence, a clap of thunder broke the quiet. Quetzal looked up at the sky. However, there were only sparkling stars filling the void. No thunder could possibly be there. Then, a dazzling swirling yellow beam of light suddenly descended from the sky, landing precisely where Jill Wooby had hammered. People couldn't look directly at the blinding light of the beam, and they didn't even know what had happened. Seeing this, Jill Wooby immediately swung his giant hammer at the beam. However, just before the hammer touched the ground, it seemed to hit something indestructible and was directly bounced back. At that moment, the entity that Jill Wooby was attempting to strike finally revealed its true form. A Lizardman, surrounded by golden lightning, appeared at the center of the beam. The Lizardmen recognized him immediately. It was Rakrak. He went through all that and didn't die. Jill Wooby seemed unable to accept that Rakrak had been resurrected. "You dare, a mere mortal!" He swung all his sword at Rakrak. However, as the sword were about to touch Rakrak, he turned into a bolt of lightning, instantly piercing through Jill Wooby's body. This left Jill Wooby utterly baffled. Before Rakrak died, he couldn't leave a mark on me at all. At this time, Rakrak's character panel shows: Warrior level 6, King level 6, Apostle level 13, Strength 167 plus 13D, Intelligence 155 plus 13D, Camaraderie 132 plus 13D, Will 287, Leadership 115, Deception 82, and Patience 74. Rakrak's priest level has been transformed into an apostle level, and his capabilities have been unimaginably enhanced.